Society is increasingly corrupt. While good exists, evil also exists. But in this world, there are heroes who possess special abilities. This is Jade, a superhero with the ability of speed. He asks the police officers to step aside, and that they can leave the rest to him. The kidnappers say that if he moves, they will finish off the hostages. But what the bandit didn't expect was that Jade was also a bandit disguised as a hero. So in the blink of an eye, he finishes off almost everyone. He also gets rid of the hostages, and even says that now that he has taken care of the hostages, he can apply his justice. But the shadow of death was already watching Jade's acts. Iwa is her name. Her master says that if she can defeat Jade, her training will be complete. Without hesitating, Iwa dives in pursuit of her target. If the hero's job is to cleanse the world of evil and corrupt villains, who carries the job of taking care of the corrupt heroes? Iwa arrives at the place where Jade is having a party. Guards try to stop her, but as they are normal people without powers, they can do nothing to stop Iwa's hatred against false heroes. Meanwhile, Jade is enjoying himself at his party, but something catches his companion's attention. Jade says that she will pay for this and immediately throws a punch at her, who defends herself with her two hands. Jade is surprised to notice that she is just a child. Iwa mocks the fact that Jade isn't as fast as they told her, because he didn't even notice that she made a counterattack in that short exchange of blows. He asks if she is the Nameless or part of the Villains Association, and no matter the answer, he will kill her. To understand Iwa's motivations, we must first revisit a pivotal moment in the past. Iwa sat on the ground beside her sister's body, her gaze filling with fierce determination. A man in a wheelchair asked if she harbored a desire for revenge. Iwa replied yes, if it were possible. The man then questioned how she intended to find the culprit amidst so many heroes. Coldly, she asserted that she would kill them one by one, repeating the process until she found the one responsible. Elsewhere, Iwa finally confronted Jade. Convinced that she would eventually find the right one, she charged towards him, preparing a direct punch. Jade blocked the blow and immediately scoffed, asking if she thought this was some kind of game. He then countered with his own fist, striking Iwa squarely in the face. The force of the impact sent her reeling backward. Jade taunted her, asking if that was all she had. Quickly, Iwa rose in time to block his next attack. She grabbed a fire extinguisher and hurled it at her opponent. A large explosion erupted from the impact, forcing Jade to shield himself with his arm. He then turned back towards her. A subsequent blow seemed to strike Jade squarely, yet it was Iwa's own body that was sent flying upwards as Jade appeared behind her, his voice mocking, "What made you think you could defeat me?" The girl responded with a spinning kick, but Jade swiftly countered. He asked, "Do you really believe you're the first villain to challenge me?" He then landed a direct punch to her face, asserting that he had beaten every single one to death, using only his bare fists as he continued to assault her on the ground. His hand clenched and he declared, "This should be enough." His palm extended towards her with a chilling command, "Die!" Suddenly the man found himself chained before a guillotine. Iwa watched him in silence as a question formed in his mind. What in the world was that? The girl stood up and declared that she now understood how his power worked. Her eyes locked onto her opponent. The thought flashed through his mind that he needed to escape, and he tried to retreat. But Iwa caught up to him and delivered a strike, her hand passing straight through Jade's face. Jade reacted, gripping the phantom blow. He stumbled back, maintaining distance, while Iwa simply observed. He then asked, "Were you just playing?" Iwa replied with a question of her own. "Did I not have permission to?" A promise to kill her was uttered as he lunged forward. Iwa countered him in the same instant. Falling to the ground, he heard a question about his strength classification. Without a backward glance, Iwa turned and walked away, stating that she would be deeply disappointed if all heroes were like him. Jade lay immobile on the ground, completely unable to move his own body. A hand touched his chest. Shadowy figures seized him, asserting that because he had killed so many, it was now his turn to die. With a sudden surge, he broke free and ran desperately, trying to escape their grasp. He continued running without pause, searching for a chance to flee. Holding his head, Iwa addressed him, "Jade, the rabid dog." Coldly, she ended the confrontation, hoping that in his next life, he would return as a decent human being. Iwa stood atop the wreckage, Jade's lifeless body lying on the destroyed ground. Firmly, she informed the man in the wheelchair that there was no turning back now. In response, he warned that the heroes would pursue her, adding that they would be far stronger than Jade. He then asked if she was prepared. Without hesitation, Iwa replied that they could come. In a flashback, the man handed her a sword as she declared herself a hero killer. She gripped the weapon and warned that those who stood in her path would all die by her hands. Back in the present, Iwa stood in an alley, surrounded by even more bodies. With contempt, she declared that she did not care how powerful they might be. The site of the previous battle was now cordoned off with police tape. Investigators gathered around Jade's body, remarking that his successor had already been chosen. One man expressed surprise at the speed, but the other asserted that such was simply the way things worked. One of them hoped the new hero would be someone normal this time, and the other agreed. Meanwhile, Chaos despaired over Jade's body, demanding to know what had happened. He clutched the corpse, insisting on knowing who was responsible. Jade attempted to whisper a response before succumbing. Chaos questioned if he was serious, then rose, holding Jade's head before the other men. With a controlled voice, he told Jade not to worry. Chaos covered his face with a hand, promising that he would avenge him. He licked the blood from his hand. A vision of a silver-haired girl materialized, her image becoming increasingly clear. Finally, Iwa's face was revealed in the vision. Chaos's entire body trembled. A smile spread across his face as he declared, "I've found her." Most heroes belong to the clan, bound by the orders they receive. Long ago, after triumphing in the war against the villains, they solidified their dominion. Centuries later, the city is saturated with their images, and the world has essentially come to be ruled by these prominent figures. In the shower, Ihwa found the entire situation profoundly strange. It had been over a week since she killed Jade, yet the media had remained completely silent, as if nothing had ever transpired. This raised a nagging question. Was it merely a fear of exposing any weakness, or was Jade simply disposable to them, just like her own sister? Ihwa uncapped a marker pen. Striking through Jade's picture, she declared that they wouldn't be able to ignore her for much longer. The young woman held the pen with a determined gaze. Standing before a sprawling mural of connections, she stated they could send whoever they wanted. Ihwa declared that she was ready. The facade of an establishment called Get Back was displayed. Inside, the bartender wiped the counter just as the door opened. Ihwa stepped into the bar. The man greeted her, commenting that she had arrived early today. Already wearing her apron, she told her master that it seemed there were no customers again. The older man merely chided her, then pointed to a lone customer seated there, prompting Ihwa to ask if he needed to be so sarcastic. The young woman announced she would go check the stock. The sole customer at the bar was Chaos, engrossed in a newspaper. As the master turned away, the young man swiftly aimed a gun at the older man. Leaning back in his chair, he brazenly stuck out his tongue. Ihwa's eyes widened in recognition. In an instant, she materialized behind him, a knife pressed to his throat. "For someone about to kill me, you're quite cute," he commented. "Were you sent by the Heroes clan?" Ihwa asked. Chaos observed her calm demeanor, realizing she had just used Jade's power. He understood her ability was to steal the powers of others. "You should put the knife away for now," the young man suggested, handing her a piece of paper. "Meet me tomorrow." As he turned to leave, he warned, "Don't bring anyone else." The master approached, asking what had happened, but Ihwa simply replied that it was nothing. Afterwards, she crumpled the note containing the meeting place and time. The indicated location was a restricted, fenced area. The street was utterly destroyed and deserted. Ihwa walked alone through the desolate landscape. Suddenly, she spun around, finding herself directly in the center of a gun's scope. From atop a building, Chaos observed her. "Not bad at all," he muttered, then fired the precision rifle without hesitation. The bullet rapidly advanced toward her. By a hair's breadth, Ihwa dodged the projectile. Quickly, Chaos reloaded the weapon for the next shot. With a low movement, she slid behind an air conditioning unit. Using a car's rearview mirror, she calculated that the shot had come from that building. Another projectile whizzed past, shattering a pipe, the distance estimated at 2,000 yards. Firmly, she held a small item with 3 spheres. "This should do it," she murmured, then imbued it with energy. "I'll hit him with this." With all her strength, Ihwa hurled the object. The wall near Chaos exploded. "Now things have truly gotten good," he exclaimed in celebration. Smiling, he called her a monster, impressed by such destructive power emanating from a mere steel sphere. On the ground, Ihwa prepared to advance. Incredulous, Chaos could barely believe the clan had wanted him to miss all this fun. Quickly, he took cover and reloaded his rifle. Through the scope, he searched for her, wondering where she was hiding. A loud noise caught his attention. The repeated sound came from the stairs below. Turning, he questioned if that was truly real. At high speed, Ihwa ascended the stairs. Abandoning the rifle, Chaos grabbed a shotgun as she burst into the corridor. Pointing the weapon in her direction, he prepared to shoot. With precision, the young woman deflected the shotgun blast using a blade. In a single strike, she knocked the weapon from his hands. Trying to react, Chaos drew a pistol. In response, Ihwa delivered a powerful headbutt to his face. With the impact, Chaos was thrown backward against a pillar. With the knife in hand, Ihwa prepared, ready to speak. Before she could, he interrupted her with a smile and a simple, "Hello." Impatient, the young woman told him, "Go to hell." Ihwa lunged forward with her knife, but Chaos swiftly dodged to the side. At that moment, 2 holes tore open in a nearby pillar, and hands burst forth from within. The young woman deftly blocked the surprise assault with her blades. A hooded man then phased directly through the pillar, immediately launching into an attack. His unique power allowed him to pass through physical objects, though this ability had no effect on living beings. With a rapid motion, Ihwa spun and flung him across the corridor. The man landed gracefully on his feet, adjusting his gloves. He was known as Viper. Ihwa turned to Chaos. "Didn't you say it would just be the 2 of us?" she asked. She then questioned why she wasn't using Jade's power. Ihwa replied that she wasn't, but Chaos immediately discerned the truth. She was unable to use it. Without hesitation, Ihwa lunged toward Viper. He easily dodged her punch. Chaos, observing closely, deduced that her power likely had a cooldown period or a limited number of uses. Viper struck her hand, delivering a swift counterattack. "If you have nothing else to show, then you can simply die now," he taunted. The force of the blow sent Ihwa stumbling backward. Seizing the opportunity, she immediately sprinted to a nearby window, leaping through it and out of the building. Chaos watched Ihwa's escape, a realization dawning on him. He only needed to touch someone to acquire their power. Viper, seeing Ihwa flee, urged him, "There's no time to lose, we need to pursue her." He then questioned Chaos. "Is this why you called me without alerting the clan? I have a bad feeling about this." Chaos merely offered a reassuring smile. "I'm glad you came," he said, his grin widening. "The hunt will continue." Hidden away, Ihwa coughed, struggling to regain her breath. She chided herself for her naivete, having failed to anticipate Chaos would bring reinforcements. Viper was not only powerful, but his unique ability proved exceptionally difficult to counter. Recognizing the precariousness of her situation, she drew 2 knives, a grim resolve settling over her. Her decision was made. Chaos would be her first target. Down on the street, Viper suddenly spun around as if sensing something. He shot forward at high speed, phasing through the very window Ihwa had used to escape. But But the young woman was no longer there. She was already below, in the street, her voice ringing out as she screamed Chaos's name. Chaos responded by firing his weapon repeatedly, unleashing a volley of bullets towards her. Ihwa, with incredible speed, deflected every shot with her blade. Without a moment's pause, she pressed her attack, her knife finding its mark in Chaos's shoulder. She missed her follow-up strike, muttering, "I didn't get close enough." Suddenly, Viper materialized from behind her, landing a powerful punch directly to her face. Chaos, seizing the moment, forcefully grabbed her from behind. "It's over," he declared. A lone figure watched the chaotic scene unfold from a distance, a silent debate playing out in their mind. Should I save her, even if it means clashing with the hero clan? Meanwhile, another man, dressed in a black coat, approached. "There's strength in numbers," he commented, adding, "and this girl is a valuable resource." At that precise instant, Ihwa, still struggling in Chaos's grip, lashed out with desperation, her fingers striking at the man's eye. With a swift leap, Ihwa broke free, creating distance between herself and her captors. She immediately launched into an attack, but Viper easily sidestepped her. Undeterred, Ihwa continued her assault, and small projectiles struck Viper's chest. Without a pause, she pressed her offensive, hitting him in the chest once more. Chaos watched the exchange, a slow, chilling laugh beginning to bubble from his throat. With a sneer, he tossed a grenade toward Ihwa. "Catch!" he taunted. The explosion rocked the area, but Ihwa managed to leap clear just in time. Through the dissipating smoke, Viper advanced on Ihwa. He lunged forward, delivering a powerful kick that sent her sprawling to the ground. Standing over her, Viper observed her with a grim expression. "You're persistent," he remarked, adding, "Now I understand how Jade met her end by your hands." With a brutal grip, he seized her by the throat. "You're dangerous, and you'll only get worse," he asserted, concluding, "It's a good thing we're stopping you before it's too late." Suddenly, an armored figure materialized behind Viper. Before he could even react, the figure delivered a single, devastating punch to his head. Viper's lifeless body crumpled to the ground. A young woman appeared beside the armored figure. "What else would they be?" she asked. From his hiding spot, Chaos watched their arrival. Incredulous, he brought a hand to his face. As he stared at the young man with a scarred face, he finally understood. They were villains. A voice remarked on the patient's unusually high bone density, a trait shared by all who possessed special abilities. Ihwa slowly opened her eyes. Inside the room, a man commented that her bullet wound seemed to have already healed, and that Sinclair had also changed her clothes. Deciding to simply administer some nutritional supplements, he began searching for an object among a tray of scalpels. Wearing a gas mask, he finally located what he sought. When he turned back, he realized the bed was now empty. Ihwa held a scalpel pressed against his body. A calm instruction came: it's best to flatten the blade first. He then explained that otherwise, she might hit the ribcage. Ihwa aimed the blade at the man and demanded, "Who are you, and where am I?" In response, he asked if she had ever heard of the Nameless. He then began to explain that they could be called survivors. Survivors of the Great War between the Hero Clan and the Villain Association, though only one of them had truly fought in it. Introducing himself as Vector, the Nameless's doctor, he questioned if she shouldn't be grateful to the one who saved her life. Ihwa remained still, gripping the scalpel. A young woman opened the room's door and announced that Ihwa was awake. She then informed them that Enen was looking for her. Vector suggested they all go together. As they walked, the young woman remarked that Ihwa seemed surprisingly at ease. She continued, suggesting that the apple Ihwa was eating might be poisoned. Ihwa replied, "Poison doesn't affect me much." The other girl turned and asked, "What did you do with the apple core?" Ihwa simply stated, "I ate it." The blonde young woman found her amusing. The group proceeded down a long corridor. Ihwa observed the palm of her own hand. She assessed the situation, formulating her escape plan. Her eyes darted from side to side. Ihwa knew she could take down the man named Vector in seconds. However, the real problem was the girl beside her. Hesitantly, Ihwa wondered what to do, but a voice declared it was already too late. The blonde young woman opened a wooden door and announced their arrival. She then welcomed everyone to the Nameless's hideout. Excited, the girl introduced herself as Rachel Sinclair. Pointing to the stern-looking man, she introduced John Nash. Finally, she revealed that their leader was the man named Enen. At the Hero Clan's 17th branch, a man questioned Chaos. In a harsh tone, he demanded, "How could you simply let Viper die like that?" In his defense, Chaos explained that there was nothing he could do, as the enemy was too strong. The manager warned him that Viper had immense potential, and the superiors would not let this slip easily. Faced with this, the young man pleaded with the branch manager for help to resolve the situation. Lighting his cigar, the man lamented having accepted the manager position, expressing how much he missed his days in the field. When he asked who was responsible, Chaos told him it was Enen. Trying to recall, the manager searched his memory for where he had heard the name Enen before. He then dropped his cigar, asking, "Are you talking about the Smiling Man?" With a smile, Chaos confirmed, then asked, "Why?" Turning around in irritation, the manager yelled at Chaos for not telling him sooner, then left him to his own devices. A maximum alert was issued, as all heroes from the branch would need to be summoned. The Smiling Man was back. Back at the hideout, Enen told them to cut the idle chatter. Sinclair immediately raised her hand and volunteered. Excitedly, she declared she had been waiting for this moment as she drew a large blade from its sheath. The girl swiftly advanced toward Ihwa. Sinclair attacked, bringing her weapon down in an overhead strike, but Ihwa dodged the continuous assaults. With precision, she blocked the weapon's hilt with her hand, then landed a direct punch on Sinclair. Ihwa delivered a powerful kick straight to Sinclair's stomach. She then hurled her against a wooden pillar. The silver-haired young woman stopped, her fist clenched. Lying on the ground, Sinclair extended her hand and admitted, "I'm defeated." Ihwa merely observed the scene from above. Without a word, both girls shook hands as Vector watched it all. Ihwa's reflection appeared in his mask. Vector clapped his hands and declared an end to the initiation, Ihwa questioned him. Why did you save my life? Observing from a distance, Engen asked, what do you think we are trying to accomplish? According to him, the group's objective was to defeat the hero clan. Engen then revealed that the clan itself had killed her sister. Ihwa stared at him and demanded, how do you know that? Elsewhere, Engen approached an ancient building under the moonlight. Upon entering, he greeted a man, remarking that it had been a while. An elderly man in a wheelchair awaited him in the shadows. Calmly, the older man presumed Engen must be wondering why he had been summoned. Engen silently met his gaze, then admitted he would be lying if he claimed not to be curious. The elder revealed there was someone he hoped Engen could assist. Engen sarcastically asked if the old man had finally grown fond of the dog he had been training. From the wheelchair came the remark that Engen had grown more arrogant since their last encounter, followed by the question of whether he was now ready to talk. With visible tension, Engen gripped the arm of a chair. Taking a seat, he agreed to hear what the old man had to say for now. The elder began to speak of her, suggesting she be called the hero killer. In a firm tone, he described her as a born fighter with incredible willpower, affirming that she would certainly become incredibly important in the future. The elder stated she was not yet ready. According to him, facing much stronger opponents would surely lead to her demise. He then continued to elaborate, and Engen understood the request was to nurture a tiger cub. Clearly, the old man laid out the objective, to destroy the hero clan. But this meant inevitably confronting that girl. As a warning, he asserted that if nothing was done about her, she would be the cause of his ruin. Engen questioned if the hero killer could truly reach her potential. He then agreed to the request, making it clear he would not be responsible if she ended up broken. In response, the elder asked what he meant by broken. As Engen turned to leave, he heard the affirmation that she had already learned everything she could. From the wheelchair came the advice for him to try not to be destroyed by her. Back at the hideout, Ihwa faced Engen and John. Coldly, Engen asked, do you truly intend to find your family's killer, or do you merely wish to die fighting like that? Ihwa insisted he still hadn't answered how he knew about her sister. Without warning, John lunged forward, throwing a direct punch. Ihwa barely dodged the blow, her keen eyes analyzing his movement as the attack stopped mere centimeters from her face. Then Engen called out to John, firmly stating he was speaking to her. The girl watched the scene unfold. She wondered how such a group of misfits managed to stay together. John warned her, I won't go easy on you next time. Vector despaired at the situation, but Sinclair merely asked him to let them have some fun. A plea to cease hostilities arose, attempting to appease the tension. Ihwa understood she had been rescued for a specific task. They needed something they lacked, but their opponents possessed: information. Regardless of the offer, Ihwa decided it was best to take the initiative. Vector raised his hands. I think I know what they want from her. Ihwa realized they were willing to give her the answers she sought in exchange for her strength. Observing from the side, Engen considered her perceptive. Ihwa finally agreed to the proposal. Turning, she asked, what exactly are you planning? Vector began to reveal the plan. We will annihilate the 17th division of the hero clan. The young woman questioned if they would do that with only 4 people, thinking it could only be a joke. Engen corrected her. What you mean is, once we include you, we will be 5. In a desert, a woman asked about their schedule. Her assistant replied that their appointments were fully booked for the next 2 weeks. The blue-haired woman apologized, but her superior interrupted her. Victoria stated, it's not your fault. She then commented that it wasn't easy being the face of the hero clan. A tremor rippled through the desert, startling the assistant. With a smile, Victoria said, it seems they are arriving. Armed vehicles sped across the desert. A man with a flamethrower ordered them to burn everything. Another man prepared to attack. One soldier spotted a woman on the horizon, but his superior ordered them to run her over. Standing before them, she watched their approach and called them a beautiful dream. A massive sword fell from the sky, embedding itself in the ground. She asked her assistant, are there any reporters or cameras nearby? Grasping the sword, she began to spin it. Confidently, she affirmed, it seems I won't need to hold back. Victoria charged toward the vehicles. With a single blow, she struck one of the vehicles. Amidst the destruction, she remarked, I'll need a drink when this is all over. John questioned the decision, asking if it was wise to let her go that way, admitting his dislike for her. He then asked Sinclair why she hadn't used her gift during the fight. Sincerely, the young woman replied that she hadn't wanted to kill her, and in truth, she quite liked her. Sinclair described her as beautiful and quite straightforward. Overhearing their conversation, Vector remarked that they would see about that. He added that he had almost fallen into the same trap, as her every move had been calculated. Even when she appeared irritated, it was likely just an act. Sinclair questioned how he could be so sure. Placing a hand on his own chest, Vector revealed that her heart rate had never changed. It had been consistent, he explained, from the moment they met in the patient's room, right up until she left the hideout. The girl commented that Ihwa was the opposite of Engen, who appeared calm and controlled on the surface. But Engen interrupted her before she could continue, firmly asserting himself. Engen announced that the hero killer would join them, and declared that she would participate in the attack on the 17th Division. Sinclair celebrated the news, while Vector brought a hand to his face. Turning, Engen addressed John. As a warning, he made it clear that John was not to attack without orders, threatening, I will kill you personally if you disobey. Sinclair and Vector observed everything in silence. The doctor then invited the young woman to eat something, and she accepted. In a gym, Ihwa trained intensely, moving from pull-ups to standing on a platform, observing Engen far above her. He was on a much higher level, she realized. In silent reflection, Ihwa recognized that Viper was powerful, but Engen was on an entirely different plane. She knew there were heroes much more powerful than Engen, and the doubt arose if she would ever be able to reach their level. She held a stopwatch firmly, concentrating her energy, trying with effort to keep her power active. When the stopwatch stopped, its display showed 7 minutes and 37 seconds. Without strength, her body body collapsed to the floor. Though an improvement, it still wasn't enough. Then a promise came to mind. In her memory, her sister's voice ordered Ihwa to survive. Within her mind, the insistence continued, telling her she had to survive. With effort, the young woman rose and told herself that this was only the beginning. Ihwa asserted that her gift improved every time she stole her opponent's powers. Her fist clenched as she declared that she would steal all their gifts and kill them. From the shadows, an opponent's face emerged. Ihwa positioned herself before the immense figure as indistinct silhouettes advanced through the mist. She attacked the first figure with a broad blade, the strike continuing without hesitation. Then her hand extended forward. Coldly, the young woman declared that she would use them as stepping stones and that she would climb to the top. The setting shifted to the front of a bar called Get Back. Inside, the establishment was completely empty. Behind the counter, an older man adjusted his glasses and asked, "Was there a fight?" Already wearing an apron, Ihwa confirmed that there had been. He watched her in silence for a moment before saying he would leave the rest to her. He then walked away, leaving the counter empty. Ihwa began to clean the floor of the establishment. For a moment, her gaze shifted to the side. As she cleaned a window, an encouraging thought arose for her to speak her mind. A direct question came, wanting to know if she intended to quit, and her movement was interrupted. The memory returned, showing chaos inside the bar, followed by the image of the blood-covered floor. Through the glass, Ihwa finally answered, yes. With her head bowed, she explained that since she had been exposed, she could no longer stay there. In silence, the man stared at her. He recalled how she had begged to stay, but remaining would be a burden. He then said she could return at any time. Ihwa commented that there were hardly any customers anyway, and asked him to drop by from time to time for a break. The man replied, "Even so, I will charge you, of course." Outside, chaos appeared pressed against the glass, and the manager asked, "Is he your friend?" Ihwa shoved a man aside, asserting her suspicion that he would return. She declared that she wouldn't let chaos get his way this time. With a swift movement, she struck him across the face, then seized him in midair before delivering a forceful kick. Chaos reeled from the impact. A blade was pulled from her leg, and Ihwa advanced, weapon in hand. But her attack was blocked by an invisible barrier right before his face. From the other side, Chaos smiled, a question forming about why he had come unarmed. Ihwa turned and told the man she would be back in a minute. The man held a piece of clothing, watching her. The scene shifted to an outdoor area at night. Nearby, Chaos retrieved a drink from a vending machine, then tossed a can to Ihwa. She opened the beverage and remarked that it was tasty. Ihwa warned him, "You're crossing the line." Sitting on a bench, Chaos commented that he hadn't expected her to follow him. Ihwa looked away and told him not to worry about her. He then explained that last time he had merely been joking and had come unarmed. She questioned his motivations, asking what he truly wanted. The image of Viper flashed in her mind, and the possibility of revenge for his death was considered. Chaos drank his soda, and the idea was discarded. Ihwa then sat at the other end of the bench and asked, "What do you want?" He stated that she seemed eager for the answer, and that he wouldn't prolong the conversation. Chaos pointed at the girl and said, "I want you." He concluded by asking her to become his partner. Ihwa remained silent at the proposal. Chaos began to laugh, and she wondered what he was talking about. Ihwa questioned, "Are you going to keep joking?" He affirmed, "I'm serious." He then revealed the silhouette of someone with the ability to shapeshift. Afterwards, the image of another person capable of controlling fire appeared. It was explained that these were abilities only the chosen possessed, known as Dadavas. Those who mastered this mysterious force also had incredibly resilient bodies and could live much longer than normal humans, but ironically, few of them managed to live long enough. A woman stated that Viper had been his partner for over 10 years. Holding a lollipop, Yuna's song remarked, "I bet that must hurt." Turning, she asked, "Isn't that right, Chaos?" Yuna pulled the sheet from a body, noted the severed head, and lamented that such a grim-looking individual had possessed such a bright personality. She then covered the body, asserting that in the end, the dead were all the same, and asked how his visit went. Spreading his arms, Chaos replied, "Of course, she rejected me immediately." The scene revealed he had observed the meeting from afar, and it seemed she had already found other companions. Yuna commented that he didn't appear shaken in the slightest. With a smile, Chaos said that even after rejecting his proposal, she had promised him a small favor. Curious, she asked what favor it would be, but he leaned over the body and answered, "It's a secret." Announcing his departure, he picked up a pair of gloves. Displaying them, Chaos said, "I came to get these. I've always wanted to wear them." Yuna simply asked him to be careful out there. She then revealed a premonition that something bad would happen to their division. The scene ended with a close-up on Chaos's eyes. It then came to mind that, during that short period, Ihwa had grown even stronger. Chaos believed the clan's high executives wouldn't think twice about her, but he reflected that even small embers, given enough time, could transform into a massive firestorm. The question then arose, what kind of monster would she become? The scene returned to the present, with Ihwa cleaning her knife. Afterwards, she tested the strength of a wire by stretching it with her hands. On the table, a cell phone began to vibrate. A message appeared on the screen, asking if everything was ready. Ihwa sprinted down a corridor, reaching the edge of a tall building before leaping from its rooftop. During her descent, she activated a device in her hand, firing a grappling hook upwards that secured itself to the corner of another building. Ihwa landed on the ground in a combat pose, her gaze fixed forward. From a nearby rooftop, she observed her target, the guard tower. Two men stood guard at its entrance. Below, the guards conversed idly. Suddenly, one of them turned his head, raising his weapon and questioning who was there. His partner asked what was wrong, and the first guard, scratching his head, mused if it had just been an animal, just as a figure emerged silently behind him. Before he could react, Ihwa struck him in the face. The second guard lunged at her, pistol drawn, but Ihwa swiftly grabbed the weapon, crushing it in her grip, and followed with a powerful punch that sent him reeling. The man fell to his knees. Ihwa warned him she would spare his life if he remained quiet, combat, then ordered him to retrieve his walkie-talkie. He picked up the communication device. With a swift, precise strike, Ihwa hit him on the nape of the neck. She then smashed the walkie-talkie to the ground with a single punch, delivering another decisive blow to his neck. Stepping back, she left both men unconscious behind her. In a city covered in fog, a voice questioned, "Are you saying the 17th Division has been infiltrated?" Ihwa turned to the small group. "Is there a plan?" she asked. Rachel Sinclair raised an arm with a grin. "First we go boom, then kaboom," she suggested. Vector scoffed. "Why don't we just go in and finish everyone off?" John Nash crushed a rock in his hand. "Kill them all," he stated. Ihwa brought a hand to her face, then flatly called them idiots. The young woman turned and addressed Engen. "Engen," she called. Calmly, he responded. "First, we incapacitate the guards." He clarified that he meant the area's security guards, who maintain public order under the banner of the hero's clan. As they cannot use gifts, these guards are often assigned to low-risk situations. Rachel scoffed. "Are they weak? Do we really need to worry about them?" Ihwa, however, affirmed that Engen was right. "It's better to minimize any unknown variables," she stated. A hand neared the clan emblem. Once the guards were subdued and the tower exploded, the hero's clan would be forced to divert their attention elsewhere. Though they didn't know who was truly in charge, they were certain they would feel pressured to act. Vector suddenly recalled something. "I heard the head of security for Area 17 is a retired hero," he commented, his tone turning cautious. "Things could get complicated if he gets involved." Engen nodded. "Then it will be necessary to eliminate him," he stated, "to make things easier in the future." Rachel immediately offered. "Just as I don't trust you, I know you don't trust me either," she said frankly. "This will be my chance to prove my worth to all of you. What do you think?" Engen agreed, but observed, "That's not a fair trade." He turned to Ihwa. "Do you want something in return?" Ihwa extended a hand. "I want that," she said, snatching an object from his coat with a quick movement. Ihwa dodged a guard's lunge, then swiftly countered with a direct punch to his face. She advanced down a corridor, past a trail of defeated guards, until her footsteps ceased before a large door. From inside the security room, a voice commented, "You've come quite far." The head of security, seated with his back to the door, asked, "Does that mean all my subordinates have been killed?" Ihwa stepped into the room. "I don't know if they're dead," she replied evenly, "but I do know you're about to be." Ihwa reiterated her certainty of his impending death. The man rose, commenting that he'd heard whispers of someone causing trouble in the lower levels. He then gripped his axe, concluding it could only have been her. Introducing himself as Grayman, he accused Ihwa of killing Jade and Viper. Ihwa stretched, then asked, "What if it was me?" Grayman advanced, attacking with his axe, but the young woman intercepted the blow with her bare hand. Ihwa then countered with her own weapon, and Grayman dodged. Keeping her distance, Ihwa warned him not to hold back. She challenged him to come at her with everything he had. Grayman rolled up the sleeves of his overalls. He lunged forward at high speed. Ihwa evaded and prepared to retaliate. A direct punch struck his face. Ihwa attempted to follow up with a kick. Her leg was caught mid-air. With brute force, Grayman spun her body and slammed her against the wall. Advancing again, Grayman delivered a powerful punch that landed squarely on her face. Still down, Ihwa seized his arm. Using his momentum, she applied an arm lock and hurled him to the ground. Ihwa landed a direct kick to his face. With a leap, she retreated to gain distance. Grayman rose, wiping the blood that streamed from his nose. Attentive, he noted her movements were creative and unconventional. He also realized she possessed the necessary physique to execute them. The man understood there was vast combat knowledge at play, but he sensed something more. Grayman recognized her as an excellent fighter. The talent she displayed wasn't merely natural, but the result of deeply ingrained training. He concluded she must have undergone infernal training to reach this level. Despite this, he considered Ihwa far from invincible and decided to defeat her gradually. His arms trembled from the force of their clash, while Ihwa urged him to simply tell her the truth. She realized Grayman was still holding back, understanding she wasn't yet being taken seriously as an opponent. Surrounded by blades, Grayman advanced. He acknowledged that if she had truly wished to, she could have killed him multiple times already, but he clenched his fist, stating, "You cannot." It then became clear that she wanted him to use his gift. Standing before a long staircase, she said, "You must become my step." She completed the thought as she landed a punch to his face. The young woman then advanced with a high kick, but he dodged the attack. Next, she struck him with another blow, the impact landing squarely on his face. She hit him again, warning, "I'm going to rip off your mask." With another punch, she continued, "You're just a snack for me." Then she struck him with a spinning kick. The force of the blow sent him flying against the wall. Amidst the debris, Grayman rose. Ihwa watched him, asking, "Was that enough?" In response, he took a deep breath. A blade was hurled in her direction. The weapon tore through the ground, opening a chasm between them. Grayman declared that she didn't need to state who she was or where she came from. He then proclaimed he would discover it by tearing out her every agonizing breath. Ihwa picked up 2 metal pipes. The young woman twirled the weapons and told him to come forward. With the pipes in hand, she challenged him. "Try me." Just as bodies require nutrients to generate energy, gift users possess their own unique power source. They harness a specific energy known as est. Battles between gift users are determined by who can wield this energy most efficiently. Some users simply have smaller reserves than others. While certain gifts require minimal est to activate, others demand a significant amount of this energy. Ihwa can utilize the Jade gift for over 5 minutes, yet she can only sustain the Viper gift for mere seconds. If she isn't careful during combat, the young woman could easily face death. Grayman lunged with a strike. Ihwa blocked the attack, needing to avoid his most dangerous blows. Her defense managed to contain the blade's advance. The man then initiated a direct body attack. At times, accepting certain blows became a necessary tactic, especially if it allowed for a counterattack. A strike landed squarely on Grayman, who quickly recovered from the impact. It was then that the decision to use their gifts arose, as these powers were typically activated only in critical moments. Far from the conflict, 2 water bottles rested on a table. A single drop of liquid trickled from one of the containers. In the corridor, Ihwa struck from above, but her blow was halted as Grayman seized the blade. He then advanced with a punch, the pressure of his attack relentless against her. She blocked the blow with her forearm, yet something began to feel distinctly wrong. Grayman confirmed that there was indeed something amiss. A direct punch landed on Grayman's face. Using his own weapon, Ihwa pulled him forcefully, sending his body crashing to the ground. A moment of doubt, wondering if he had grown careless, quickly gave way to the realization that this was not the case, as a dagger was revealed. The blade was then plunged into his hand. Standing over him, Ihwa completed her sentence, asserting that she had always been stronger. He immediately recoiled in disbelief, calling it absurd. Then blades pierced Grayman's body. Glancing back, Ihwa explained that Jade had been too weak. Leaping away, she added that Engen was far too powerful. Out of necessity, she revealed, she needed a training partner of his caliber. In silence, they stared intently at each other. Commenting on her own stroke of luck, Ihwa struck him again. Grayman remained standing, gravely wounded, before his body finally slumped against the wall. Through his pain, he questioned her audacity in facing the clan of heroes and demanded to know her motivation. As a final warning, he cautioned that she would end up in a far worse situation than his own. Agreeing that it might be true, Ihwa struck him across the face. But, she declared, once she died, he wouldn't even exist anymore. Lying on the ground, the man pleaded for someone to save him. Without hesitation, Ihwa said, "You will die now." Grayman's body plunged downward, the impact causing him to shatter against a vehicle below. Ihwa removed the dagger from her own hand. Then she observed the city through the broken window as night enveloped the building rooftops. As she leaped, her gaze drifted downward, spotting a solitary figure in an alley below. In the alley, Victoria removed her cap and asked, "What is that?" The woman greeted her with a simple hello. With a mere flick, she sent Ihwa flying backward with force, sending the young woman sprawling to the ground in a cloud of dust. From atop a wall, Victoria observed her, wondering if Ihwa had managed to block the attack. She then commented that she smelled blood. "Who on earth did you massacre?" the woman asked. Without hesitation, Ihwa replied, "I don't need to answer you." Victoria noted, "Despite everything, you have a beautiful voice. That only makes me want to tear you apart. 9 gifted users wield the strongest powers, unbound by the rules of the hero clan. The world is theirs for the taking." Among them is Victoria, a being who existed long before the era of heroes and villains. Ihwa objectively knew she couldn't defeat Victoria, at least not yet. However, if she could create an opening, she might stand a chance. Ihwa launched a direct punch, but Victoria caught her fist with her bare hands. "What are you doing?" the woman asked coldly, before striking Ihwa across the face. Ihwa's body went limp. Victoria held her suspended. "I don't like you," Victoria stated, adding, "Your clothes don't suit you either." Then, the woman's voice sharpened once more. "Why are you pretending to be dead?" Victoria questioned. Ihwa whispered something so low the woman couldn't understand it, prompting a question in Victoria's mind about what had been said. Engen had explained to Ihwa that she could only permanently steal the gifts of those she truly killed. Ihwa, however, had simply replied that she wasn't worried about that. Engen's serious warning about her gift not being easy to handle at that level echoed in her thoughts. Back in the present, Ihwa's hand touched Victoria's shoulder. "I've got you," she stated firmly. A dark energy began to swirl around them. Then, a massive explosion erupted. When the dust settled, Victoria found herself alone, realizing the young woman had vanished. Far from the scene, someone commented that Ihwa always returned in terrible shape, implying the security chief must have been formidable. Rachel Sinclair entered the room, announcing that Ihwa had finally woken up. "Do you recognize the ceiling?" Rachel asked. Sitting up in bed, facing Vector and Rachel, Ihwa merely asked for food. With a ravenous appetite, Ihwa began to devour a pizza, prompting someone to remark on how well she ate. The young woman continued to consume the food without pause. Vector interrupted her. "Wait a minute," he pointed to her arm. "Isn't that broken?" he asked. Calmly, Ihwa rolled up her sleeve, revealing the injury. She simply stated that it would heal after a nap, leaving Vector incredulous. Vector asked if the preparations were complete, but was told one thing was still missing. Rachel Sinclair explained that, according to Engen, the heroes of the 17th Division would soon begin to gather. Once they were all assembled in the same building, their plan was simply to blow the entire structure to smithereens. A voice questioned how they would acquire so many explosives, especially with security heightened after Grayman's death. Just then, Engen entered the room. "I know a guy," he stated. A delivery man struggled with 2 heavy boxes, silently questioning who on earth had placed such an order. He double-checked the map on his phone, confirming the address was correct, despite the building before him being one he'd never known existed there. Wiping sweat from his brow, the young man rang the doorbell. "Delivery," he announced. Rachel opened the door, revealing the entire group. A nervous smile crept onto the delivery man's face. He wondered if he was in deep trouble. "I'll just leave the order here," he blurted out before turning to flee. Desperate, the delivery man bolted, the entire group pouring out after him in hot pursuit. The desperate delivery man continued his flight, leaping across rooftops to escape his pursuers. He landed precisely on another building, but a strange distortion in the air made him wonder if this was some kind of power. Ihwa, swift as a shadow, drew one of her specialized pieces of equipment. With a wide, powerful swing, she aimed a devastating blow that impacted the wall right beside the delivery man. Before he could react, another small sphere launched towards him. The projectile struck a rooftop structure, sending the young man tumbling towards the edge of the building. He rolled across the ground, struggling to recover from the impact. Meanwhile, John, using brute force, smashed through a wall, nearly catching the delivery man, who narrowly managed to dodge the first assault. Without pause, John lunged again. In a split-second reaction, reaction, the delivery man flung a coin into the air. John Nash's punch missed its target, slamming into the hard concrete. From atop the building, a voice questioned if such an aggressive pursuit was truly necessary. With a heavy leap, John Nash landed on the rooftop. Ihwa approached the delivery man, snapping her fingers impatiently. Realizing the gravity of his situation, the young man quickly stated, "I don't know why you're here. I'm not just showing off, and I doubt you can match my speed." Ihwa responded with a cold gaze. "If you were that fast, you would have already left. You're not as quick as you think." She then questioned, "Is your power to become invisible when you throw that coin?" The delivery man's ability indeed allowed him to turn invisible upon launching a coin, but it required him to retrieve it to use the skill again. Ihwa's quick deduction left him incredulous. Preparing for a new move, he retorted by launching several coins into the air, asking, "What do you think of this?" Ihwa's eyes, sharp and attentive, tracked the suspended coins. As she reached out for one of them, the delivery man's body shimmered, becoming translucent. The instant she identified the correct coin, he knew he had been found. Ihwa struck him with a powerful kick, sending him sprawling across the rooftop. "His gift is interesting," a voice commented. Ihwa closed in on him, asking, "Is that all you've got?" "No," he affirmed. "I still have a trick up my sleeve." Realizing he couldn't defeat them in a direct confrontation, he decided on a new approach. Accepting the penalty for escape, he executed an agile leap, crossing buildings in a desperate farewell. Shouting into the distance, he yelled, "I hope I never see you again." As he fled, he lamented the loss of all his money. Nearby, Rachel Sinclair, hidden from view, observed the unfolding scene. A doubt flickered through her mind. Was that the same girl from before? Without further hesitation, Rachel charged towards them. The delivery man skillfully dodged her attack, thinking it was too easy. But then, he felt vines begin to track him, swiftly ensnaring him in midair. He awoke amidst what appeared to be a dense forest, surrounded by ancient trees and strange plant-covered figures. One of the creatures explained, "This is my garden, a gift I rarely use because it's quite exhausting." Rachel then materialized, presenting him with an ultimatum. There were only two ways out: wait or kill her. With a taunting smile, she added, "You don't look like a strong fighter. What do you intend to do?" Immobilized, the delivery man heard her ask, "So will you finally cooperate?" The young woman revealed a monstrous weapon, inviting him, "Let's have some fun here." Elsewhere, Chain Logis was a distribution company shrouded in rumors. Though it appeared ordinary on the surface, whispers claimed it could deliver anything for the right price. The company had risen to the top 10 in its sector, yet its enigmatic leader, known only as Chain, remained a complete mystery. A knock echoed on a metal door. The delivery man spoke a password, and through the door's narrow slit, a man recognized him as number 9. With a smile, the delivery man stated, "I want to see the boss." The door swung open, revealing an imposing man within. As the group moved down the corridor, John Nash delivered a punch to the delivery man. Rachel questioned nervously, "Is this a trap?" But the delivery man quickly denied it. They continued their journey towards a light at the end of the dark passageway. They entered a large hall where a man awaited them, flanked by guards. Seated at a table, the boss inquired, "What's happening here?" The guards watched in silence as the man began to laugh. The delivery man announced, "These people wanted to meet you." He pulled back the collar of his shirt, revealing the symbol of Chain Logis. The boss's eyes gleamed with intense light, and he instantly gave the order to kill them. Engen surged forward, effortlessly taking down every guard in his path. Dark blades materialized at the boss's neck. Terrified, the man learned that they had brought a bomb powerful enough to destroy the entire 17th Division. He then stammered, "The man before you, he's not the real Chain." Just then, a door opened, and a voice complained about having its game interrupted. The true Chain appeared, asking, "Are you mistreating my subordinates?" Engen, taken by surprise, stared at him. Chain, with an expression of astonishment, recognized Engen. A man desperately crawled across the floor, tears streaming down his face as he called for his boss and clung to Chain's leg. Without a moment's hesitation, Chain kicked him away. A voice called Engen's name, and Engen appeared, asking Chain what he was doing there. Ihwa watched the scene, recognizing the two men before her. She continued to stare at them with a serious expression. Suddenly, Rachel Sinclair leaned in, asking what Ihwa was thinking. Ihwa replied that it was nothing, but Rachel clearly saw her curiosity was directed at the two men. Rachel then explained that they had fought together in the war, and Engen had even saved Chain's life once. Chain questioned if they truly expected him to get involved in such a dangerous task. Engen clarified that they only needed the explosives, not his full involvement. Gesturing towards the warehouse, Chain mentioned the considerable time it had taken to build everything inside. He refused to help, stating that he couldn't risk losing everything and ending up back where he started. Engen told Ihwa he hadn't expected her to speak up, emphasizing that they needed to act fast. Chain pointed at the girl, asking who she was and telling her to leave so the adults could talk. Engen then introduced her as the hero killer and the group's wild card. Chain reacted, finding the name amusing, but Engen added that she had already killed 2 heroes. He warned that Chain could be next. Stepping forward, Ihwa told Chain to stop wasting time. With a firm voice, she demanded he hand over the explosives. Later, the young man was in his room playing a video game. In the game, one character asked if they had done the right thing by helping the Nameless. The other character replied that if it weren't for him, Engen would have killed everyone. Irritated, Chain complained that the game was trash. One of his men approached. Chain wondered what the traitor wanted. Questioning the quantity of explosives, the man stated that it would only provoke the hero clan. Chain explained it was a form of insurance. The clan would search for them once the bombs exploded, but with a small quantity, no hero would be harmed, allowing them to apologize and claim forced cooperation. Still doubtful, the man questioned if they could truly take down the hero clan, considering the task nearly impossible. From behind, Engen approached approached Chain and whispered something. Chain, incredulous, watched Engen leave, processing what had just been said. His subordinate reminded him that despite everything, their intention was to bring down the 17th Division. In silence, Chain considered what would happen if they actually succeeded. His men grew animated, excited by the possibility of profits, but Chain wondered what they would do next. Elsewhere, the scene shifted to the interior of a room. A hand reached for a pill bottle on a table. The movement faltered, and the bottle clattered to the floor. Yuna Song knelt to retrieve it. Sitting on the floor, Chaos asked when she had arrived. She replied that she had just gotten there. A clock ticked on the wall. Chaos took a sip of water from a bottle. Yuna sat on the floor and opened her medical bag. His back was covered in scars. Carefully, she began to apply electrodes, stating that it no longer made sense to continue this treatment. Yuna suggested it wasn't too late for him to retire. In a sudden movement, Chaos lunged towards her, pinning her against the wall. Firmly, he said, "Not today." Without reacting, Yuna replied that the decision was his. She technically explained that she would increase the dosage, but only as a temporary measure, as his recovery rate wasn't good. To be clear, she stated he had been fighting for too long. As he put on his shirt, Chaos heard her say he could no longer fight. Ignoring her, he replied that he only wanted to know how the war would end. Yuna stated that the war was already over. He disagreed, replying that the war had never truly ended. Something outside caught his attention. Yuna then commented that the new recruits seemed to have arrived. 3 figures approached a large building. They were introduced as Sharpshooter, Claymore, and Stonefist. Stonefist asked where the welcoming committee was. Sharpshooter explained that the manager had sent them on a mission. Villains might be infiltrating, and some heroes had already been killed. Claymore expressed surprise at Viper's death, saying he thought Viper was a good person. Stonefist agreed about Viper's rare talent, but Claymore clarified he wasn't referring to that. Leaning against a pillar, Heavy Smoker emerged and greeted them. The next scene showed reflections in windows. A white truck entered an underground parking lot. Inside the vehicle, the driver noticed something unusual. He commented aloud that the place was one of the clan's bases. As he drove through, he questioned the lack of security. Still, he decided not to dwell on it. Finally, he revealed a time bomb hidden inside a bag, calling it a special delivery. A cell phone vibrated on the office table. Heavy Smoker picked up the device to answer it. He then turned to the 3 recruits, questioning if they were the only ones present, noting that they didn't even make up half the expected group. Sharpshooter asked how many people he had expected, adding that they had come despite their busy schedules. Stonefist agreed, remarking that the 17th Division was small and transfers were common. He snapped his fingers, a clear sign of his animation. "This looks like it's going to be fun." Sharpshooter, however, countered, dismissing the mission as a mere nuisance. Stonefist smiled. The Smiling Man was a significant figure during the war, remember? As his arm began to transform, he expressed his excitement at the chance to take him down personally. The woman merely commented that it would make for good target practice. Claymore, however, warned that if it truly was him, they needed to remain vigilant. Stonefist clapped him on the back. Why so much fear of a ghost from the past? He then turned to Heavy Smoker, who had also fought in the war, to confirm his account. Puffing on his cigar, the older man simply called him an idiot. Annoyed, Stonefist reacted to the insult. Heavy Smoker turned to Yuna, asking about Chaos's condition. She replied that he was gravely injured and would be unable to participate. Sharpshooter questioned how Chaos could have survived when Viper had died, implying that perhaps he lacked what it took to be a hero. Yuna retorted sharply, telling her to shut up and asserting that Chaos was more of a hero than Sharpshooter would ever be. Annoyed, Sharpshooter aimed her crossbow directly at Yuna's face. With an arrow notched and ready, she asked if Yuna was trying to start something. Suddenly, the floor around them began to crack. Sharpshooter murmured that it didn't sound like a mere fight. Outside, a massive explosion erupted. Heavy Smoker lit his cigar. "I was expecting them. This fight will be difficult." The group quickly regrouped, declaring that the 17th Division would defeat the Smiling Man. Elsewhere, a lone figure scrutinized a menu. The blue-haired woman closed the menu, complaining about the exorbitant price. The audience watched in silent anticipation as a figure walked toward the stage. Victoria emerged before the gathered crowd. Approaching a grand piano, she settled onto the bench, ready to begin her performance. Other musicians joined her, with violin and cello in hand. The trio began to play, their instruments weaving a tapestry of perfect harmony. The pianist executed the music with intense passion. The melody swelled, growing increasingly aggressive and chaotic with each passing note. Struggling to keep pace, the other musicians began to sweat under the strain. In the audience, the blue-haired woman admitted she wasn't a music expert, but one thing she was certain of. A man, taking a sip of water, commented that the performance was undeniably strange. With a faint, enigmatic smile, the pianist met the audience's gaze. Victoria approached a nearby table. "Hecate, you arrived early." From a distance, 2 men observed their conversation. Hecate admitted she was slightly surprised. "I didn't realize you enjoyed this sort of thing, Victoria." Victoria explained that it was a good way to practice controlling her own strength. Casually, she demonstrated by bending a fork in her hand, the utensil crumpling under her seemingly effortless grip. 2 waiters approached to serve their meal. Hecate took a bite of her meat, then changed the subject. Victoria mused aloud, "I wonder why Heavy Smoker is avoiding my calls." Her companion confirmed that she was referring to the manager of the 17th Division. The blonde woman suspected something was amiss, especially since no other division seemed aware of the unfolding situation. Hecate added dryly that he was known for prioritizing his own safety. Elsewhere, Ihwa deduced the truth of the situation, connecting it to the newcomer. He then declared it a gift from the Smiling Man, a harbinger of a significant problem. Victoria stretched languidly. "I hope something explodes before my leave is over." Hecate interrupted her. "Speaking of explosions, something already is." She pointed toward the window. In the distance, a burning building spewed dark smoke into the sky. sky. Victoria turned to observe the scene, a subtle smile gracing her lips. The burning building belonged to Chain. Ihwa realized they had been tricked. "What's the plan?" Engen replied. "We're going in with everything we've got." The group then advanced together, ready to announce to the hero clan that the Nameless had arrived. The group moved together, determined to announce their arrival to the hero's clan. Engen's hand was enveloped by a powerful force, just as a direct attack slammed into the building. The facade began to crack and crumble from the impact. Observing from within, Stonefist wondered if the assailant's goal was to bring down the entire structure. On another floor, Sharpshooter readied their weapon, only for the window before them to shatter from a powerful blow. The command to kill everyone was issued. A high-speed projectile was fired. Ihwa swiftly drew her sword, deflecting the incoming barrage with a single, fluid movement. The arrows exploded on the ground around her. One arrow burned fiercely, prompting Engen to wonder if it was infused with EST. From the rooftop, Sharpshooter surveyed the unfolding events. Heavy Smoker declared their primary objective was to capture the Smiling Man. Stonefist directed the others to handle the remaining threats. A command Claymore affirmed. Ihwa, noticing Sharpshooter in a distant window, heard Engen's resolute order to take her down. Then, a call for John echoed as he charged toward the building at high speed. John Nash looked up, eyes fixed on his target. From above, Stonefist, Sharpshooter, and Claymore launched themselves into combat. Stonefist landed a direct punch on John, striking the ground with full force. Attentively, Stonefist watched the outcome of his attack. A silhouette slowly rose from the rubble, fueling doubt about how their opponent had recovered so quickly. John Nash unleashed a powerful punch, the impact generating a shockwave that rippled outwards. Claymore leaped from the building, sword poised to strike. Rachel Sinclair intercepted him, their blades clashing with considerable force. She blocked another descending attack. Her weapon descended rapidly, but Claymore managed to parry the blow. Running, Ihwa charged and attacked the young man. He firmly grabbed her shirt collar, halting her strike, then launched her away with a powerful kick. From a distance, Sharpshooter took aim. Then Rachel Sinclair attacked with vines that burst from her hands. Ihwa leaped away as the vines blocked an incoming attack, which exploded upon impact. Ihwa's keen perception quickly grasped that her companion's ability had other uses and had just saved her life. Rachel then approached Ihwa from behind, a smile playing on her lips. On the other side, Claymore and Sharpshooter braced for combat. Rachel, the blonde-haired girl, asked Ihwa which of the two she wished to face. Ihwa replied that she would handle Claymore. Suddenly, a coin was tossed into the air. Claymore, surprised, felt a wire wrap around his body. With sudden force, it yanked him backward, and Ihwa hurled him against a building. She charged toward him, sword in hand. Claymore managed to break free, and their swords finally met in a direct confrontation. Upon contact, the blade of Ihwa's sword began to disintegrate against Claymore's. Without hesitation, she cast the ruined weapon aside and drew a dagger from her belt. As she held her new weapon, Claymore explained that his ability allowed him to corrode metals. Ihwa understood that conventional weapons would be useless against him. A cold realization dawned on her. She would need to use unconventional weaponry. Claymore questioned what kind of weapon that would be, and she answered him immediately. A blade made entirely of light. In response, a new blade formed in the girl's hand. Elsewhere, Engen rose from the shattered floor, his gaze locking with Heavy Smoker, who observed from above. The scene around them revealed a fallen, bloodied figure and the lifeless form of another. Nearby, a third casualty lay motionless atop a truck. Heavy Smoker ground his teeth, puffing on his cigar. With contempt, he sneered, "Do you dare return after fleeing with your tail between your legs?" From near a broken window, a voice urged him to ascend. Heavy Smoker then challenged Engen. "Come up and face me." A vision of the past flashed through Engen's mind. A hand grabbing a boy's face, his pleading to be left alone. Then, a woman's voice telling him to put a smile on his face. A wide, forced smile formed. Back in the present, Engen raised his face, a smile on his lips, and simply agreed. Ihwa gripped her sword, remaining alert, her gaze unwavering with the blade ready. Her abilities were divided into two groups, permanent and temporary. In the case of users she had killed, their gifts could be used without limit as long as she had enough est. However, for the gifts she had only copied, it was a different story. She could use them whenever she wished, but only for a limited time, and unless the original user was killed, those abilities could not be used again. Her combat style resembled a card game. Suddenly, Claymore lunged forward, his strike blocked by Ihwa. With a swift motion, she deflected his blade. He then attempted to pierce her with a direct thrust, but Ihwa managed to intercept the attack at the last second. Both engaged in a struggle of strength, their swords crossed. Seizing the opening, Ihwa grabbed her opponent's blade with her free hand. In response, he tried to strike her legs, but the blow was blocked. Claymore swiftly counterattacked with a vertical slash. Ihwa prepared for his next move. Claymore blocked her attack once more, then grabbed her body and slammed her to the ground. He prepared for his next strike, his blade nearly striking Ihwa's face. Using the ground for leverage, she pushed herself up and threw a handful of dirt in his direction. He defended himself using his own weapon as she advanced quickly along his side. Claymore parried her blow and asked, "Is that Victoria's gift?" Their gazes locked in a standoff. Ihwa advanced, crossing her blade with his. The impact of the clash threw both of them backward. Sliding across the ground, they regained their balance. Forced to retreat, she responded, "No." Already on his feet, Claymore declared that the real question was something else. In a direct tone, he asked who had taught her those techniques. Ihwa replied that she wasn't sure. "Prepared," he asserted. "Today, I will learn from you." Suddenly, her attention turned to the sky. An enormous object plummeted from the heavens toward them. Unexpectedly, John and Stonefist commented on Engen's incredible amount of est, while Sharpshooter wondered if that was the power of the Smiling Man. Hands reached out from the strange strange dark substance, which then manifested as Enen. Before the staircase, his gaze fell upon the structure being consumed by the same material. He then ascended the steps slowly, walking through a white and ethereal landscape. Elsewhere, Heavy Smoker blew smoke from his cigar. He recalled a cruel memory. Even when the villains were at their peak, he still lost. Turning to Enen, he declared, "Today, I will destroy you." Silently, Enen wondered if he would truly destroy him. In a blink, Heavy Smoker was pierced twice. With a serene gaze, Enen observed him as the man's body began to disintegrate, and strange, fish-shaped creatures emerged from his remains. One of them bit into one of Engen's tendrils and devoured it completely. Surrounded by the creatures, Enen questioned if this was the trap. Heavy Smoker explained that they grew stronger as they consumed est and were far superior to his gift. Clasping his hands, Heavy Smoker asserted, "You won't get out of this." The creatures swarmed toward him. Calmly, Enen merely questioned, "Are they really superior?" Heavy Smoker stared at him with an expression of surprise. Enen declared that this was nothing compared to his immense power and stated that it was a mistake to have called him there. Innumerable shadowy hands began to manifest around him, leading to the conclusion that the sun could not reach them there. Ultimately, it became clear that the sun could not reach them there. Back in the city, a large explosion rocked the top of a building. John Nash and Stonefist exchanged blows in the middle of the street. Nash landed a punch to Stonefist's face, remarking that they both seemed to be enjoying themselves. The blow landed squarely. Stonefist quickly recovered and urged him to elevate their fight. His arms then transformed into stone gauntlets. In an immediate response, a powerful punch struck John Nash's face. Rachel Sinclair rushed towards the fight. She launched an attack using a branch of flowers, but Sharpshooter intercepted the blow. Cutting through the flowers, Sharpshooter noted that her opponent was quite resilient. Sharpshooter then leaped back, firing an arrow. Rachel quickly took cover behind a rock as the explosion occurred. Enen, observing Ihwa's fight from afar, noted it would be difficult to replicate such acrobatic movements. Hidden, Rachel Sinclair decided to provoke her opponent. "Would you mind letting me land a hit just once?" she asked. Sharpshooter questioned, "What if a fingernail were broken?" Rachel replied, "My nails aren't that special." Confused, Sharpshooter asked, "What was that?" Rachel teased, "All your shots have missed so far. Maybe you're not so special." Her opponent merely offered a smile. Intrigued, Rachel wondered why. Sharpshooter readied her weapon. "I'll make you regret what you just said," she declared. A single arrow shot into the sky. Rachel looked up, surprised by the maneuver. The projectile then changed trajectory, plummeting directly towards her. She realized she couldn't dodge it. As she prepared to block, the arrow pierced her leg. "That, after all, is my gift," Sharpshooter stated. "Oops," Rachel simply said, removing the arrow. The projectile disintegrated in her hand. She lamented that this was proving difficult, wishing she had faced Claymore instead. It was, she realized, too late to ask for a switch now. Sharpshooter aimed her crossbow again. Rachel leaped away as another explosion occurred, realizing she didn't have much time left. She ran in a zigzag pattern, evading the barrage of projectiles. The young woman ducked, concluding she needed to somehow close the distance. Her opponent then revealed a detonator. A device near Rachel began to beep. She looked down, wondering what it was, just as the artifact exploded, throwing her backward. Amidst the smoke, Rachel wondered when the explosives had been planted. Sharpshooter revealed one of the bombs, explaining that she had planted it while Rachel was distracted, using her movement to force her into the path of the hidden devices. Another arrow struck Rachel's shoulder. Sharpshooter admitted her opponent was formidable, possessing many combat options. "Why so quiet all of a sudden?" she taunted. With a hand on her skirt, Rachel began her response. Vines shot from her hand. "I was just thinking to myself," she stated. Sharpshooter leaped back to dodge the attack. "That's getting old," she asserted. Rachel simply asked, "Is it really?" Her opponent's speed made closing the distance incredibly difficult, especially with her standard shots dealing the most damage. Her specific sixth shot technique, however, was unable to be aimed for a critical hit. With only one option left, Rachel ran directly towards Sharpshooter. As she ran, she hurled an improvised weapon. She continued her desperate advance, intent on reaching her opponent before being incapacitated. Sharpshooter unleashed a barrage of precise projectiles. The first shot grazed Rachel's shoulder, the second struck her leg, the third narrowly missed her hip, the fourth projectile whizzed past her face, the fifth hit her squarely in the back, and the sixth pierced her arm. A wide, determined smile spread across Rachel's face as she watched her opponent through a portal created by her vines. Sharpshooter smiled back, but Rachel's expression filled with surprise. Sharpshooter's apology then came, for that was a real arrow. Sharpshooter prepared her next arrow, announcing, "This will be my sixth strategic shot." The illusionary arrow struck her chest, but the real one remained lodged in her arm. Dodging, Sharpshooter avoided the vines emerging from the ground. Rachel's leg buckled from her wounds, and her body collapsed to the ground, defeated. Her opponent retreated as Rachel felt dizziness creeping in, a consequence of significant blood loss. She wondered if this was the end, yet so much remained to be done. Far away, in Area 55, a group approached the gray castle. A hooded figure cradled a small child amidst the falling snow. In a desolate village, unfortunate children wandered. Plunged into poverty, one attempted to steal a piece of bread. Survival often meant resorting to theft. Few places offered respite, and the gray castle was far from hospitable. During an era of endless civil war, the castle's inhabitants had naturally grown stronger. Those not careful enough found themselves defeated, often losing fingers in the process. One day, breaking the eternal silence, a man in an old carriage appeared. The carriage dragged what looked like a body. It was Rachel, pondering how events had led her to this plight. In a memory, young Rachel was pruning the bushes around her home. Perched on a stool, she stretched to reach the highest branches, musing aloud that she only needed a little more. Suddenly, her foot slipped, and a voice cried out her name. name. Rachel tumbled to the ground, wincing in pain. Her mother rushed over, asking if she was all right. Rachel confirmed she was. The woman knelt beside her daughter, relief washing over her. She then urged them to hurry inside, as Rachel's uncle was on his way. The door creaked open, and Rachel's uncle stepped inside, covered in snow. Excited, the little girl called out, "Uncle!" He tenderly ruffled her hair and asked how she was. "I'm fine," she replied. Her mother greeted him at the door. "It's good you've arrived." During dinner, he was asked about his work. "It's the same as always," he answered. In a serious tone, he remarked that the lord of the castle seemed ill-tempered, having executed 5 people that very week. "Please, don't say such things in front of the children," Rachel's mother interjected. He apologized, continuing to speak as Rachel quietly ate a piece of bread. With concern, her mother asked, "What's wrong, dear?" The girl explained that she had accidentally cut a flower earlier, but didn't know its name. Curious, her mother, a gardener herself, inquired about the flower's appearance. Rachel described its petals as white and its stem as full of thorns. Her mother suggested it might be a wild rose, but the girl denied it, insisting it was entirely white. Pondering, Rachel's mother mused that if the flower was from their yard, she ought to know what it was. An unusual energy began to coalesce in the air. Rachel materialized a small vine in her hand, explaining that the flower looked just like it. She eagerly held up the newly created vine flower, confirming that was it. The adults stared at her with grim expressions, asking, "What is that?" "By the fireplace," her mother asked. "Are you going to take her to her father?" Accusingly, she continued, "You're joking! You want Rachel dead!" Her uncle retorted that it was only a matter of time before the castle discovered she was a gift user. From the floor, little Rachel pleaded, "Please, don't fight!" Her mother silently clenched her jaw. Decisively, she grabbed a travel bag. In a firm voice, the woman declared, "I'm leaving this place with Rachel." Calling her foolish, her uncle reminded her that the inhabitants of Grey Castle were forbidden from leaving its walls. Without hesitation, she ordered him to leave. "If you won't help, then disappear." Her uncle stood in silence, unsure of what to do. Little Rachel watched their argument intently. In frustration, the man clenched his fist. Turning away, he lamented the situation aloud. Then, with resolve, he instructed, "Meet me on the outskirts of town in 3 hours." Turning to him, she asked, "Do you understand?" He nodded, saying, "I need to get ready, but this is ridiculous." In a swift motion, the woman embraced him. "I love you. Now let go." Little Rachel silently observed the scene. A small smile blossomed on the little girl's face. Later, snow fell upon the slumbering town. Carelessly, her uncle let a bag drop into the snow. Hand in hand, mother and daughter walked through the frozen forest. Suddenly, they came upon a gathering of crows on the ground, and a sense of dread washed over them at the sight. Steering clear of the fallen bag, they pressed on through the snow. In the darkness, a hooded figure emerged, wielding a scythe. With a single, swift strike, the hooded figure took the mother's life. Immediately, the royal guard revealed themselves before them. 2 hooded guards quickly advanced, seizing the mother's body and little Rachel without delay. One of the guards held Rachel firmly as her mother screamed her name. As their leader, the head guard stated that there was always someone who broke the rules, just like them. In desperation, the mother screamed for them not to touch her daughter. Surprised by this revelation, the guard stared at an approaching man. In an instinctive move, the man placed himself between the girl and the guard, stating that there seemed to have been a misunderstanding. But the guard questioned if he truly believed that would change anything, and pulled the girl away from him. Without releasing her, the guard held Rachel and asked her mother if she knew how many illegitimate children the lord of that castle had. In response, she revealed that, although she didn't know the exact number, she was sure it was over 100. The guard added that there was no proof Rachel was truly Lord Sinclair's daughter. Even so, Lord Sinclair valued justice and fairness above all else, even his own daughter. Her mother asked what they would do with them. He simply replied, "Is it not obvious?" Grey Castle was one of the few places outside the control of the hero clan, but this was only valid on the condition that its inhabitants could not escape that backward civilization. And, according to the laws of the land, it was customary to punish those who broke the rules by tying them to a cart and dragging them through the area. Across the vast snowy landscape, the cart advanced. In most cases, people didn't last even a day. Thus, they eventually met their end. Rachel simply laughed, not because she was happy, but because it was all she could do. In an instant, the life she knew was completely destroyed. Silently, she wondered what had happened to her mother, who the man they called her father was, but she knew nothing and could do nothing. In the snow, she would die and leave nothing behind, or so she thought. Abruptly, the driver stopped the carriage. It was then that a man appeared amidst the blizzard. From atop a rock, a hooded figure watched. Facing them, the newcomer confronted the royal guard. Then, he unsheathed his greatsword. With a single strike, he attacked. Suddenly, the rope binding Rachel snapped. A spray of blood landed on the girl's face. In a swift reflex, the guards leaped away, but one of them was struck. Engen revealed himself from beneath the hood, standing among the guards' fallen bodies. With precision, he cut the bonds from her feet, then covered her with his cloak. Without asking questions, he simply extended his hand to her. He never asked why she tried to leave Grey Castle or why she seemed to want to die. However, Rachel knelt before her mother's grave and began to wonder. Confused, she questioned what the man, the Smiling Man, was doing there. With a smile, the Smiling Man replied that he had tried to reach the clan twice before but failed both times, and that was why he was preparing for his 3rd attempt. The fact that he seemed so happy made her envious, and she wished to have hopes and aspirations as strong as his. In her gaze, the reflection of the castle tower appeared. Before her, she saw the castle where the man who took everything from her lived. In that moment, she knew she had given up on her life because she had given up on seeking vengeance. That was not a matter of strength, but merely an excuse for her feelings. A whirlwind of emotions like sadness, fear, guilt, and rage consumed her, and this whirlwind of emotions became the source of her gift. Upon leaving her old home, she made a promise to herself. She would return one day, and when she did, she would kill the elder they called her father. Sharpshooter praised Rachel's mental strength but declared that it was over and that Rachel couldn't even stand up. Pointing her weapon, she told the girl to stay still so that everything would end quickly. On the ground, Rachel apologized but declared that she couldn't die there. With contempt, her opponent called her pathetic for begging for her life. Lying on the ground, the girl said that even living a pathetic life, she was still alive. Suddenly, Stonefist screamed John's name. Then, he was struck by a powerful punch from John Nash. A shadow fell over Sharpshooter, who looked up in surprise. Stonefist was pierced and restrained by flowering vines as Rachel, still fallen, promised that she would never lose that way again. In farewell, he dissolved into a cloud of leaves. Suddenly, Stonefist found himself in a verdant field. A voice lamented that he had lost and warned that it was in a bad mood. Rachel emerged in a new form and promised that it would be quick. Sharpshooter questioned how Rachel could be fully healed, remarking that the woman should be incapacitated by her wounds. Stonefist initially suspected an illusion, but quickly dismissed the idea, realizing he had been dragged by her into another dimension as he observed the unfamiliar surroundings. With a rapid leap, Rachel advanced, weapon in hand, and struck with a downward blow, but her attack was blocked. It was then Stonefist realized she hadn't just healed, she had grown stronger. Rachel spun, attacking again with her weapon, and once more Stonefist defended himself with his transformed arm. Without hesitation, she revealed her reason for choosing him. She believed he would be an easier opponent than Sharpshooter. Stonefist frankly admitted her power was good, but questioned how long it would last. Challenging her, he asked if she truly thought she could overcome his resilience. Confidently, he declared that his body resisted almost all metal alloys and that he would simply wait for her power to wane before destroying her. Rachel smiled and apologized. Then she threw her weapon to the ground, stating, "It's already over." Confused, Stonefist wondered why she had discarded her weapon. Calmly, Rachel began to speak of a peculiar flower from her hometown. She explained that the flower was beautiful, yet possessed a persistent will to survive, and if left unchecked, it would overtake an entire garden. For this reason, they had to keep cutting them one by one. Stonefist, bewildered, asked what she was talking about. "It's called the violet rose," she replied, detailing how the flower grew in the cracks of rocks and bloomed. Then, pointing at him, she declared, "You are exactly like that." Before his eyes, a flower sprouted from Stonefist's stone arm. He stared, uncomprehending. Then, flowers erupted from within his body. He fell to his knees, his arm now covered in blooming flowers. "I warned you," she said. "I told you it would be fast." The scenery around them returned to normal. A sudden memory struck Stonefist, the moment she had touched him. He questioned if that was when it happened. Too late, he realized Sharpshooter had been wise to keep her distance, and that he should never have allowed her weapon to touch him. Then, a shadowy figure called him from behind. Turning, Stonefist reacted with surprise at what he saw, a wooden statue lying on the ground. Hearing a sound, he approached it. Through the cracks in the wooden figure, an eye opened. From within the statue, a voice pleaded, "Kill me." Startled, he recoiled. A force then flung him backward. Floating above him, Rachel appeared and asked, "Did you like my garden?" As he was enveloped by vines, Stonefist questioned what was happening to his body. "You don't need to worry," Rachel calmly replied. "I'm merely displaying my worst enemies." Gradually, his body transformed completely into a pillar of flowers. Stepping away, Rachel wondered, does this count as an elimination? Casually, she remarked that if he returned now, he would feel immense pain, so he might prefer to rest a little longer here. Leaning against a tree, she sat down and admitted she missed her mother. On the street, Ihwa and Claymore were locked in a sword fight. He attacked with a downward strike, but her defense came just in time. Recognizing her opponent as Claymore, Ihwa compared him to a hero of the same class named Viper. Both possessed highly destructive gifts, but couldn't use them in direct combat. Despite their skill in utilizing their abilities, defeating opponents with their raw strength was paramount. The fact that they had become heroes regardless signified their inherent power, proving their strength even without their special gifts. After evaluating the fight, Ihwa concluded that it would take too long to defeat him with standard tactics, but that didn't mean there wasn't an alternative. Shifting her focus, she adopted a new combat stance and rapidly advanced toward him. Claymore observed her movement with full attention. Ihwa's hand struck his sword guard squarely. In a precise move, she snatched the sword directly from Claymore's hands. Surprised, he questioned her plan. Holding his weapon, she asked if he truly thought he could win by trading weapons. But he grabbed her sword and asserted that he also knew how to fight with that type. Unfazed, Ihwa simply asked, "Is that so?" At that moment, the blade of the sword in Claymore's hand began to shatter. Staring at her, he called her, "You cheater." With a slight smile, Ihwa replied, "I'll take that as a compliment." Chaos then explained that the clan was corrupt, having grown too large, and had no intention of stopping its heroes' transgressions. Seated on a bench, Ihwa questioned why he was telling her all of this. Without saying much, he crushed a can and stated that, even so, Engin's methods were far too violent. He added that Engin was willing to do whatever it took to bring down the clan, even if it meant sacrificing innocents or himself. Chaos, however, asserted that she was different, that she was being forced to cooperate with him but was not like him. He began to speak about her true objective, but Ihwa, losing patience, cut him off, declaring that she had heard enough. Confused, she did not understand what he was doing there, given that Viper was dead. Ihwa then threatened him, telling him to stop meddling in her affairs. Chaos asked for calm and said he had brought something for her. As he reached into his pocket, she grabbed his arm. Ihwa asked what it was, and he replied that it was her identification card. Not recognizing the name, she said she had never heard of a hero called Kasha. He explained that with the card she could access the clan's database. Chaos then proposed they make a deal, similar to the one she had made with Engin. Chaos warned her not to try anything as the card was useless without the password. With conviction, He guaranteed that this would be the fastest way for her to get in, questioning why she would take a detour when a shortcut was available. Ihwa then agreed to hear his proposal. Chaos explained that she would face 3 individuals if she decided to infiltrate the 17th Division. First on the list was Stonefist. In his missions, he caused many casualties by not considering his surroundings when using his gift. Chaos compared him to others she had already eliminated and stated he wouldn't care if she killed him. Next on the list was Sharpshooter. Chaos couldn't even say whether she was good or bad, as she was only interested in her own popularity. Chaos revealed that she was his disciple, but that wasn't truly important. The last on the list was Claymore. He did not fit well within the current hero's clan. Fair, yet too old-fashioned. Chaos then revealed what he wanted her to do. In a direct tone, he asked her to spare him. Claymore, still lying on the ground, appeared confused by her proposal. Urging her to listen, Chaos affirmed that the enemy of her enemy was her friend. In a provocative tone, he asked if she had heard that phrase before, and commented that one never knew when someone might become useful. Chaos then offered her some advice. Stepping away, he warned that if she continued to act recklessly, she would need to develop a sense of judgment to survive. In other words, she should choose wisely whom to kill. Back at the fight scene, Claymore remained on the ground while Iwa stood tall. Confused, he wondered why she hadn't killed him. Without preamble, she replied that she had made a deal, which left him even more bewildered. Realizing Chaos's involvement, Claymore clenched his fist and questioned his intentions. Icily, Ihwa stated that Chaos had told her he didn't fit into the hero's clan and suggested he simply leave. In response, he explained that the hero's clan still saved more lives, despite killing some innocent victims. In a direct challenge, she asked if that meant even an evil ruler brought order. Indifferently, Claymore asserted that he didn't care for her opinion. Assertively, Ihwa announced that the sword was now hers. Elsewhere, Engen realized that Heavy Smoker was stronger than he had thought. With a confident gesture, Heavy Smoker clapped his hands, generating an attack. The attack, shaped like a shark, surged towards Engen, but a counterattack intercepted it midair. On impact, the collision between the two strikes caused a massive explosion. Amidst the chaos, Heavy Smoker was struck in the leg by one of the projectiles. Taunting, Engen challenged him to see how he would fare with only one arm. Surprised, Heavy Smoker looked to the side. From behind him, a shadowy figure emerged and seized his arm, tearing it completely off. With difficulty, he pointed his remaining hand forward. With just one hand, Engen managed to stop the shark attack. With contempt, he declared that it didn't matter how much he boasted about being the manager, for he was merely the head of a snake. Wounded, Heavy Smoker glared at him and said, "Now!" From a distance, Engen observed him. He then concluded that it was all over for the manager. Looking at his own wounds, Heavy Smoker lamented that he should have left the industry if he had known this would happen. In a low voice, he said he had been called a hero but had never done anything heroic, wondering if this was karma. With a trembling hand, he took out a cigar, admitting that he had not lived a virtuous life and perhaps was no different from villains. Ahead, he faced a dangerous man, an individual he had never seen before. To himself, Heavy Smoker declared he needed to focus. In a final gesture, he broke the cigar and accepted that he would have a death appropriate for a corrupt hero like himself. He then prepared for one last attack. With determination, he charged forward, resolved to take Engen with him. Heavy Smoker screamed, "It's time to die," as something erupted from the ground at Engen's feet. Beneath his feet, the ground shattered completely. From deep within the earth, a gigantic whale burst forth from the ground. The creature launched itself skyward, carrying Engen. Heavy Smoker landed on the structure he had just summoned. He couldn't believe Engen had emerged completely unscathed from the attack. He wondered if his opponent was flying, but quickly realized Engen was standing on a platform of tangible darkness, a gift similar to Victoria's. Without losing a moment, Heavy Smoker commanded Moby Dick to attack. Engen created a barrier to defend against the assault, but the enormous skeletal whale struck him head-on. The force of the impact sent him hurtling backward, destroying the side of the building's summit. Engen slid to a landing, then rose amidst the debris and dust. The entire upper section of the edifice shattered by the blow. Meanwhile, the bone creature collided with the top of another building. Heavy Smoker coughed blood, certain he was finished. He told himself he only needed to hold on a little longer, but then something began to stir within the creature. Shadowy hands tore through the side of the bone carcass, and a figure emerged from the whale, seizing its jaw. At that instant, Heavy Smoker realized he might have been gravely mistaken. From the creature's remnants, a feminine silhouette made of darkness materialized. With deep regret, he lamented not having warned the other districts and not having done everything in his power to stop him then and there. Heavy Smoker whispered that he could see it now. Engen stood before him, and he spoke of the mountain of bodies. He understood with bitter clarity that this was the mountain of bodies Engen was destined to create. With a sudden explosion, Engen's arm pierced Heavy Smoker's chest. From the sky, Heavy Smoker's lifeless body plummeted toward a destroyed bridge. Amidst a landscape of utter destruction, Chaos walked among the fallen, questioning the very meaning of justice. He then collapsed to his knees, wondering if this was truly the justice everyone spoke of. From behind, an older man gripped his shoulder and asked if he didn't understand. He shouted at Chaos, "This is a war!" He explained harshly that the bodies scattered across the ground were those of child soldiers from the coalition. One of the young soldiers, rising to his feet, said, "Even if you're just a child with a gun, you can still die if you're hit." Without hesitation, the boy lunged toward them. In a swift impulse, Chaos shoved Heavy Smoker aside, taking a stab wound himself. His immediate reaction was a punch to the young assailant's face. He noticed more enemies still remained around them. Turning, he confronted the other adversaries. Chaos fired a shot into the air. A man seized him firmly and told him, "Stop deluding yourself. This isn't a fight between good and evil, for everyone here is evil." He argued directly that the world before heroes was pure chaos, and now they were were in a much better position. Chaos countered, asking if he would simply close his eyes and ears to everything, even the death of children. Without hesitation, the man confirmed, "Yes, I will, and I will continue to do so if it's my ticket to the top." He coldly advised Chaos that for his own good, there was nothing he couldn't do, and he ought to become a cog in the clan's machine. He added, "But if you can't, then it's better to go insane, like Jeremy Bernstein." Elsewhere, Chaos sat in a high-tech chair and asked if they were finished. Without lifting her gaze, Unisong replied, "Don't rush me, we're almost done." In a serious tone, she reminded him, "You're aware you don't have much time." Yuna explained with technical precision that he could only fight at full strength for a few minutes. Already equipped with his armor, he replied, "I know." He then activated the Estes cannon system on a panel before retrieving the weapon from a compartment. In the middle of a ravaged street, a large truck screeched to a halt. From above, Chaos observed the scene. In the sky, the remnants of the bone creature dissipated, and someone wondered if this signified Heavy Smoker's defeat. Yuna Song called his name. With careful hands, she offered him a pair of combat gloves. In a memory, Chaos once asked Viper if it was true he had never worn his hero suit, and Viper confirmed it. Curious, Viper asked why, remarking that he'd heard Chaos's suit was very cool. With a slight disdain, Chaos replied he found the suit a bit too heavy. Back in the present, he realized that was a lie. The problem was never the suit itself, but the immense weight of responsibility it carried. Covering his face with his hands, he declared, "I'm tired of running." Holding his cape, Yuna lamented that even though it was late, she still wished it weren't. She sincerely affirmed, "There is no justice in the hero clan, and you don't need to waste your life." Doubtfully, she asked, "Do you truly need to participate in such a hopeless fight?" Stepping away, Chaos replied that the justice he once believed in had been shattered long ago. It had completely disintegrated until nothing remained. Therefore, he no longer fought for justice. Yet, he affirmed, "As long as I wear this suit, I am still a hero." Iwa looked up at the sky, watching two whale-like silhouettes float above. From high above, a body plummeted earthward. Sharpshooter knelt, murmuring the manager's name. She turned, beginning to run, lamenting his overconfidence. But Sharpshooter declared she had no time to help him, firing an attack as she spoke. John Nash, her opponent, seemed incredibly resilient, and she couldn't identify his unique gift. Analyzing him, Sharpshooter concluded he lacked battle sense, relying on cheap physical types. In a swift retreat, she leaped backward, evading John Nash's blow. She then spun to glance in another direction. Irritated, Sharpshooter cursed Stonefist for losing to a child on the verge of death. She truly hoped Claymore hadn't suffered the same fate. Elsewhere, Ihwa walked, sword in hand. Back in the fight, Sharpshooter realized the situation looked grim as she dodged another attack. After assessing the scenario, she decided there was nothing more she could do. With a brusque gesture, she flung a heavy object aside, stating she would have to escape alone. Launched a flash grenade at John. Leaping between buildings, Sharpshooter attempted to flee. Grabbing onto an iron bar, she pulled herself up to a broken section of the building. There, Vector awaited her. The Sharpshooter turned, surprised. Vector aimed a device with a syringe in her direction. Advancing with an apology, he tried to act, but she reacted, attempting to defend herself. He then injected the substance into her, stating, "It's nothing personal." Slowly, Sharpshooter began to lose consciousness. Her fall was reflected in Vector's mask as he mentioned the orders were to capture her alive. Kneeling beside her body, he questioned how far Engen was willing to go to defeat the hero clan. An image of Engen appeared shortly after. Standing, Vector watched a figure retreat into the sky. Suddenly, a large section of the building began to crumble. Looking up, Heavy Smoker saw the debris falling directly toward him. With a tremendous roar, the entire structure of the building collapsed onto the street below. Floating above the ruined city, Engen observed it all. Then, a portal abruptly opened. He turned, facing the new threat. With a violent impact, Engen was thrown backward by an attack, but he quickly recovered, advancing with a transformed hand. Approaching, a man asked, "Do you think you can escape so easily?" He then questioned Engen about the destruction of his offices. In silence, Engen remained motionless. Preparing, Chaos assumed a combat stance. Engen narrowly avoided the blow. In a swift motion, he counterattacked. Leaping backward, Chaos dodged. He then fired a projectile from his hands at Engen. Engen defended himself from the projectile using his own power. Chaos's eyes shone brightly. In an instant, Chaos pierced through Engen's attack. Like a cut through the air, a trail of light streaked through the darkness. Engen attempted to react, seeking to intercept the approaching attack. He managed to nullify the projectile with his hand. Leaping to his side, John Nash entered the fray. Without delay, Chaos blocked John's punch. Without retreating, Chaos continued his assault. Under pressure, John Nash defended against the consecutive blows. With force, Nash's weapons were flung into the air. In a precise strike, Chaos knocked him to the ground. In a firm tone, Chaos announced, "It's time for payback." He prepared. Immediately, his weapons fired multiple shots. Without pause, Chaos continued to shoot. John Nash fell, torn apart. Engen commented that he had become a completely different person. Approaching, Engen asked if Chaos could now predict the future. He then stated they had never met before, but Chaos called him by his full name, Jeremy Bernstein, leading Engen to deduce that Chaos had done his homework. Without hesitation, Chaos apologized and affirmed he knew much more than Engen. Coldly, he offered a prediction, saying that Engen would lose this fight. He continued, stating that Engen would beg for his life at her feet once more. From Engen's body, a dark substance began to rise. Gradually, this substance expanded, forming a large sphere in the sky. With absolute advance, the darkness covered the entire city. With disdain, Engen called him a worm. Impatient, Chaos told him to shut up, calling him pathetic trash. In that same instant, both advanced toward each each other, ready to continue their battle. Chaos braced himself, targeting Engin's approaching hand. He slashed through the air with his blades. On impact, his blades collided with Engin's attack, and the giant hand shattered into pieces. Shadowy figures emerged from the ground, but Chaos repelled them with a volley of shots. As he fired his weapons, he questioned the future prediction, asserting that such a gift was exceedingly rare. Advancing, he attacked the creatures and remarked, "It's no wonder the clan sought him." He also commented that such power must be incredibly taxing on the body. Turning his face, he declared, "That must be the price to pay." From the ground, a giant shadowy creature emerged. Above the creature, Engin asked Chaos, "What kind of future do you see now?" With brutal force, the creature smashed the ground with its massive hand. Amidst the debris, Chaos observed and questioned the future. Stepping over a fallen body, he declared, Engin guessed wrong. Running towards the creature, he revealed that he didn't possess the ability to see the future. The creature's hand descended, moving to crush him, but Chaos blocked it, explaining that he could only see the past. With absolute focus, he observed small habits and subtle shifts in expression. With conviction, he affirmed that he never missed a single detail. Recalling Engin's past movements, the creature tried to grab him in a renewed advance, but Chaos evaded with agility. He thus managed to predict the future, attacking Engin from behind. Blood splattered, and Engin questioned, "Was that it?" Finishing his sentence, he glanced over his shoulder. Chaos stared back in surprise. In that instant, he realized Engin had completely read his movements and was already altering his course. Violently, Chaos was thrown backward by the creature's attack, crashing brutally against the side of a building. In disbelief, he asserted that Engin had read him completely, then muttered, "That's why I hate fast and perceptive villains." Coldly, Engin stated, "That was a good attempt, considering the pathetic state of your body." Covering one eye, Chaos asked, "What makes you think we're finished?" In a direct explanation, he declared that gifts were a reflection of one's inner self, and these creatures weren't evil spirits. With a swift, dry gesture, he cut down the creatures, stating, "This is even more terrifying." A heavy thought weighed on him. How many lives would be lost if someone with such darkness were unleashed upon the world? He affirmed that he had to do this. He had to kill them. Energy began to flicker in his arm. With effort, he said, "My body is worn and torn." Even so, he affirmed, "There's still work to do." Finally, Chaos declared that he didn't care if he died today. He then prepared to continue the fight. Firmly, Chaos declared that he would give his all to the battle. In a brutal movement, Engin's creature pinned him against the ground. Even so, he resisted, pushing forward with a final, desperate effort. Turning at the precise instant, Engin allowed the attack to pass through him. With a tense voice, Chaos affirmed, Heavy Smoker's death was not in vain. In a decisive blow, he managed to pierce the creature's hand and questioned, was the sacrifice worth it? In silence, Engin observed the weapon that had struck him, then stared at his opponent. On Chaos's armor, his energy began to fail. In that moment, he realized his power was completely exhausted. He lamented his imminent defeat. In bitter reflection, he thought the world was unfair and irrational. Trapped, he lamented having given his all only to lose, calling himself a failure. Coldly, Engin suggested, this wouldn't have ended this way if your clan hadn't overloaded you. He then admitted it was merely a supposition, but expressed admiration for Chaos's persistence. Finally, he concluded, all of it amounted to absolutely nothing. Extending his hand, Engin declared, this place is hell. Turning to Chaos, he affirmed, it's where the scum of the earth gathers. He then warned him that in this place, all good deeds were severely punished as he raised his sword for the final blow. The city lay silent beneath the rubble. Ihwa navigated the destroyed street, her sword clutched in hand. Suddenly, she turned her head. In the distance, Rachel waved, perched atop a pile of debris. With a wide smile, she called out, I see you're still in one piece. As Ihwa drew closer, she commented that Rachel looked terrible, but Rachel dismissed it with a wave, claiming it was nothing. Ihwa merely stared back, offering no words. Without warning, Rachel launched an attack in her direction. With a swift leap, Ihwa recoiled, deflecting the assault with her sword. Then, she reached inside her jacket. Casually, she offered something to Rachel, asking, want some? Curious, Rachel asked what it was, and Ihwa produced a protein bar. As Ihwa spoke, a massive explosion rocked the distant landscape. Turning towards the explosive display, Rachel found it incredible and asked Ihwa what she thought. Raising a finger, she questioned, do you believe you can reach his level? With unwavering confidence, Ihwa affirmed, it won't be long until I get there. Suddenly, Vector appeared, dragging Sharpshooter's lifeless body and requested aid, saying, help out if you've got nothing better to do. Curious, Ihwa asked the name of the fallen warrior, and Rachel replied that she had forgotten. In a light tone, Rachel consoled Vector, don't cry, we were just kidding. Taking Sharpshooter's body from Vector, Ihwa stared at it. She then looked at the woman in her arms. A fleeting memory of Sharpshooter, armed and ready, flashed in her mind. With a sudden, irritated gesture, Ihwa threw the body aside. Surprised, Rachel questioned, why did you throw her like that? Ihwa merely replied, I just got annoyed by something. Changing the subject, Vector asked about John Nash, and Rachel surmised he was likely dead since he hadn't appeared. On the ground, John Nash's body dissolved into a viscous puddle as an unseen voice questioned Rachel's assertion. The voice then commented that he hadn't lived up to his namesake. Looking at an unconscious woman nearby, Ihwa asked, why wasn't she killed? Simply, Vector explained that it was Engin's order and that she wouldn't awaken for the next 12 hours. Scratching his head, he shifted topics. I think we're almost done here, he commented. In another scene, Chaos was being repeatedly pierced as Vector suggested, perhaps we should wrap things up now. Excited, Rachel cheered, I want to go home and take a shower. Is the gift ready? Suddenly, Ihwa's eye twitched. Seriously, she urged everyone to wait, sensing something approaching. In a firm tone, Engin ordered his opponent, move. Preparing, he raised his sword sword for the next strike. On the ground, Chaos's hand twitched. With immense effort, he rose, shouting, "It's not over yet!" With a decisive final blow, Engen impaled him with his sword. After the attack, Chaos's silhouette remained perfectly still. Coldly, Engen said, "I was going to end everything quickly and painlessly." He then asked, "Why do you still cling to life, Chaos?" Chaos merely stared back in silence. Using his mouth, Chaos removed his gloves, saying, "I wasn't planning on surviving this," as he clutched the device on his chest. On the device's screen, the self-destruction sequence activated. In a direct explanation, Chaos stated, "If I initiate the sequence now, not even you, Engen, will survive." Immediately after, he affirmed that he needed his opponent to die, but access was denied. Faced with the system failure, he reacted instantly. In doubt, he wondered if his suit was too damaged for the activation. Concluding, he deduced that his luck had run out as a wave of energy expanded from him. Moments later, the energy dissipated into the air. He then questioned aloud, "Is this the end?" Suddenly, a hand pressed a button overriding the sequence, while a voice apologized to Chaos. Firmly, Unisong stated, "I cannot accept you dying like this." Joining her hands, she pleaded for him to hold on. From the sky, a massive explosion erupted. Amidst the destruction, Hecate appeared, and a voice urged, "Don't be late." Looking up, Chaos watched her as she met his gaze. Holding her mace, Hecate said, "It seems I've arrived just in time." Recognizing her, Engen called out, "Butcher." Correcting him, she stated, "I go by Hecate now." In a direct clash, her attack was parried by his sword. With precise timing, Engen raised his hand, stopping her blade before it could strike him. As he stared at the fallen sword, he understood what her presence truly signified. In the sky, Victoria materialized. Immediately after, the black sphere shattered completely. Raising her hand, Victoria said, "It's been a while, but it's time to say goodbye." Finally, she affirmed, "It will be a beautiful dream," as she delivered the decisive blow. In a divided city, citizens were hastily evacuated from a residential area. A man with a bandage on his forehead pushed his way through the crowd, drawing the attention of a soldier who questioned his delay, noting that almost all civilians had already departed. The soldier asked if there was no concern about District 17 falling into the villain's hands, depending on what might emerge. In response, the bandaged man stated that it had nothing to do with them and that the hero's clan would crush them anyway. A voice then called out to a guard standing near some wooden crates. Victoria appeared, announcing that from that moment on, all guards were to evacuate the citizens and withdraw from the area. Before everyone, her clothes transformed into a new suit. The order came for them to go as far as they could. The guard with the bandaged head insisted that wouldn't happen. Cautiously, he suggested they leave so as not to die in vain, but his companion asked him to wait. The other soldier simply pointed upwards and asked what that was. A gigantic structure began to fall towards the deserted street. Victoria hurled her sword directly at Engen. Watching from below, Engen pronounced her name. He then deduced that his friend hadn't told him about the plan. The reference was to the amateur in the red jacket, leaving Ihwa confused. Elsewhere, Hecate was seen carrying Chaos in her arms, moving away with him down an empty street. Engen attacked Victoria, but the blow was easily blocked. She questioned if he truly believed he could face her in broad daylight. Then came the taunt, "You can't defeat me even at night." Victoria stated that his attitude was unacceptable, and she decided to remind him who was in charge. A colossal sword materialized in the sky above the city. A massive explosion devastated the urban center. The shockwave spread, flinging debris everywhere, and the force of the impact struck nearby buildings. The flash of the explosion consumed the entire street. Small stones fell onto the cracked ground. A huge fissure cut across the destroyed urban landscape, and the ground continued to crumble under the weight of the destruction. Ihwa rose amidst the rubble. Rachel Sinclair emerged from the debris right behind her, waving. Vector leaned, supporting himself on a beam. Ihwa began digging frantically through the ruins. The three reunited as more debris fell around them. Ihwa held both of them, one in each arm, and looked up. In a flashback, a memory emerged of how she had remained calm during that desperate situation. Back in the present, Vector asked what she was looking for, wondering if it was the sharpshooter. She then pointed out the enemy's location and asked where her sword was. Rachel appeared, holding the weapon in the air, and announced that it was right there. Ihwa retrieved her sword, holding Vector's gift, which she had not intended to use at that moment. Suddenly, the masked man yelled for her to stop. He said he had just imagined something terrible, leaving Rachel confused. The young woman then hurried them, saying there was no time for talk and that they needed to leave. She added that they needed to take Engen, who was lying at the edge of a cliff. The wounded Engen coughed blood onto the ground. Victoria slowly descended in front of him. She said that seeing him crawling like an insect suited him better. Then came the question of why he returned, knowing the outcome, and the answer came, stating that she knew the reason. Engen affirmed that he had returned to defeat the clan. He declared, "I've also come back to kill you." She lifted him into the air and asked if she had heard correctly. Engen questioned why he was being stopped. He insisted that they both shared the same goal. He stated that as long as the Steel Witch lived, she would never be the strongest. Victoria stared at him without saying a word. Then, an explosion of energy erupted around them. She declared, "The Iron Witch is already gone," but Engen retorted that the witch herself chose to hide. Victoria prepared to attack and ordered him to be silent. She approached and asserted that she could defeat her alone without any help. Engen lamented, as he believed they could have a good relationship moving forward. He reflected that, in his last defeat, he learned he couldn't do anything alone. As he mentioned his insurance, the question arose if he had forgotten to whom that area belonged. Engen revealed that the final piece of the puzzle for that battle had already arrived. He then questioned who exactly she thought had trained the girl in the red jacket. Amidst the ruined city, Iwa prepared. She stretched, bending low over the broken ground, her eyes fixed on something in the distance. In the distance, Victoria and Engen continued their confrontation. Iwa admitted she didn't know what they were talking about, but it didn't seem they would kill each other anytime soon. She added that Engen shouldn't die yet, as she hadn't heard the important story he had to tell. She then turned to Vector and Rachel, instructing them to retrieve Engen while she distracted the others. Vector suggested using his gift from that distance, but Iwa refused. A warning came quickly. Victoria would react, and a single false move would be their end. Vector wondered why Iwa spoke as if she had met Victoria before. Suddenly, Rachel swung a branch of flowers through the air, striking Vector with it. Surprised, he turned and asked why she had done that. Rachel pointed out that since he couldn't dodge, Iwa was right, and suggested that fleeing was their best option. Vector then yielded and agreed to the plan. He quickly extended his hand, preparing to open the door, but hesitated. Alert, Rachel noticed the pause and asked what was wrong. Iwa then informed them that their connection was disappearing. Suddenly, Hecate descended from the heavens, wielding her weapon. With a powerful landing, she plunged the weapon into the ground before Iwa. A smile on her face, Hecate greeted them. She apologized for the lack of warning, revealing that she had orders to take all of them. The two prepared to fight each other. They rushed at high speed into the confrontation. The initial shock of the attack created a great impact, the force of the collision repelling them both. Far away, the man in the wheelchair commented that she seemed to be in trouble. Iwa called out to the old man, but received an instruction to leave the conversation for later and focus on the task. She then turned to Vector and Rachel, who waited close behind. Quickly, she bent down to pick up the sword that had fallen to the ground. Carrying Rachel, Iwa ran alongside Vector, telling them to flee. Hecate turned to the man in the wheelchair, relieved to see him alive, but noted the absence of his legs. He remarked that he hadn't seen her in a while and asked if she had decided to join the hero clan. He then tapped his own sword, urging her to make her choice. Hecate stared at him, confused by his words. He claimed to be finished, having lost his legs and with his abilities significantly weakened. With a smile, he supposed she must be thinking this was her chance now. In response to the provocation, Hecate tightened her grip on her weapon. She denied the idea, stating she wouldn't be foolish enough to face an ancient elder in one-on-one combat. Then came the simple order for her to take him to Victoria. The wind swept across the desolate, silent landscape. The wheels of the wheelchair advanced across the ground. Victoria asked Engen if he had enjoyed playing the hero. Suddenly, the man in the wheelchair attacked. With a swift movement, the blow was blocked. Victoria then averted her gaze to the side. Ehwa appeared to support the wounded Engen, just as a portal opened behind them. From a distance, Victoria called for Yushin, and a voice replied that it had been a while. Calmly, a hand ran through his hair. Then came the accusation that he was responsible for everything that had transpired. Yushin claimed he was merely a helper, and that the idea had come entirely from Engen. Tired of the conversation, Victoria summoned her sword and said he had something to tell her. With her arms crossed, she ordered him to speak. Yushin questioned if she wasn't curious to know why the incident occurred, and why Engen had chosen to cause such an uproar instead of waiting a little longer. Victoria urged him to get straight to the point. Yushin began to explain that the attack on District 17 was never meant to be a declaration of war against the hero clan, but rather a declaration to the villains. It was being declared that the Nameless were the next generation of villains, and that they would now play on a grander scale. In a frozen landscape, a solitary figure scaled a cliff. Those who had returned, those who had wandered, and those who had waited for the right moment, along with those who had yet to leave their mark on history, hidden elders, and countless others, would rise to the stage. At the center of this stage, two individuals would stand out. Victoria agreed that countless deaths would follow, as the wheel would begin to turn once more. But Yushin questioned what any of this had to do with them. Victoria threw her head back and began to laugh. She then composed herself and agreed that he was right. Gripping her sword, she affirmed that this would be fun, and someone would pay for interrupting her. Victoria commented that Hecate was sufficient for his current state, admitting that she had been intimidated by his past self. The question came if he was ready, and the confirmation arrived as the sword was unsheathed. Then the blade cut his own hand, with the affirmation that he would do anything for his disciple. Blood flowed down the weapon, and came the declaration that the hero killer would avenge him, as the blood transformed into countless weapons in the air. Numerous blades surged towards Victoria. Her sword was already in hand, poised for the counterattack, and a powerful strike deflected the torrent of weapons. Then, a sword appeared, plunged into the ground by Yushin. With a swift movement, his wheelchair propelled him forward, launching a side strike against Victoria. Her sword blocked the assault, but immediately after, another blade pierced her arm. Raised arms began to manipulate the surrounding matter, and Victoria leaped over the forms rising from the ground. Far from the battle, an old inn stood out against the landscape, sunlight streaming through its quiet windows. Inside, Vector slept on a wooden table, his mask resting beside him. In a nearby room, Rachel rested deeply in bed, while on a sofa, Engen reposed, covering his face with his arm. Ihwa lit the stove, assuming the fight must have already ended. As she prepared the noodles, she thought Victoria was the strongest heroine, and the old man merely boasted of his youth. A question briefly crossed her mind. Would he truly be fine on his own? But eating directly from the pot, she quickly concluded that he would. Suddenly, her meal was interrupted. A voice declared it would kill her. Ihwa turned toward the inn's entrance. From the doorway, the same threat echoed again. She peered over the table and saw John Nash standing in the entrance, repeating his threat. Her reaction to his sudden appearance quickly gave way to the realization that he was now merely a child beside her. Her hand rose to her head, instinctively measuring her own height against him. Later, Vector assured her that her body seemed fine, with no cause for concern. He added that the same applied to Sinclair, as both were incredibly resilient. Sitting, she asked what was strange. The gas-masked man's head turned towards the door as Engen appeared in the entrance, calling out to the hero killer. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. He began walking down a corridor, with Iwa following. She commented that he seemed excited, questioning if it was because everything had gone as planned. Perhaps, was the only answer he offered as they continued down the path. She then stopped in her tracks, confronting him for hiding that he already knew Victoria, stating that she hadn't known he and the old man were acquainted. Engen proposed a truce. "For now," he said, "I want to talk about your older sister." He began his explanation by mentioning the various lesser branches of the hero clan, the area guards, the clandestine heroes, and also reminded her that lesser-known factions existed. With a smile, he brought up the Black Hand. "Have you ever heard of them?" he asked. Iwa repeated the name, surprised by the mention. Engen revealed they were the executive arm of the hero clan's intelligence agency, guarding many secrets. They handled all the clan's dirty work, from assassinations of important figures to other shadowy dealings. He stated that if her sister was such a powerful heroine, there was no way he wouldn't have known about her. His conclusion indicated a strong chance she had been a Black Hand agent. In a brief flashback, Iwa remembered a handshake and saw herself again before that same enigmatic figure. Back in the present, Engen approached Iwa and proposed a new agreement. He explained that his group, the Nameless, was a small-scale operation, making it difficult to face a powerful individual alone. However, he claimed that with their last job, they had managed to light a great bonfire. With the news of District 17's collapse, hidden villains would begin to rise. Engen explained there would be those who admired them, as well as those who didn't. "And I will make them all kneel," he declared. Iwa understood the plan. "What do you want in return?" she asked. Engen then revealed that he knew, from the moment he met Victoria, that she didn't care about the hero clan and merely sought her own amusement. He affirmed there was a high chance she would also ignore that incident, adding that the weak ties between the districts ensured she wouldn't be easily recognized. He handed over some documents, stating that only she could execute the plan. The documents announced that the hero clan would begin a new recruitment period. With a smile, Engen told the hero killer, "You'll have to become a hero for a while." Iwa stood up. "What does that mean?" she questioned. Her refusal came with the statement that she now possessed the keyword and Chaos's identification card. To reach the clan's terminal, she would need to infiltrate another branch on her own. Iwa declared that this might be the opportunity she had been waiting for, to kill two birds with one stone. "So, since I'll have to go anyway, what do I get in return?" she asked. Engen warned her that she was going straight into the lion's den. He promised that when she needed it most, he would come to fight for her, which finally made the young woman agree. She then proposed to be his spy if he did one more thing for her. "What is it?" he prompted. "Cover my expenses," she replied. With a simple gesture, she simply demanded payment. A voice announced on the tracks that the Victoria Express train was arriving, with crew members wishing everyone a safe and pleasant journey. Already aboard, Iwa observed the landscape as the train departed for District 15, fully aware that the path ahead would not be easy. Meanwhile, in a dark compartment of the train, a person shot two men, then coolly wished someone would enjoy their trip. The scene shifts to Dust City, District 17. Marked as an intense battlefield during the war, the district remains mostly in ruins, including its central city. With her bags packed, a sense of farewell settled upon Iwa, marking a temporary goodbye. But for her, the most pressing matter at that moment was her gnawing hunger. Sitting in an armchair, the demand for payment arose. Her gaze then fell upon the gold bar she had received, a silent reminder of Engen's words. Engen had explained that they would also be moving there soon, asking her to take the first step for them. Back in the present, Iwa carried a shopping bag. From it, she pulled out a bee-themed hoodie. Rachel Sinclair then appeared, holding John, and called out Iwa's name. They embraced, and Rachel promised to join her soon, adding that she had brought a gift. Once alone again, Iwa retrieved a gift box from her suitcase, pondering what it contained. Vector's voice chimed in, explaining it was a local specialty, perfect for satisfying hunger during a journey. Inside the box were several delightful fish-shaped buns. Without hesitation, Iwa took a bite of one. The compartment door slowly creaked open. From under the table, a sleek black cat emerged. Iwa turned to look behind her as the animal's tail swiftly flicked her way, its gaze fixing intently on her. With a sudden lunge, its claws extended in an attack. Iwa easily dodged all the blows. The cat paused, inspecting its own paw, its fur bristling under Iwa's watchful eyes. It then lunged again. From behind her, a hand emerged, seizing the cat. The man carefully placed the animal into a carrier, gently urging it to calm down, then turned to Iwa, asking if she was all right. Iwa assured him she was fine, adding that she liked his style. The man handed her a business card, advising her to let her guard down. Upon reading the card, Iwa asked if he was a reporter, to which he simply replied, requesting she call him Phil. Phil then inquired if she was from Dust City, and proposed a brief chat. Her response was curt, not on an empty stomach. Phil proudly introduced the train as the Victoria Express, a steam locomotive equipped with the latest technologies. He elaborated that it was not only efficient but remarkably practical, then asked for her opinion. Later, a table was set with tea and a delectable fruit tart. Iwa remarked that she enjoyed the strawberry cake, but Phil pressed for a more serious answer now that she had been fed. He reminded her he had already shared details about some fools who attacked the clan headquarters and were now on the run. He added that, as a reporter, he ought to know more about the subject than a mere bystander like herself. A sigh escaped him, followed by the admission that, to be honest, he hadn't gathered much from his journey. Phil brought up the enormous hole that had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, noting that all the guards had maintained absolute secrecy about it. Ihwa, however, claimed to know nothing, stating she had been far too afraid to even approach the site. Phil then wondered if he had made a mistake, as he had trusted his instincts that she would possess some crucial information, and his instincts had never failed him before. He then turned his gaze to the passing scenery outside the train window. The train braked abruptly. She deduced that something was amiss in the engine room, and that more than one crew member must be involved. Phil's eyes lit up. He concluded there was a high chance it was a train robbery, and that, at last, he had a story. In a corridor, a man grumbled about being too busy to deal with this. The door was forcefully struck, followed by a demand for it to be opened. A threat warned that it would be broken down if they refused. A man in a suit opened the door, calmly asking what they wanted. The assailant confronted him but hesitated, questioning if he was truly the engineer. The man in the suit gripped his face and asked what he would do about it if he wasn't the engineer. With a swift, brutal motion, the man in the suit ended the assailant's life. The other two passengers fled the scene in terror. The man in the suit casually remarked that he had killed him for being too loud, then asked if he should pursue the others. Seated in a chair, a man affirmed they were slightly ahead of schedule but ready to begin. He then addressed the train's microphone, wishing the passengers a pleasant journey. His tone then shifted, expressing regret as he informed them that from that moment forward, the Victoria Express was under the control of Vendetta. The demand was simple. They merely requested that the hero known as Bare Knuckles be brought to the engine room. The passengers had 1 hour to comply. If they did, the train would be left in peace. Otherwise, everyone on board would perish. In the dining car, a man fired his weapon, shouting for everyone to clear the way and lie on the floor. Phil immediately sought cover. He called out to Ihwa, who remained calmly seated, asking what she was doing. Ihwa then slowly rose from her chair, taking a single step toward one of the armed men. A woman in a suit pointed her weapon at Ihwa, demanding to know who she was. Ihwa began to introduce herself as the hero killer. In a flashback, a voice affirmed that she was the only one capable of accomplishing that particular mission during the new hero recruitment period. It was a rare opportunity, they had said, to truly strike the clan where it hurt. Back in the present, her introductory words were abruptly cut short as her hand instinctively went to her chest. Ihwa then declared, "I am an aspiring hero." The woman declared she didn't care and fired her weapon at Ihwa. Ihwa watched the bullet whiz past her, then quickly dodged to the side. She kicked a table towards the continuous gunfire, leaping over furniture to evade the shots. With a single powerful leap, Ihwa closed the distance to her opponent and landed a swift kick to the woman's stomach. The impact sent the woman reeling backward, but before she could fall, Ihwa grabbed her collar and slammed her body forcefully against the train car floor. Ihwa calmly brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Other passengers cautiously peeked over the seats. Phil stood up beside another man who exclaimed, "That was incredible!" A reporter quickly started asking who she was. Passengers began to gather, querying if she was a gifted individual and if everyone was safe. Phil observed the scene, questioning its reality. The realization that she hadn't even blinked when fired upon at close range, a reaction far from normal, solidified his suspicion. His intuition screamed that there was something extraordinary about the girl. Yet, the danger she represented also seemed evident, prompting him to carefully consider the situation and not be deceived by her appearance. Caution prevailed as he decided to keep a close watch on her for the time being. Phil adjusted his hat. "What's the plan now?" he asked. "As an aspiring hero, I'll get rid of all the villains," Ihwa replied. She explained that the leader was likely in the engine room where the controls were located. "The plan is simple," she continued. "I will run along the top of the train until I reach the front, and then I will kill the villain. When you cut off the head, the rest of the body dies." Phil inquired about the passengers. Ihwa began her response by saying it wasn't his business, but quickly corrected herself, assuring him that she would, of course, take care of them. "Unless you have a better idea," she challenged, "since you seem to already know the answer." Phil merely sighed. "First," he said, "take a look at the train map." He explained that they were currently closer to the back, with only 3 passenger sections behind them, and the rest consisted of cargo cars. Therefore, the ideal plan would be to clear the back first, and then advance car by car to the engine room. Ihwa agreed that, though it would require effort, it was feasible. "But doesn't that plan put the hostages at risk?" she questioned. "There's no need to worry," Phil reassured her. "It's all part of the plan. Catherine will take care of that part." In another train car, tables lay overturned, one with a sword stuck into it. One of the men expressed his boredom with keeping the hostages kneeling. He complained that usually there was at least someone willing to play the hero, but here, everyone was too submissive. He then picked up the sword. The man in the suit stopped him. "Are you thinking of doing something rash?" he asked. "No," the other replied. "The boss ordered that no one be killed for an hour." One of the tied-up hostages watched the exchange. The man in the suit then asked his companion, "Do that again for old time's sake." The man's face transformed. The man in the suit started to explain that it was a gift capable of changing one's face, but the other interjected, "It's not quite like that. Did you hear that?" The man in the suit then asked his companion, followed by an abrupt, "Now get out of here." Complaining that his partner always treated him like a toy, the man walked away. Approaching the train car door, the man felt a prick of suspicion upon noticing the strange silence within. He moved closer, trying to peer inside. From the other side, a black cat scratched at the door. As he entered, he questioned why the car was empty, unaware that Ihwa was watching him, suspended from the ceiling. A strip of fabric fabric suddenly wrapped around his neck, tightening instantly and rendering the man unconscious. "The rear is clear," Phil announced, then added, "But I have a request before we proceed to the engine room." "What do you want?" Ihwa asked. "The plan has gone well so far thanks to your skills," Phil acknowledged, "but don't underestimate them." He revealed they were a villain group called Vendetta. While the subordinates weren't a major concern, there were dangerous individuals to watch out for. "First, there's the leader, Tokata," Phil continued. "He's escaped from multiple prisons and has the hero Bare Knuckles as his arch-enemy. This train incident is likely an act of revenge, as Bare Knuckles was the one who originally captured him. Unlike most villains, Tokata possesses a strong sense of camaraderie and is known for holding grudges." Phil also mentioned Scar, Tokata's right-hand man, who is equally dangerous and has reportedly killed more people than his boss, including 1 or 2 heroes. He's also known for having a short fuse. "I don't need all that information," Ihwa cut in. "I just want to know what their gifts are." The wall behind her suddenly exploded. Scar appeared from the wreckage. "What do you think you're doing with my toy?" he growled. An appendage shot through the train car, but Ihwa intercepted it with a powerful kick. Scar, surprised, stated, "You aren't Bare Knuckles." Ihwa noted that other passengers were still nearby, deciding she needed to take the fight elsewhere. Scar said, "It's rude not to answer someone." He lunged again with a swift appendage attack. Ihwa leaped over the blow and retorted, "You're a starfish," landing a direct kick to his face. The young woman landed firmly on the ground, then turned and identified him. "You're Scar," she said. He explained that his name came from his habit of scarring corpses. Ihwa promised to put one on his face and challenged him to meet her on the upper level, before throwing herself outside through the window. Running along the side of the train, she thought that arrogant fools like him couldn't resist. Scar, easily provoked, struck the side of the train. Ihwa had him exactly where she wanted him. He then launched a direct attack at her. Ihwa slid across the ceiling, dodging the blow. Scar watched her, surprised by the movement. The chase continued with several impacts along the train. He attacked again, irritated by the girl. Scar then stopped, looking around for her, but couldn't find her anywhere. In another moment, Ihwa had commented to Vector that something felt strange, and he had asked what it was. Vector recalled he couldn't tell her then, as John Nash had interrupted them. He reviewed her data, analyzing her bone density, body strength, and even her EST levels. He remembered that when she fought Chaos and Viper, she completely surpassed them. That wasn't something anyone could achieve in a short period of training. He then hypothesized that Ihwa didn't just steal gifts, but also statuses. However, Vector discarded the idea, concluding that regardless, her rate of improvement was astonishing. Vector also reflected on Yushin, the Dust City demon, having accepted a student. He told Engen that he now understood why he risked everything to have Ihwa on their side, but warned him to be careful. A solitary flower bloomed. Back in the laboratory, flowers grew on Vector's head. Rachel entered the room, laughing and calling out to him. She asked if he was finished, stating that the other girl must be fine. Vector simply shook his head and replied, "I don't know." Back on the train, Ihwa hoped she wasn't causing any problems, then realized what a starfish tasted like. Looking up, she noticed that attacking the tentacles didn't seem to hurt Scar's body, and wondered if they could regenerate. Scar suddenly appeared and asked, "Are you alone?" She confirmed she was and questioned him about his reason for asking. He then wanted to know how she had managed to clear more than 10 train cars alone in such a short time. Ihwa stated she didn't care if he believed it or not, and Scar replied he also didn't care what happened to the others. But Scar insisted he could see in her eyes that they were both the same. "Isn't it true?" he asked. Ihwa wiped her hands and asked, "Do you really want to know the answer?" She leaped towards him and challenged him to try harder. She advanced rapidly past his side, striking him with a direct blow to the chest. The impact sent Scar sliding backward over the train's roof. Ihwa ran along the side, wondering what she should do now. She imagined what it would be like to use his appendages, but discarded the idea of fighting the same way he did. She soon blocked an attack with her hands, deciding it was better to use the weapon she already possessed. Ihwa leaped and stomped hard on Scar's chest, immobilizing him. She stared down at him with an imposing posture, then finished the confrontation with a powerful kick. She lunged forward, delivering a devastating blow that left her on her knees for an instant, but immediately counterattacked with a punch to his face. Scar staggered backward, completely disoriented. Ihwa advanced to deliver another punch, but he managed to grab her fist at the last instant. With his appendage wrapped around her arm, Scar stated, "I got you." Ihwa corrected him, "No, I got you." Scar's eyes widened in surprise as her arm transformed into a blade, making a cut on his chest. She reminded him of his earlier words about them being the same, but he only replied, "I don't know." Ihwa then stated, "We're on different levels." An overwhelming force suddenly erupted from the train. Tokata questioned if the young woman would be able to determine his level. Ihwa wondered about the newcomer, soon identifying him as Tokata. Tokata grabbed Scar, asking if he had underestimated the girl, but Scar simply pushed his hand away and denied it. He warned that the girl was stronger than she seemed, cautioning Tokata not to underestimate her. He also informed him that Dave was dead and the fate of the others remained unknown. From the train's roof, Tokata demanded he repeat what he said, tears welling as he questioned if it was truly real. He then stomped his foot heavily on the ground, asking if she had harmed his family members before furiously lunging towards Ihwa. Tokata landed a powerful punch against her. Blood splattered into the air from the impact. He looked at his wounded arm and questioned if that was all she could do with her gift. With her arms transformed into blades, Ihwa challenged him to hand it over. Back in the present, Ihwa glided across the train's roof, running at high speed over the car and leaped into the air to deliver a spinning kick. Scar lunged with his appendage to attack, but Ihwa severed severed his limb with a precise strike. Even wounded, he continued to advance against her. The young woman struck him again with a circular slash. Tokata then positioned himself to defend his companion, launching an attack toward Ihwa. The young woman leaped to evade the ensuing explosion. The duo reminded her of Viper and Chaos, who grew stronger fighting together. Still, this doesn't pose a problem, Tokata asserted. Ihwa gripped her blade and declared, I am still the strongest. Suddenly, Phil appeared, announcing that the fight ended there. He then pulled one of the combatants onto the car by his hair. Phil questioned who the man he brought was, and Ihwa explained, he's the Bare Knuckles manager. She recalled recognizing him while helping passengers evacuate the train. Phil remembered protecting him during the commotion in the car. Tokata, impatient, asked, what does that have to do with the current situation? Phil then urged the manager to tell everything, suggesting they might spare his life if he revealed Bare Knuckles' location. The man hesitated for a moment before speaking, then yelled for everyone to hear, Mr. Bare Knuckles has fled. Surprised, Phil questioned the assertion, but the manager insisted, it's true. He recalled the demand to take the hero to the engine room within an hour. In a flashback, the manager asked Mr. Bare Knuckles, who was hiding behind a newspaper, what they should do. But he quickly stood up and said, I'm going to use the restroom. A man shot at the bathroom door, shouting, it's time to pay the vendetta with your blood! The manager knocked on the door, warning, I'm opening it. But upon entering, he found the bathroom empty, its window shattered outwards. Tokata concluded, Bare Knuckles isn't on the train. Let's end this. But Scar refused, stating, I won't be satisfied until I inflict the same wound upon her. Ihwa doubted, you won't be able to put a scar on me. Irritated by her arrogance, Scar lunged with his appendage. Phil stopped him, pushed the manager aside, and said, wait. He then revealed that he knew why everyone was given an hour, the time it would take for the hero clan to reach the train. Phil prompted them to consider what would happen when the clan arrived. Given they had barely managed to touch the girl, he acknowledged that the vendetta never forgot a grudge, but questioned if revenge needed to happen at that exact moment. He reminded them they hadn't been out of prison long enough to enjoy the fresh air. Tokata gripped his pocket watch as Phil asked, am I not right? Scar questioned, who are you, and why do you keep meddling? But Tokata cut him off. Phil is right, he agreed. We need to leave. Time's up. Tokata assured his companion, don't worry, everyone will pay soon. A convoy of vehicles now moved at high speed, accompanying the train. Tokata and Scar leaped from the train's roof directly into one of the waiting cars. From inside the fleeing vehicle, Tokata shouted, this isn't over. Tell me your name. Ihwa, still on the train's roof, began to speak, then introduced herself. My name is Vector. Tokata promised, I will remember that name. I'll find you and skin you alive. He then turned to face the opposite direction. Phil approached, praising the girl. You took on both of them at once. You're more skilled than I thought. But he hurried her. We need to get to the engine room to stop the train. Ihwa reassured him, I have a plan. I've learned a few tricks following people over the years. However, the train's brakes were completely destroyed. Phil then revealed, the enemies destroyed all the brakes. The train began to tremble and spark, and he shouted, it's too late! Everyone hold on! Inside the car, the manager and the cat, Catherine, panicked as they realized the train was about to derail. The train sped uncontrollably along the tracks, throwing sparks. Then, a man stepped firmly onto the railway tracks, facing the rapidly approaching train, ready to stop it. In a luxurious office, the morning light illuminated a large empty desk. Meanwhile, a young man with dark hair slept soundly in his bed. Suddenly, loud pounding on the door shattered the silence of the room. A woman outside urged Lady Fullmoon not to cause any trouble. Lady Fullmoon interrupted her, demanding to know what she meant by trouble. She warned that there would be even more trouble if the door didn't open. With a snap of her fingers, she prepared to act. The door's lock disintegrated with a jet of water. Waking with the noise, the young man yawned and asked how he could help Fullmoon. She walked towards his desk, commenting that she hadn't seen him sitting there yet. She then picked up a stack of reports, asking how long they had been sitting there. With a smile, the young man, revealed as Bishop, replied that one should always defer tomorrow's tasks until the day after next. He asked her not to get angry and opened a closet door. Now dressed in a formal uniform, Bishop concluded that if she was there, it must be for something truly important. Fullmoon turned to Bishop and stated they needed to leave immediately. She informed him that the Victoria Express had been hijacked. Outside, the two walked towards a waiting car. Fullmoon then told her assistant that she would drive herself. Once inside the vehicle, Bishop adjusted the rearview mirror. He observed that since she dismissed the driver, it seemed there was something to discuss. He then commented that he saw her fiddling with her ring. He added that she tended to do that when she was nervous, asking if it was a difficult matter. Fullmoon took a deep breath before responding. She then said she would answer his question with another, asking what he was doing in District 16. Bishop claimed he wasn't sure as he didn't request a transfer, but Fullmoon doubted his words. She called him a cunning fox who smiled upon the transgressions of those heartless old men. She concluded that everything must be unfolding according to his plan, one that ordinary people could not grasp. Bishop remained silent, looking straight ahead while holding his weapon. He then proposed a different question, since she didn't seem willing to answer him, and Fullmoon agreed. Fullmoon watched him through the rearview mirror and began to ask a question. She then questioned why the top executives of the hero's clan were leaving the villains alone. With her hand on the gear shift, she asserted they could exterminate them completely, even if they suffered some losses. Bishop took a sip of his drink and commented that she had always been very direct. He then placed the cup on the console. He called her direct and naive. Bishop explained that the villain's hidden potential potential was beyond imagination, but he admitted she was probably right. He continued, saying that if they waged another bloody and prolonged war, they could indeed exterminate them. But he reminded her that she knew as well as he did what would happen. No matter how many insects you crush, more would appear to take their place. Bishop added that there were some dissident heroes, and it was human nature to use the weapon one had at hand. He made her consider what would happen if all these bloodthirsty heroes suddenly had nothing left to hunt. Full Moon then asked if villains were a necessary evil. Bishop responded that it was more rational to keep them at a manageable level to maintain balance. He concluded by saying that what the clan needed was a common enemy, something she probably wouldn't understand. Bishop added that if she could understand, she would already be dealing with the clan's leaders. He then asked Full Moon not to try and understand, preferring to keep her hands clean of all this. Full Moon then sharply turned the steering wheel. The car skidded at high speed, taking a tight turn onto the dirt road. Bishop held on to avoid being thrown and told her to get out of the vehicle. She simply announced that they'd arrived, just as the runaway train approached. Back in the engine room, the train's control panels collapsed. Phil yelled that it was too late and everyone should hold on to something. The manager grabbed Catherine and Phil shouted at him not to. He warned Iwa that it was too late to be shocked by the situation, but she ran back into the carriage and Phil asked where she was going. The young woman pushed through the wreckage, asserting she forgot something important and could give up everything but that. She leapt between the carriages, hoping the object was still there. With a strike, Iwa broke open the door of a compartment. The girl stopped suddenly, gazing at a shopping bag on a seat. The train trembled violently on the tracks, and Iwa held onto the carriage door. Inside, a table was thrown about as passengers fell to the floor. Outside, Full Moon stepped onto the grass beside the railway line. She asked Bishop if he would like to handle the situation. Bishop replied that he would, since she was only good at breaking things. Full Moon grabbed him in annoyance, but he merely said he was joking. Bishop then walked towards the tracks, stating it's time to make himself useful. He stepped firmly onto the railway line. Bishop watched the approaching train. He drew his weapon as the train drew even closer. The tip of the weapon began to crack. With a smile, he said, "Welcome." An immense wave of power surged towards the train. He invited them to the Cloud Garden. A young man greeted Cloud Garden, presenting a gift. Then, a torrent of water abruptly surged along the train tracks. Through a broken window, a large, submerged structure became visible. Phil flinched before cautiously peeking over a makeshift cover. He then turned, spotting a man with glasses accompanied by a black cat. From a distance, the young man observed the scene. "I already knew," he declared, touching the water. The person didn't weaken. They became even more powerful. An entire train lay motionless underwater, but with a simple gesture of the young man's hand, the surrounding water began to dissipate. Now standing on the tracks, the young man positioned himself before the train. Inside one of the cars, several people lay sprawled across the floor. The water finished draining from the side of the structure. The young man informed an older man that he needed to check the remnants. "What will you do?" the older man questioned. With a smile, he replied, "I will find someone. That person knows exactly what happened here." Just then, Phil descended from one of the train cars. He twisted his hat, lamenting his luck. "Where did the little girl go?" he wondered aloud. Bishop approached him. "We haven't seen each other in a while," he noted. Phil recognized him. "The reporter," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. Bishop smiled broadly. "How have you been?" Phil paused, then realization dawned. "Bishop," he finally said. Near the train, Iwa observed the two men conversing. "Is this the place?" she wondered. Then, the young woman walked towards a distant structure. "Is this the next stage?" she murmured. The landscape ahead was District 16, Cloud Garden. In a sudden memory, Iwa ran through a field, clutching a sword. Dark hands emerged from a vortex, reaching for her weapon. A shadowy figure tore the sword from her grasp, making her fall. As the sword was carried away, the figure's voice echoed. "The Claymore's weapon is now mine." Iwa woke up in bed with a gasp. "No," she whispered. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Sitting up, she answered the call. "Hello?" Chaos's voice came through the phone. "It's been a while," he said, and Iwa quickly shot up. "Is that you on the other end?" she asked, her heart pounding. "Yes," he confirmed. "You're alive." Yuna Song, seated on a concrete block, explained that she had been fortunate to have an excellent doctor nearby. Iwa peered out the window. "How did you know I was in Cloud Garden?" she asked Chaos. Chaos explained that it was an ideal hiding spot, and he was sure she would choose somewhere close by. "Did you only call to provoke me?" she challenged. "It's about our contract," he countered. "Since you fulfilled your promise, I'll give you the ID card password." After the call, Iwa lowered her phone. Yuna Song approached him. "Are you finished?" she asked. He confirmed. "Yes." She took his hand. "Let's go," Yuna urged. Standing beside a motorcycle, she asked, "Do you have any regrets?" "Already on the bike," Chaos questioned. "About what?" she clarified. "About not being able to fight anymore." Chaos looked back, his gaze steady. "I have no regrets at all," he replied. Yuna Song then hugged him from behind, a silent agreement. Adjusting her glasses, she stated, "Since your time isn't over yet, you must have things to do." As he gripped the handlebars, Chaos reflected that while he had much to say, the torch had been passed. In a memory, Barrack Knuckles lamented not having managed to kill Engen. "But I was able to show you something," he had said. "Perhaps the young man will be able to overcome that." The hero had instructed him to break through any obstacles and eliminate anyone who entered his path. In a brief flashback, Chaos took a photo with Viper, while Barrack Knuckles' voice resonated, advising him to become a a powerful flame. A fallen gauntlet was shown on the ground as the voice concluded, "Become the flame that will consume the hero's clan." Back in her room, Aihwa sat on her bed. "All the pieces are in place," she declared. She threw herself back, announcing her goal, to obtain a hero's license and reach the terminal. Extending a hand towards the ceiling, she acknowledged, "It will take time, but I can do it." On a screen, Engin's image flickered. "Do you want to avenge your sister or merely die fighting?" he questioned. Then Vector's voice chimed in. In a way, Engin was right, but what was once impossible has now become reality. Lying there, Aihwa concluded that she still needed to keep her focus on the prize. She resolved to become stronger, even stronger than Victoria. Then, the young woman sat up in bed. "Do the tests start at 2 o'clock? She wondered. A glance at the clock confirmed her fear. She was late. In a grand hall, a multitude of people had already gathered. A young man seated on a bench simply asked, "What is it?" A red-haired woman scoffed. "Losers like him should go home in silence," she snapped, threatening to clean his ears. A man putting on gloves challenged her. "Are you eager to be expelled?" he asked, adding, "For me, that would be one less competitor." Other candidates watched, one of them yelling, "Stop talking and fight already. The supervisor is late." A girl with a large gauntlet intervened. "Please don't fight each other," she urged. Suddenly, the hall doors swung open, and Aihwa appeared at the entrance. Everyone in the room turned to look in her direction. "What's happening?" Aihwa asked, a hint of confusion in her voice. A man in a patterned shirt observed her. "What is that?" he questioned, noting that it was well past 2 o'clock. "Does she belong to the hero's clan?" Aihwa walked past the other candidates. "Don't worry about me," she said. "Just continue." Sharpshooter commented, "Her indifferent attitude can only mean she's either stupid or the supervisor. My bet's on the second option." Aihwa then settled into a chair. A competitor from the crowd asked, "When will the test begin?" She looked at her phone. "Why are you asking that?" she questioned. "Haven't they started already?" Immediately, several candidates drew their weapons and prepared themselves. Sharpshooter's eyes widened. The tests have indeed already begun, he realized. A man declared, "From this moment on, it's every man for himself." This supervisor seems demanding. As Aihwa continued to look at her phone, the unspoken understanding was clear. This test would be far from easy. Aihwa admitted it was a pity she hadn't managed to kill Takata, yet her actions had still yielded a useful gift. This was likely how people perceived her now. As she remained seated, an intense battle unfolded nearby. Few people knew her true name, so the current situation was acceptable to her for now. But the real problem now was different. She wondered why those combatants were fighting each other at a distance. A young woman fired repeatedly with a large mechanical arm, while another girl defended against the blows using a bird-shaped shield. The two opponents stared intently at each other during the confrontation, and the girl with the shield then used it to attack her adversary. Aihwa rose to approach them and ask what was happening. She crouched over the destroyed structure and questioned what they were doing there. Then, addressing one of the young men, she asked what he intended to achieve, adding that if that was all he had, he might as well go home. But the young man refused, stating he could still fight, and propelled himself forward to demonstrate his capabilities. With a shout, Engin charged forward with his staff in a rapid attack. Aihwa watched the dust rise, remarking that this was why there were no normal people in the hero clan. Elsewhere, a black van screeched to a halt on the street. Inside, a man impatiently tapped his chest. He asked the driver if they couldn't go faster, to which the young man apologized. A companion in the back seat told him to stop being so insistent, reminding him it wasn't the driver's fault the meeting had ended late. He questioned why they needed to handle the cleanup of the train kidnapping incident instead of the local guards. The other man explained that because it was an incident involving vendetta, they couldn't simply leave it to the guards. Since there weren't many heroes in Cloud Garden, they would demonstrate the clan's power and prevent future incidents. The young man with blue hair understood it was merely a show of force, but added that it was natural since Full Moon was also nearby. His partner simply confirmed that was exactly the plan. A man addressed Lady Full Moon, asking if there was any particular reason she wished to see him separately. Full Moon questioned if he truly didn't know the reason, or if he was merely pretending not to, as another person withdrew from the location. She concluded it appeared to be the latter. Full Moon explained that this trial was different from previous ones, as this time they sought only abilities, not past or origin. The tests would take place in 8 locations in Cloud Garden alone, but the number reached triple digits if other districts were included. She remarked that the most beautiful flowers naturally attracted more insects, which could be beneficial or harmful, and so they needed to ensure the good ones were filtered from the bad. If this chance was lost, the hero clan would truly rot from within. But Dawn remarked that he had heard those who became heroes all ended up the same way. Full Moon said she didn't know where he got his cynicism from, but affirmed it made her want to hit him. She repeated that this trial was important, as a group of superiors would be watching. Dawn found it all a nuisance, but Full Moon stated that, even so, they must fulfill their duties. Back in the van, Dawn repeated Full Moon's words about the hero clan rotting from within to himself. He took a swig from a flask, stating he would fulfill the given tasks, but feared it might already be too late. His companion asked what he was thinking, and Dawn replied it was nothing much. The young man with blue hair then told him not to worry about the trial location, as he had already asked Narim, and everything would be fine. The vehicle braked abruptly upon arriving at its destination. The driver announced their arrival, but seemed confused by the scene. Dawn immediately sensed something was wrong with the trial. The vehicle drove straight through the location's signpost, and Dawn understood the implications of the situation. This meant they would have to work overtime, much to the despair of his colleagues in the back seat. A young woman with pink hair emerged from the vehicle, and responding to the call, ran towards him, shouting his name and saying she had been waiting for him. Dawn asked what had happened there, and the girl explained she couldn't handle the situation alone. Dawn reassured her and opened a metal metal door for them to look inside. Amidst the debris, several candidates were fighting wildly among themselves. The young man with blue hair commented that the situation looked bad and asked what they should do. Don suggested they grab a few and knock some sense into them, prompting the group to charge forward into the attack. One of the candidates attacked repeatedly with a wrench, then stopped upon noticing someone approaching. The young man with blue hair struck him on the head with his staff. He then asked if they were aspiring heroes or just thugs, commenting that the quality of candidates had fallen. Suddenly, 2 projectiles were fired in his direction, but he blocked both with his weapons, admitting that their skills might not be so bad. He then turned to the girl and said she seemed promising. Meanwhile, a woman carried away a defeated candidate and agreed that Lady Fullmoon was right about some being disqualified, but also observed that there were many more qualified candidates this year. Don decided this would take too long and prepared to shout, even with his throat still aching. He then yelled, "Everyone stop!" The shout shattered a glass window and startled the candidates inside. Don advanced and introduced himself as a member of the Hero Clan, stating that from now on, he would take care of the situation. He cracked his neck and warned, "If anyone has a problem with that, speak up now." Iwa was attended to by other candidates who treated her like a queen, but Don's shout interrupted the scene, the sheer force of his voice sending her followers stumbling back. He introduced himself as Don from the Hero Clan, warning that he would handle the situation and challenging anyone who had a problem with it. A group of candidates turned to face him. From this moment forward, anyone who disobeys orders will be disqualified. Addressing the crowd, he expected everyone's cooperation to ensure the trials, a rare opportunity, proceeded without issue. His pink-haired colleague was impressed by how quickly he had captured everyone's attention, but then she looked toward the stage and inquired who was there. Don ascended the stairs toward the stage. At the top, he found Ihwa seated in a chair, staring at him. The crowd grew confused, questioning if Ihwa wasn't the supervisor as she sprang from the stage. Bishop approached, apologized for the delay, and asked Phil if he was now the chief editor. Phil replied that it was fine and urged them to proceed. He then stated that he had already told Bishop everything he knew. Bishop brought up the train hijacking and the aspiring hero who had driven off Vendetta. Phil confirmed the story, adding that she had hidden her identity. He claimed not to be truly concerned with it, saying he only wanted to chat and reminisce about old times. Bishop then stood and addressed him as Philip Neville, the only reporter who continued to write articles criticizing the Hero Clan. Phil reached out for his cup. Suddenly, Bishop appeared behind him and asked why he was trembling, then placed a hand on Phil's shoulder. The reporter asked, "Are you going to kill me?" Bishop, however, questioned why he would do such a thing, explaining, "I only asked because you seem nervous." Phil found the situation unsettling, knowing that if he let his guard down, he would be drawn into Bishop's schemes. Phil reminded himself never to forget how Bishop used to be, yet he still wondered what exactly was happening. Bishop then inquired what he was thinking about. Bishop pondered where he should begin. He then revealed that it was the Nameless who had destroyed District 17. Phil stood, asking if they were led by the Smiling Man. Bishop confirmed, but added that he was the only member Bishop knew. The reporter calmed himself, observing that it was no exaggeration to say a district was originally a city-state. As he poured the tea, Bishop asked if Phil knew why they called themselves the Nameless, and Phil admitted he had never considered it. Bishop explained that they too once had a name, much like the Hero Clan. Phil asked what it was. Bishop revealed the name was Nera, what the villains were originally called. Following their defeat in the war, all mentions of the name were forbidden until they were completely erased from history. In other words, they no longer had a name. Phil finally understood the name's origin and reflected on their erasure from history. He then asked if the Smiling Man was trying to rally the villains. Bishop replied that it was a possibility and that the winds of change were blowing. Phil questioned whether he should have access to such information, but Bishop said he only wanted to inform him because he was a fan of Phil's work. He praised the reporter's writing, stating that even in a single sentence, one could feel his beliefs and intentions, for he didn't try to say everything. Bishop explained that he had lived too long to see the world as a common human, and therefore wished to perceive it through Phil's words. He then called him by name and asked how he viewed the world they lived in. Bishop requested that Phil keep an eye on Cloud Garden for now, as things were about to get interesting. Now at a safe distance, Phil leaned against a wall and muttered that he thought he was going to break out in a sweat. He concluded that Bishop was difficult to deal with and better avoided in the future, but he never imagined he would hear such valuable information, and he wondered if the great event Bishop mentioned was the hero trials happening right there. Back at the trial grounds, Don glanced at the candidates. He observed there were a few others he needed to keep an eye on. First, there was the girl who had deliberately hidden her gift during the fight, which was a clever decision. Then there was the girl with the robotic arm, which appeared functional despite not being made with a gift. And that boy must be the one Lady Fullmoon mentioned, as he hadn't even gotten involved in the brawl. The others must have intentionally avoided him, likely sensing instinctively that he was on a different level. But the real problem was that girl. Don watched Ihwa dart away with a piece of food in her mouth and admitted he couldn't completely understand her. He pondered that if it was all just an act, she would likely give up soon, or else reveal her true powers. Don reintroduced himself and stated that he would supervise the trial. But first, he had an announcement to make. He then warned everyone that if they valued their lives, they should leave now. A group of candidates stared at him with apprehension. His colleagues reinforced that the hero trials were no walk in the park. They explained that there were deaths every year, and there would be no safety nets for the candidates. If they weren't prepared for that, they would get injured or die in the process. He then asked if any of them wished to back out now, but Ihwa interrupted him, saying, "Enough with the introductions, it's time to begin." Don smiled, agreeing that was the spirit he had hoped to see. He then turned to the crowd and announced there would be 3 trials in total. A girl questioned the number of trials, and he asked if she was interested. He snapped his fingers. Don stated that if she was, she would first have to pass this initial trial before he could share more details. Dawn revealed that the first trial was a treasure hunt, and Bus then transported the candidates to the trial location. Inside the vehicle, Ihwa remained seated, blindfolded. Inside the bus, the few remaining candidates continued their journey in silence. Someone tapped Ihwa's shoulder, drawing her attention, and Dawn leaned in to tell her to prepare. She was next. The vehicle door then opened in the middle of the road. Blindfolded, Ihwa stepped out as the bus pulled away, leaving her alone. She subtly lifted her blindfold to glimpse her surroundings, noticing she was on a mountain slope. Dawn's voice echoed, explaining the first test would be a treasure hunt. The designated area wouldn't be far from Cloud Garden. There, they were to find jewels identical to the one he held. He emphasized that the method of acquisition was irrelevant. Anyone possessing a jewel within 72 hours would pass. A girl asked if that was all, and Dawn confirmed the summary was simple. His colleague then informed them that all participants must wear watches equipped with tracking devices. She cautioned them to be careful not to lose them, and added one more crucial detail. The supervisor explained that anyone who ventured beyond the designated boundaries would be immediately disqualified, though their bracelets would sound an alarm to help prevent accidental disqualifications. She then concluded the instructions, telling the candidates to head to the buses once they were ready. Now in the forest, Ihwa's watch beeped, making her wonder if the test had already begun. She walked calmly, deciding there was no need to rush or draw unnecessary attention. She crouched down and picked up a stone from the ground. After holding it for a moment, she hurled it at a surveillance drone, asserting, "I hate being watched." The drone's transmission immediately cut out, replaced by static. One of the supervisors noted that drone number 7 had been downed, but was quickly corrected. It wasn't just number 7, but almost half of their entire fleet that had been eliminated. The purple-haired woman complained, questioning the purpose of deploying so many drones in the first place. Dawn simply told her to get over it, explaining that they had anticipated such an occurrence. His colleague accused him of drinking on duty, but Dawn clarified it was only soda. She commented that he was too much of a stickler to break the rules, calling him boring. Dawn ordered her to stop chattering and focus, reminding her that anything could happen at any moment. The purple-haired supervisor commented that some lucky participants had already found a jewel. However, Dawn stated that he wouldn't necessarily call them lucky. He began to explain that finding the jewels wasn't the most important part, when suddenly, a female candidate ambushed a young man who had just secured a jewel. She sent him flying with a single strike of her staff, then moved in to retrieve the jewel he dropped. Dawn concluded that what truly mattered was who held the jewels in the end. His colleague called him ruthless for still referring to it as a treasure hunt, but he simply stated that he was only following orders from his superiors. Dawn then conceded she was right. It wasn't truly a treasure hunt at all. Instead, it was a treasure heist. The objective of this game wasn't about searching, but about stealing. Ihwa realized that finding a jewel so early would only make her a target for a longer duration. With this in mind, she decided to take a nap and begin her serious search the following day. After all, stealing was her specialty. She then concealed herself beneath large leaves to wait. Suddenly, something nearby caught her attention. She spotted a solitary mushroom near a tree, specifically a poisonous Amanita virosa. Moments later, an object struck the mushroom. A girl then appeared with her group, declaring that she hadn't forgotten how Ihwa had deceived her by pretending to be the supervisor. She vowed, "I'll kill you first, even before I worry about the jewels." Ihwa sighed, lamenting that her plan for a peaceful first day had been ruined, but it seemed she would have no choice but to fight. Meanwhile, Rachel and Vector observed towering stone structures, referring to them as pillar clouds. Vector explained that these enormous pillars were a defining landmark of District 16 and the very heart of Cloud Garden. He recounted that ancient civilizations believed they were clouds that had fallen from the sky, a detail Rachel Sinclair found intriguing. Rachel asked Vector, "Are you in some kind of trouble?" He didn't understand the question. She then warned him, "You're being followed." Just then, a man in a trench coat readied his weapon. He and his group emerged, blocking their path and ordering them to halt. The man approached Vector. "Is your name Vector?" Upon confirmation, he stated he had heard correctly. "Did you really think you could escape?" he challenged. "Vendetta never forgets a grudge. We know you were behind the train incident." The group advanced, ordering him, "Come with us quietly. Our boss wants to speak with you." Vector merely pointed to himself. Two of the men then seized him by the arms, dragging both Vector and Rachel towards a prison. A man in a trench coat walked away from the cell. "Who do you think you've confused me with? I just arrived in Cloud City," Vector shouted. The man turned, struck the bars, and ordered him to shut up. He explained that he had received orders to take Vector and that he must remain silent until the boss arrived. Rachel tugged at his lab coat sleeve, discreetly catching his attention. She then whispered that the situation might present an opportunity for them, reminding him of Engin's orders. Vector asked if she was referring to the directive to find Chain. Rachel confirmed, stating they might possess useful information. He conceded that she wasn't wrong, but remained hesitant. Still, he detested the situation, shouting that he had done nothing wrong and that this was false imprisonment. The man drew a knife and asked if he hadn't told him to be quiet. Suddenly, vines with white flowers coiled around his arm, and Rachel yanked them back with force. The movement threw the man violently against the cell bars. Vector stepped out of the cell, asking what had happened. Rachel held the man with the vines, and he questioned how she had done it. The rest of the group entered the room, inquiring about the commotion, but the corridor was now completely empty. Inside a large warehouse, a man tied to a chair stated that it wasn't his fault the other person hadn't cooperated until pushed to their limits. On a screen, the man with vines in his mouth screamed that they had infiltrated the hero trials. Vector asked what was wrong. He commented that the vendetta boasted of its infamy, but not to the extent of disrupting the hero clan's activities, leading Rachel to suggest they might have powerful backing. Vector realized this could escalate into a bigger problem than he had initially thought, wondering what the Engen he knew would do. He then asked Rachel what Engen had told her. She explained that, by By harming the Nameless, this could lead to an all-out war. Back in the forest, Ihwa cracked her knuckles, preparing for the fight. Laika and her companions prepared for the confrontation. Under normal circumstances, Ihwa could only use one gift at a time, meaning she couldn't employ other abilities while disguised. However, she viewed this as a good opportunity to test herself, and wasn't even irritated by the mushroom incident. Her opponent asked if she would finally take them seriously, adding that they might let her go if she begged for forgiveness on her knees. Ihwa realized they had teamed up in the auditorium, as it had never been stated that forming groups was forbidden. They likely had a system to acquire most of the gems and distribute them based on hierarchy, leveraging the strength of numbers to their advantage. Counting those hidden, she confirmed there were 7 of them in total. Sharpshooter began to lose patience and asked what her decision would be. Ihwa simply refused to obey. She decided to take down the nearest opponent first. She advanced and struck the hooded man with a powerful blow. The girl said she already knew and launched her attack with blades. Ihwa managed to grab her opponent's weapon in mid-air. Another candidate emerged from behind, raising a piece of wood to attack. Attempting to hit Ihwa, he missed his strike and hit another opponent instead. He then received a counterattack, a direct elbow to the face. She then turned to face the 4 remaining opponents. The girl advanced with a high kick directed at one of them, but the man fortified his body to resist the impact. Ihwa then stabbed him in the leg with the blade she had seized. He fell to the ground, while the hooded man retreated. She quickly kicked the hooded figure away. The girl remained standing, watching her defeated companions. Ihwa assumed a combat stance to face her. Sharpshooter attacked with a kick, but the blow was blocked with a leg. She then dodged a spinning attack from her opponent. Ihwa advanced and landed a direct punch. The two exchanged blows in hand-to-hand combat. Ihwa landed a high kick to Sharpshooter's face. She stepped back and asked, "Are you done yet?" Sharpshooter repeated the question with disdain. She declared that she hadn't intended to waste her gift, but now things had changed. Several blades materialized in the sky, and Ihwa questioned if it was telekinesis. She then dodged several blades, realizing it was something different. Her opponent warned that it was now too late. Finally, she revealed that Ihwa was already caught in a wire trap. Amidst the dense vegetation, Ihwa wonders if the surrounding threads are made of est. She realizes she can perceive parts of them if she concentrates enough. From a distance, a girl pulls the strings in her hand. The red-haired woman charges forward upon realizing her attack was deflected, dodging a spinning kick from her opponent. Laika warns that she should have moved a bit further away, stating that Ihwa's fist would have been shattered. The red-haired woman grabs her opponent's collar and hurls her away with force. The threads wrap around Ihwa's wrists and ankles in mid-air, leaving her completely immobilized and hanging upside down from a tree. Sharpshooter remarks that although there are no rules, there is no need to attract the supervisor's attention. She throws a dart with a poisoned tip, telling Ihwa to consider herself lucky. The projectile cuts the girl's leg, but the red-haired woman believes she won't die because she is a gift user. She adds that by the time Ihwa wakes up, the tests will be over. But the young woman hanging there replies that she feels the same. Her hair begins to change as she says, "If it weren't for the tests." Ihwa reveals herself with silver hair, free from her bonds. She declares, "That gift will be mine." Suddenly, Ihwa appears right behind her opponent. She approaches from the rear, ready to strike, and calmly says, "Take a nap." With a suplex, she slams the girl into the ground, knocking her out. Ihwa comments that her opponent would have fared better if she hadn't underestimated her. With her hair returning to normal, she reflects that maintaining her disguise is like spinning plates. It helps with mental training, but since she lost her disguise, she realizes she still has a long way to go. She sits next to the unconscious body and wonders if the woman has anything in her pockets. A drop of water falls on her hand as she searches. Ihwa looks up and asks, "Is it raining?" She walks through the rain, using a large leaf for protection, noting that the ground will soon be muddy from the storm. Elsewhere, someone laments, "It had to rain right now." A gathered group comments they are happy to have one less test, but they didn't plan for this weather. Another participant says, "At least we could eliminate some candidates." I was enjoying the show. Someone climbs a giant puppet and remarks that things were getting good. Sitting in a tree, a supervisor is alerted by drones and asks, "What is that?" A supervisor notes that the figure's raincoat belongs to his unit, but the rain only started a few seconds ago. He finds it strange and wonders if the intruder knew in advance that it would rain. Another supervisor contacts headquarters and reports, "Intruder discovered." Naram receives only a distorted transmission on her communicator. Realizing she is losing the signal, she decides she has no choice but to follow on foot. The hooded figure continues walking firmly through the rain. Then he unsheathes his sword and prepares to attack. With a single strike, he cuts down and destroys the drones pursuing him. A man with glasses observes the scene from a distance. Amidst the rain, Bora admits she was deceived, as she couldn't react in time. She understands that he was after her from the start. Bora states, "I am sure you are not from my unit. Who are you?" The hooded figure replies, "I do not speak to the dead." This leaves the supervisor confused. The hooded figure advances in a swift and lethal attack. The invisible blade of the sword becomes stained with crimson. Wounded, Bora realizes she needs to warn the others. In the distance, Dawn's voice calls out for Naram. Naram responds, "Yes?" Dawn instructs her to pay attention and maintain her composure. Around them, the Takeda group observes the fallen supervisor, defeated in a gruesome manner, while Naram weeps over Bora's body. A broken umbrella lay on the ground, near the wreckage of a drone. Rain slicked the canvas of a tent pitched deep within the forest. A cloaked figure then entered the tent. Dawn greeted the newcomer, asking about the situation. The hooded figure reported not seeing any suspects, explaining that the mountain was too vast to cover alone. They mentioned finding a few traces, but communications remained down. Dawn, pondering if Naram had been there the entire time, heard the hooded figure add that Naram needed time since Bora had treated her well, and suggested bringing her back in a few minutes. Dawn adjusted his sunglasses, his expression expression serious. Analyzing the massacre site, he noted that the battle hadn't lasted long. The footprints indicated Bora had initiated the attack, though she was not one to be easily defeated. Forcing himself to remain objective, he concluded that the opponent was simply too powerful. He questioned whether it had been a single assailant or several, and what their motives were. Then he came across a bloody message scrawled on a stone that read, "If you stop, everyone dies," and pondered its meaning. Inside the tent, a supervisor informed Dawn that communications were back online, and the branch office was calling. She reported that orders were to proceed with the test. One of the supervisors bristled at the command, but the hooded man stated it was for the best. He added that there was an assassin to catch. Everyone in the room turned to Dawn, asking for his opinion on the matter. Holding a canteen, Dawn asserted that Lady Fullmoon would not have given such an order and wondered if something had happened to her. Dawn crushed the canteen in his hand, stating that the situation looked dire, but they couldn't simply go home like this. A participant sprinted through the forest under the cover of night. His pursuer donned a skull mask and rapidly advanced toward the young man who was screaming for help. The youth stumbled and fell, begging for assistance. He grabbed Scar's leg, yelling that he was withdrawing from the test. Scar's hand brutally forced the participant's head against the ground. Then a hooded man asked if he was Scar. The man in the skull mask motioned for him to follow, stating that everyone was waiting. Deep within the forest stood an isolated wooden cabin. Inside, Takata asked Scar if he was all right, and the man replied that he had been searching for that girl. A figure seated on a sofa remarked that he was late. A white-haired woman watched in silence, and a muscular man also stared at the newcomer. The seated figure then asked if they were the leaders of the vendetta. The woman compared them to two delicate crystal balls, easily broken under pressure. But Takata retorted that no other gang knew the area better than they did. Holding a chain, he declared that it was in everyone's best interest to help each other. The seated man slammed his staff against the ground, and a wave of force expanded outward from it. Takata was ordered to be silent. The hooded figure then warned him not to speak without permission, throwing bloodied clothes onto the floor and instructing them to prove their worth through actions, not words. The man claimed to have destroyed the eye so that no one else would be watching. Afterward, the figure turned and exited the cabin. Outside, they commented that it was windy, which was good. The figure added that the wind would carry away the scent of blood as they removed their hood. With his face revealed, the shadowy man declared that it was now time to go kill them. Another day had already passed in the forest. Sitting by a stream, Ihwa mused that not much had happened the previous night as she sharpened a branch. Suddenly, she sensed combat happening nearby. Then the girl with the robotic arm dashed through the forest. She turned and fired a projectile from her gauntlet. An unknown supervisor attacked with blades, claiming never to have seen an examiner like her before. The girl shielded herself from the blow. From a distance, Ihwa held her spear, deciding that it had nothing to do with her. But she suddenly turned, noticing something. Her eyes fixed on her opponent's weapon. A small, devilish version of herself appeared, shouting to steal the weapon. Immediately afterward, the demonic counterpart questioned what she was waiting for, reminding her of what the supervisor had said. Dawn had stated in his speech that there were no other rules. The creature insisted this was her chance, as someone had also stolen her sword. Ihwa imagined how good she would look with those weapons, but the apparition urged her to wait as an intense light emerged. A pair of white wings unfolded in the sky, and an angelic woman descended slowly toward her. Then the angelic version of Ihwa simply commanded her to steal it. Encouraged by her two counterparts, Ihwa lunged forward, spear in hand. Rachel, meanwhile, observed her broken, smoking gauntlet. The skull-masked man readied himself for combat. Ihwa then hurled her wooden spear with all her might, but the man easily cut it in half with his blade. Next, she drew a combat knife, only for its blade to shatter on impact. The man called her Little Skeleton and paused. Ihwa then proposed a fair fight, using only their hands. The masked man tossed his weapon aside, and the two adversaries stared intensely at each other, poised for the confrontation. Ihwa deftly dodged a sweeping attack, then advanced with two hidden blades in her hands. In a frenetic exchange, Ihwa and the masked man clashed with fists and blades. She assumed a combat stance as her opponent surged forward, blocking his blades with her forearms. The rapid movements of their confrontation continued until the masked man leaped back to gain distance. She hurled her weapons towards him, and he defended himself with his arm. Ihwa managed to secure one of the weapons. Fallen to the ground, the girl with the robotic hand realized this fight was far beyond her league. She shook her head, urging herself to focus and not get distracted. A blade grazed Ihwa's face, leaving a cut on her cheek. Rachel observed that Ihwa was beginning to falter when another cut struck her leg. Rachel decided she needed to help. She charged her gauntlet with energy, completing a full repair and restoring the weapon. The girl fired a large net towards the opponent, but the masked man effortlessly cut through it with a single strike. Seizing an opening, Rachel advanced through the smoke to attack. Dust obscured the outcome of their brief clash. She then used the chance to grab Ihwa and flee, telling her to hold on tight as the gauntlet's thrusters activated. The two were rapidly propelled skyward. High in the air, the girl noticed the rockets beginning to fail. They started to plummet from a great height, tearing through branches and leaves at high speed. Ihwa used a vine to land safely, but Rachel hit the ground headfirst. Inside a cave, the young blonde profusely thanked Ihwa for her help. Ihwa returned with firewood, reminding Rachel that she had already said as much, but Rachel insisted it wasn't easy to risk one's life for another. The dark-haired girl then questioned how someone could expect to become a hero if they ignored others in danger. Rachel agreed with a laugh before changing the subject. Using her gauntlet to light a campfire, she asked if Ihwa knew anything about their situation. The blonde girl explained that she didn't know much, only that candidates were being ambushed. She recounted how a man had approached her, inviting her to go with him, but she had refused. He then began to attack, and she would have died if Ihwa hadn't intervened. Back in the present moment, Rachel Rachel expressed relief and asked if the examiners would come to save them if they remained hidden. Ihwa simply replied that she didn't know. She added that the skull-masked man was likely stronger than the examiners. The blonde girl was shocked, refusing to believe it. Ihwa observed her bracelet, commenting that while communication was unstable, there were many ways to signal the interruption of the tests. Ihwa explained that Don could easily use Est in his voice to shout across the mountain. This meant the examiners hadn't given up, but rather that they lacked the power to help them. She mused that she hadn't used her full strength, yet that man had power to spare. If he wasn't the only one, then the tests became the least of their worries. The girl concluded that everyone could die just as a silhouette dashed through the darkness outside. The two girls sprang to their feet, alerted by the noise, wondering if it was him. A man tumbled out of the bushes and criticized their naivety for lighting a campfire. Ihwa immediately demanded, "Who's there?" He then rose into a fighting stance and introduced himself. "I am Fazan." A man's head rolled across the cave floor, claiming to possess all the information they needed. The severed head then requested their help in finding its body. The girl carried the man's head, asking if they were on the right path, as they had been searching for a long time. Ihwa walked ahead, stating it seemed to be just around the corner. Upon spotting 3 clay figures, the head declared it had found them and asked to be brought closer. The girl held the head with a look of disgust as she brought it closer to the bodies. A hand moved from the ground toward its owner. Then the body rose and adjusted its glasses. Ihwa questioned what kind of gift that was, remarking that she had seen it before in the testing fields. The girl doubted he would explain, as revealing one's gift was akin to giving away trade secrets. But the man explained that they were clay figures, and he could create up to 3, though doing so required using parts of his own body. He said they didn't need to be so cautious, as they had to get to know each other to work together. He asserted that their attackers were powerful, so they needed to focus on survival, not just the tests. Rachel interrupted him, asking how he knew her name. The man replied that he had already researched all the district's newcomers and knew she was more interested in becoming a craftswoman than a hero. He added that he was more curious about Ihwa, as with her skills, it would be impossible not to be recognized. Leaning against a tree, she asked him exactly who he was. The young woman closed her eyes for an instant. An image of someone in a lab coat briefly appeared before her. Then he introduced himself as Kasha, stating that was all he could reveal. The trio then ran together through the forest. Hanging from a tree, Ihwa said that if what he claimed was correct, he had been attacked by someone who wasn't wearing a skull mask. Fazan added that they also hadn't used scythes. What they did have, however, was a very unique sword. The mention of a unique sword caught Ihwa's attention. Rachel asked Fazan for more details, hoping she might recognize it. He began describing the sword's blade. Then Fazan revealed that the blade was invisible, literally transparent. Rachel murmured that the weapon was a fragment. While running, Kasha questioned what a fragment was. Rachel explained that gift users sometimes imbued their equipment to use it as an extension of their own bodies, but fragments were different, as they were items born already imbued with gifts. And they allowed ordinary people to use gifts as well, though they were extremely rare. The young blonde woman identified the sword as the 100-sided blade, a fragment powerful enough to make any swordsman salivate. As she ran, Rachel thought of the word glass. Then she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Kasha turned to her and asked what was wrong. The blonde girl replied that she had just remembered to whom that sword belonged. A traditional dojo lay bathed in moonlight. A voice echoed through the space, asserting that his bloodlust knew no bounds. It questioned if he had decided to abandon his own morality. Sitting in meditation, an old master asked if he truly desired that sword so greatly. Standing in the doorway, the young man confronted him about the master's own inability to part with it. The young man finished his sentence, questioning if it wasn't a sign of the master's own greed. The old master observed that he had already defeated everyone who had opposed him in the dojo courtyard. The boy unsheathed his sword and confirmed the fact. He explained that they had decided to determine the blade's owner by taking it by force, and that tonight, the sole survivor would become the sword's master. The master rose and asked them to go outside, as he wished to die under the moonlight. Engen agreed to his old mentor's request. The boy's gaze remained fixed and determined. Outside, an intense light pierced through the dojo. The structure of the place began to tremble violently. A man screamed as his hands were severed. Then his head was decapitated. Amidst the destruction, the master called his disciple by name, Jintai Yang. The old master attacked with his sword, asking why he couldn't have waited just 10 more years. But Engen blocked the strike with his own blade. The master warned him that pride would bring misfortune, and questioned if he truly deserved to be the master of the glass blade. He then reminded him of the rule that only the blade's owner could descend the mountain, and stated with a smile that the glass blade was his. He invited Engen to combat, promising that the passage to the underworld would not be tedious, and vowed he would give him the final lesson. Blood dripped from a blade of grass as Jintai realized the blade could never truly touch him. He questioned why this had happened. He then held the master and asked why he had died for him. The master explained that it was only a matter of time until he was surpassed, and that Jintai would show the world the power of his own sword technique. Back in the present, Jintai sat on a rock and said, "I found him." The supervisor accused him of killing Bora and called him trash. Hidden behind a tree, Naram watched. With a smile, Jintai replied, "Yes, it was me." A man rapidly advanced through the forest, wielding his dual weapons. With a leap, he tried to strike Jintai, who deftly defended against the blow. Jintai questioned if his opponent's sudden appearance was a mere display of arrogance. The blue-haired man then warned his companions to exercise caution, noting that their opponent also possessed a fragment. Naram activated his battle mode, selecting the first option on his panel to materialize an assault rifle. However, his projectiles were repeatedly blocked by the defense. Naram quickly switched weapons, materializing a sniper rifle, and fired. The shot struck the swordsman's sheath. Advancing, the blue-haired man clashed swords swords with Jinte. As he moved forward, he stepped on something concealed on the ground. A tentacle immediately tried to ensnare him. Using his weapon, the blue-haired man struck the ground, freeing himself, but his opponent managed to leap clear. A moment later, a figure positioned itself on a tree branch. With a single powerful movement, the young man tore down the tree where Jintai had just been. A reddish-haired man removed an object from his suit. With careful precision, he adjusted it onto his face, forming a mask. Alerted, his blue-haired companion immediately yelled for everyone to cover their ears. An invisible force swiftly propagated through the area, an impact wave expanding throughout the entire clearing. With the mask now covering his face, the man spoke. "I recognize that sword. I know its owner." He identified the young man as Jintai Yang, then questioned, "What is a mass murderer doing in the testing grounds?" Jintai replied, "I am looking for a torch." He added, "It is something to ignite the old world and open the doors to a new era." Birds scattered from the violently shaking trees. A small, bird-shaped object then fell to the ground near someone's foot. The young woman in a red hood knelt to pick it up. A girl wearing a giant gauntlet asked, "What was that?" Fazan replied that she didn't know, but it traveled far. She then drew attention to the bodies scattered across the clearing. Ihwa touched one of the fallen, noting that they hadn't been dead long as their bodies were still warm. Observing a cleanly severed tree trunk, she concluded that these were the remnants of a fierce battle. She then wondered if the masked man was responsible. Fazan suggested they split up to search for survivors, but the girl believed it wouldn't be necessary. Carefully, she touched a wire stretched taut between the trees, then tugged it. Suddenly, a man leaped from the bushes, lunging to attack her. Surprised, the blonde girl reacted, but Ihwa intercepted the blow, blocking it with her companion's gauntlet. In that instant, she recognized the attacker. With the gauntlet, Ihwa held him back, shouting, "No!" The young man let out a frustrated grunt. Annoyed, the green-haired young woman exclaimed, "Blast!" as she held onto a creature. She then used the creature to strike two people on the ground. The blonde girl, in a direct tone, questioned, "What are you all doing here?" Her curious companion asked if they weren't with the man in the skull mask, and the group vehemently denied it. Someone shouted for everyone to pay attention. From atop a rock, the red-haired woman warned them not to believe everything those people said. At that moment, she seemed to recognize someone calling out, "That demonic girl!" Without backing down, Ihwa retorted, "Do you want to be trampled again?" In a hurry, the green-haired girl explained that they had arrived after the battle concluded and didn't know what had happened. Fazan then questioned, "Why did you choose to fight after encountering the masked man? It would have been safer to leave." Wielding his staff, the young man replied, "It's not that we didn't want to, we simply couldn't." Fazan pressed, "What do you mean by that?" Firmly, the red-haired woman explained, "We already tried to leave. We only have one life after all." But thick, flowering vines were blocking every exit, and we couldn't cut through them no matter what we tried. She concluded, "In other words, we are completely isolated." Without hesitation, Ihwa replied, "That's good." Incredulous, the other woman questioned her. With sincerity, the red-hooded young woman revealed, "I planned to fight him this entire time. I was just wondering how I would convince all of you." Concerned, the green-haired girl asked, "Don't you know how strong the man in the skull mask is?" Cautiously, the red-haired woman suggested they hide, stating that their chances of victory were minimal, but Ihwa dismissed the idea. That's not an option. She then pointed upwards, finally revealing that the masked man had been observing them the entire time. Fazan's group turned together, their gazes fixed on the direction pointed. Ihwa held out her gauntlet, stopping the blonde girl from moving forward. She stated firmly that if he truly intended to kill them, he would have already attacked. It seemed he had other business to attend to. The masked man landed on the ground and introduced himself as Condor. He then revealed his task was to take the most talented candidates with him. Condor recalled attacking one of the participants, but admitted he had ended up killing many of them. A smile formed beneath his mask. Condor spread his arms, proposing that they play a game. Suspicious, the red-haired woman questioned what he was talking about. Clasping his hands together, he caused the surrounding environment to begin to change. From the sky, an object descended rapidly. Before their eyes, the lush forest transformed into a desolate desert strewn with ruined pillars. The blonde girl, confused, asked what was happening. It had been dawn just a minute ago. Observing the new scenery, Ihwa commented that it was an entirely different area from the forest they had just been in. She then wondered if this was a gift similar to Sinclair's. Walking through the sand, Condor explained that this used to be the sanctuary where he worshipped his god. The masked man deemed them extraordinary, stating that while he wished to sacrifice them all, it wouldn't hurt to leave one of them alive. Turning to the group, he declared they had two choices. He made it clear, however, that participation in his game was not one of them. The green-haired girl, defiant, asked who said that. In response, Condor simply raised a single finger. Calmly, he explained that once the sand in the hourglass had completely fallen, one of them would die. He warned that the timer would not stop until only one survivor remained. Revealing his power, he stated that this was his gift, assassin's time. Bluntly, he offered them a choice: become hypocrites by letting fate take its course, or become assassins by taking control. Ordering them to make their choice, Condor watched as the two girls stared at each other. In silence, Fazan and the young man in the blue jacket observed the scene. With conviction, Ihwa asserted that this was no trick. There would be no reason for it to be. Reasoning quickly, she deduced that Condor was likely confident he could defeat all of them. Clenching her fist, the red-haired woman questioned what there was to think about. Without hesitation, she launched her tentacles towards their enemy, declaring, "That is my answer." Pinned to the ground, the creatures immobilized her, and she demanded what in the world they were doing. Adjusting his glasses, Fazan stated that they would take his suggestion into consideration. The blonde girl called out, interrupting him. Fazan affirmed that he had no intention of dying here. Trapped in place, the red-haired woman continued to speak, arguing that Condor was attempting to appraise their worth forth, as if they were wares at a flea market. Calmly, Phazon explained that the weakest had no choice but to follow the rules. It was simply survival of the fittest. Turning to their enemy, he addressed Condor and promised a grand spectacle in exchange for more time. Interested, Condor granted the request and stepped back, finding the situation rather curious. Stopping his retreat, Phazon told the blonde girl that this distance should be sufficient. With conviction, he affirmed that they had bought some time and asked Ihwa if there was a chance. She responded directly, "That depends on us." Impressed, the green-haired girl praised Phazon's performance, remarking that he had bought time for everyone. Confused, the blonde girl asked what they were talking about. She stated firmly that they didn't negotiate with villains and wouldn't give him what he wanted. Her strength failing, she collapsed to her knees in the sand, wondering if she was the only one unaware of the plan. Laughing, the red-haired woman affirmed that she had known all along. Raising his gaze, Phazon observed the hourglass in the sky and noted that the sand would reach the bottom in about an hour. Completing his thought, Ihwa commented that since they had never worked together, they would need a perfect plan. Sitting on the sand, the young woman in the red hood asked them to trust her. Standing up, she questioned herself, wondering when she had last been in a life-or-death situation. In her memory, various opponents she had faced along her journey resurfaced. A clearer image of her younger self, covered in a dark substance, returned to her mind. Focused on survival, she had always chosen only the battles she could win. Even in her most vulnerable moments, this memory persisted, yet there had always been a way out. Reflecting, she understood that it wasn't about valuing her own life, but about the weight of unfinished business. It was this burden that propelled her forward. Yushin, seated in a wheelchair, told a wounded Ihwa not to stop. In a serious tone, he advised her to keep in mind that as she grew stronger, her enemies would also grow in power, for those she pursued had begun their journey much earlier. Recalling the past, Ihwa remembered that even with incredible talent, she had needed to push herself to her very limits. She also understood that a moment would eventually arrive when a life-or-death situation would be the only path left for her to evolve. Internally, she admitted that despite her confident posture, her entire body was screaming in alarm in the face of his power. She felt that if she didn't overcome this challenge now, she never would. She decided not to run this time. With a resolute expression, she drew her cards and threw them, willing to risk everything. Advancing through the sand, she walked toward Condor, who commented on her swiftness. In a provocative tone, he asked if she had already decided who would live. Completely transformed, she declared it was the opposite. "I've decided that the one who needs to die is you." Condor remarked that it was a foolish decision as he watched the sand churn around him. He lunged forward, sword drawn to attack. Ihwa, however, deftly evaded the strike, which slammed powerfully into the ground. A flashback revealed the plan, to lure Condor into a specific area. Ihwa explained that she had already scouted a suitable battleground, a rocky expanse with ample cover, perfect for concealment. Holding a map, she instructed the group to buy as much time as possible until her return. Phazon questioned the strategy, asking if there was truly a way to defeat him. Ihwa confirmed there was a possibility, but emphasized that more importantly, she would need everyone's full support. The green-haired girl raised a hand, pointing out a flaw in the plan. She stated that they would need complete trust in one another, and questioned how they could ensure there would be no betrayal, as the situation could easily be exploited for someone to wait for the others to die, becoming the sole survivor. Without hesitation, Ihwa pulled an object from her pocket. The red-haired woman immediately reacted, exclaiming that it was hers. A memory flashed. The red-haired woman, collapsed on the ground, had questioned why Ihwa had her object the entire time. Back in the present, Ihwa explained to the blonde girl that it was a special explosive called a grape bomb. She added that if pressed, the object would explode into tiny fragments, burning everything around it. Then, Ihwa swallowed the small bomb. The entire group reacted with stunned surprise at her unexpected action. With barely suppressed rage, the red-haired woman retrieved a small detonator and asked Ihwa, "Are you happy now?" Questioning her sanity, she demanded to know what was wrong with her. Ihwa replied that they had asked for trust, and without it they would all die anyway. The young woman in the red hood sat down, stating that she was placing her fate in their hands this way, and in return, she asked for their complete trust. Concealing themselves, the group hid among the rocky formations. Peeking from behind a boulder, Phazon warned that Condor was approaching. Running ahead, Ihwa lured Condor, who swiftly advanced to attack her. She slid across the ground, leaving several stretched wires in her wake. Crying out, "Now!" the red-haired woman activated the trap. The wires spread through the air, completely ensnaring Condor's body. Under immense pressure, the binding wires began to snap. Desperate, the red-haired woman screamed that she could no longer hold him. Just then, the young man in the blue jacket spun through the air to strike. He found his mark, hitting Condor, who parried the blow with his own blade. Persistent, the young man managed to wound him with a second strike. Yet, he was injured in the process and forced to retreat. Condor then turned, his gaze fixed on his next target. The remaining wires snapped, detaching from the rock where they were tethered. With a powerful leap, Condor sprang from the rocky formation. He swiftly advanced, sword in hand, his strike landing squarely on the red-haired woman. She was flung against a rock, watching as the stone shattered from the impact. Dazed, she noticed her weapon now broken in two. Condor charged through the air for another attack. Suddenly, a hand grabbed the red-haired woman's shoulder. A bird-like creature intercepted the blow, shielding her. Suki, the green-haired girl, commented in surprise that Condor was incredibly strong. Maintaining her defense, she continued to use the creature to block his strikes, asserting that their only advantage was his underestimation of them. She added that while they knew his ability, he was then struck by the creature, which grew in size, revealing that he did not know their abilities. In a direct attack, the creature fired a projectile from its beak, beak. Immediately afterward, the creature withered and fell to the ground. Exhausted, Suki dropped the puppet onto the sand. Balancing himself on his sword, Condor remarked, "That must have hurt." He then descended, piercing Suki's hand with his blade. In despair, the blonde girl rushed towards him, calling Suki's name. In an impulsive attack, she tried to punch him, but he easily deflected the blow. From the ground, Fazen's creatures emerged, surrounding Condor. With a single movement of his blades, Condor severed all the puppets. Watching the scene, the young man in the blue jacket and Fazen stared at him, calling him a monster. Condor smiled, asking, "Are you trying to buy time?" Assuming a combat stance, he declared that it wouldn't happen. With his blades, he unleashed a powerful strike that swept across them all. The two girls collapsed to the ground, defeated. Attentive, the young man realized that everyone was severely wounded but not dead, concluding that Condor was merely toying with them. With his back turned, Condor called their tactics pathetic and deemed them a useless bunch of worms. Turning around, he asked, "Was all of this part of the plan?" In the distance, Iwa appeared and confirmed it, asking if he would let her go now that she was the sole survivor. But she joined her hands and stated that she had a promise to fulfill. Gently, snow began to fall, and Condor looked up at the sky, asking, "What is this?" The desert transformed, giving way to a snow-covered landscape. Noticing the change, Condor realized that his assassin's time was dissipating. Calmly, Iwa explained that she needed time to understand his ability. She then recalled the rule that he would die once the sand stopped falling. Firmly, Iwa asked, "Who's the boss now?" Smiling, Rachel Sinclair commented that it seemed they were having fun. She then turned and asked Engen if he didn't agree. Iwa firmly asked who was in charge now. The two faced each other across an open field. Condor lunged forward, his sword flashing, but Iwa deftly dodged, letting the strike pass beneath her. In a swift counter, Iwa sliced his shoulder. Observing the wound, he commented that it was strange. The narration clarified that the ability to utilize a gift in diverse ways depended entirely on the user's skill. A question arose as to whether it was truly possible for anyone to wield such a diverse array of gifts. Spinning her body, Iwa landed a powerful roundhouse kick. The impact shattered Condor's mask. Without pause, another kick struck him immediately after. Condor clenched his fist, his grip tightening on his sword. In a curious tone, he remarked, "You are very interesting." In the air, an immense skull began to materialize. Faced with the apparition, his gaze remained fixed. Moving swiftly, Ihua's silhouette sliced through the space. Internally, she admitted she couldn't believe she had frozen up. Sensing the shift, Condor recognized he couldn't prolong this situation much longer. A voice asserted that the hourglass in the sky was not on her side. Condor then challenged her to give her best. The narration explained that one must learn to use gifts through experience. In cases where a gift was complicated to wield, such as Sinclair's or Condor's own, it took a significant amount of time to fully comprehend them. Frankly, Iwa revealed she had faced him alone to make contact, and thanks to her friends who bought her time, she could prepare the scene. In this process, the young woman also managed to confirm something. She discovered that she could utilize multiple gifts within the assassin's time. There was still more to learn, but with preparations complete, only one thing remained. Finally, Iwa tested her abilities, and Condor blocked the attack. Without warning, Condor rapidly advanced towards her. Mid-charge, a projectile struck him. Then Iwa launched a counterattack. Blood splattered near her eye. In the subsequent impact, she suffered a cut on her shoulder. Leaping into the air, Condor delivered a blow with his blade. Under the offensive, Iwa was struck by multiple cuts. Gradually, the ground beneath his feet began to crack. Between the two, a large explosion erupted. From the explosion, bird-shaped creatures emerged. Transforming into sharp crystals, the creatures ascended to the heavens, and fragments rained down towards Condor. Wounded, Iwa covered her face. Laughing, Condor advanced through the smoke. With his blades, Condor attacked, but Iwa blocked the blow. The force of the impact threw her body backward, sliding across the ground. Preparing another attack, he advanced while she was still down. A bird-shaped doll appeared before her, blocking the attack. The doll then absorbed the impact of the blow and fired an attack back at Condor. Falling to her knees, Iwa admitted she had been wrong. Approaching, he said, "The important thing was never the gifts, but you." A flashback showed that no matter how good a blade was, it became useless in the wrong hands. It also revealed that Jinte was the true torch they had been searching for. Back in the present, Condor addressed her as young villain. Then, he extended an invitation for her to become his disciple. Struggling, Iwa rose and questioned, "Who do you think you are?" In response, he affirmed he could make her stronger and asked, "Don't you desire that?" Refusing the offer, Iwa heard Condor state, "This is not a proposal." Coldly, he added, "You will follow me willingly through excruciating pain." The sand in the hourglass continued to fall. A voice deemed her attitude very admirable, but also judged her pathetic, asserting that her gift had become a burden. Stepping back, Condor declared he had no choice but to kill her before time ran out. Then, he asked, "Is this how you want everything to end?" Lying on the ground, the young woman breathed with difficulty. Turning again, Condor raised his hand. Preparing the final blow, he said, "I accept this test." A memory revealed the lesson that a life or death situation was the only way to improve. Yushin explained that there was no need to follow the paths of enemies who tried to overpower her with immense strength. Continuing, he asserted that people could die easily with a single, precise strike. As long as she was alive, she should endure the pain and hold her breath, for nothing would be truly over. A predator's moment of greatest weakness arose when it believed it had won, and in that very risk, opportunity appeared. Concluding the lesson, Yushin instructed her to stab them in the heart, for everything created could also be destroyed. Unsheathing a blade, Condor wondered if this was what she had been waiting for. Advancing next, he attacked the young woman, reflecting that everyone who had underestimated him until then had died by his hands. With a firm voice, Iwa stated, "If you want to become my disciple, you should be the one taking lessons from me." Without delay, she ensnared him with her threads and offered, "Allow me to show you something." Concluding, the young woman declared that she would show him the face of death. In her hand, an item activated, initiating a full repair. The complete repair item activated in Iwa's hand. She plunged the blade into Condor's chest, and the two collapsed together into the vegetation. Breathing heavily, Iwa asked if he had any last words. Finding the situation incredible, Condor asked the young villain's name. "My name is Kasha," she stated directly. He repeated the name, uttering it as he died. A voice then questioned, claiming Kasha was dead, and Iwa's reaction was immediate. "What did you just say?" she demanded, seeking an explanation. As his final answer, Condor only let out a last sound. Stunned, she stumbled backward as his lifeless body dropped to the ground. The scene shifted rapidly through a dense forest, pausing before a vibrant wall of flowers. A hand reached out to touch the blooms, but on the ground, the vines began to tremble violently. Without warning, a woman fired her weapon twice. Attentively, she watched the smoke curling from the barrel, then pointed the gun again, attempting to fire, but the trigger only clicked. "Full moon is late," a voice commented. Right behind her, a shadowy creature emerged. Full moon arrived at the location, immediately asking what had happened to the city. "The place is still a battlefield," the other replied, reminding Full Moon that she had asked High Noon to support the testing area. Pointing at the vines, High Noon explained that she couldn't cross them alone with just her firepower. "The quickest way would be to call Old Bishop," Full Moon suggested, but High Noon doubted he would answer. "Even so, what's most interesting is that this might signify the involvement of the Grey Castle," High Noon mused. "Don't jump to conclusions so quickly," Full Moon cautioned, reminding her that plant gift users existed outside Grey Castle. "That's absurd," the other retorted, immediately pointing to the entire mountain covered in flowers. With a smile, High Noon concluded, "That's the gift of one of the Sinclairs. It must be one of the brothers. There's no way it's the castle lord. The second in command was with the clan." "We'll discuss this later," Full Moon interrupted. "We need to find out what's happening inside." Suddenly, a tremor ran through the mountain. Looking up, High Noon commented on the vibration. From behind, the shadowy creature grabbed her, stating there was no time. It advanced rapidly through the forest. The creature landed forcefully and said the target was nearby. "This makes things easier," High Noon commented with a smile. They arrived at a flower portal, where the woman said, "The guests have already arrived." The scene cut to Ihwa biting Sharpshooter's shoulder. In immediate reaction, Sharpshooter violently threw Ihwa against a tree while Fazan watched. On the ground, Ihwa spat out a large amount of blood. "Are you okay?" Fazan cried, rushing toward her. Leaning against the tree trunk, Ihwa confirmed she was fine, then asked, "Did anything fall?" Shocked, Fazan reacted to the question, finding her incredibly materialistic. Fazan then handed her a small pouch. Ihwa took the object, asking what it was. Raising her hand, Ihwa showed one of the gems Condor had possessed. Fazan explained that they had also placed some in her pocket. "The gem locations would only be revealed at the end," Suki clarified calmly, which justified the blank space on your clocks. "We didn't want to make things easy from the start. The tests are over, and everyone has passed." Soon after, the other girl handed over Condor's weapons, saying she had retrieved them for Iwa. Carefully, Ihwa took the weapons that had belonged to Condor. In silence, she questioned if what the man had said upon dying was coincidence or delirium, but decided not to dwell on it. Analyzing the weapon, she considered the object interesting. "We just need to get out of here," Sharpshooter stated, supposing the hero's clan was already on the move. But Ihwa interrupted her, noticing on her watch that something was rapidly approaching. "Isn't it just others looking for the exit?" Laika asked, questioning the reading, but Suki denied it. "Seriously," Suki concluded, "they aren't trying to leave, they're trying to fight us." From the forest, Jintai Yang emerged, walking toward them. Seeing Ihwa holding Condor's weapons, he reacted immediately. Unsheathing his sword, Jintai demanded, "What did you do to him?" Observing the scene, Laika commented, "That man is on a completely different level from Condor. Still, something about his presence seems strange." Comprehending the situation, Fazan said, "I understand." They then realized the true direction of the threat came from above. From the heavens, a gigantic, shadowy hand descended toward the group. At the last second, everyone scattered as the hand crushed the ground. Ahead, a new man, Engen, ordered Jintai Yang to retreat, but the young man questioned the order. "You'll dig your own grave with that sword," Engen warned him in a grave tone. The other group members recoiled, startled by the scene. Turning, she remarked that his timing had been perfect. Then Ihwa rushed towards Jintai, passing Engen along the way. Dark creatures erupted from the ground, surging towards Jintai, who cut them down with his sword. As Engen prepared to strike, Jintai was caught off guard, hit by a blow that sent him flying into a pit of darkness. He slid to a stop on the ground, his injuries slowly beginning to heal. Engen, curious, asked if Jintai's gift was healing, remarking on its rarity. Jintai, not expecting to find someone like Engen there, addressed him as the Smiling Man. He questioned what had transpired, noting that Engen's earlier behavior seemed like an attempt to protect someone. Jintai then declared that everyone's effort to cover for a hero candidate could only mean one thing: they had planted a wolf in sheep's clothing within their ranks. Disregarding their schemes, he stated his desire to know what would happen if their wolf killed his comrade. Provocatively, Engen asked what exactly Jintai intended to do. In response, Jintai lunged forward at high speed. With precision, Engen blocked the attack with his arm. Jintai adjusted his sword, preparing for the next strike, then unleashed a powerful cut. A massive shadowy entity materialized on the battlefield. With devastating force, the creature attacked, cracking the ground. Jintai was trapped, buried beneath the impact's rubble. A moment later, a dark force crushed him. Wounded, the young man coughed up blood. In a calm tone, Engen mentioned he had heard rumors about Jinte Yang, known as the strongest of the generation that hadn't fought in the war. He then offered an opportunity, allowing Jinte to attack with his best technique. Accepting the challenge, Jinte's sword began to glow. In a memory, Jinte told his master he didn't understand, questioning the purpose of learning to sheath a sword during combat. With patience, the master began to explain that the weapon was called the Hundred-Sided Blade, a strange name for a translucent glass blade. The true potential of the glass lay not in its translucence, but in its ability to form a shape according to the wielder's desires. To manifest this form, the blade needed to be drawn from its sheath. The ancient technique of the fluid sword had been created specifically for wielding that glass blade. Back in the present, Jinte prepared the living blade's crushing wave attack and unleashed it against Engen. A massive explosion swept through the forest, blowing leaves away with its impact. Closing his hand, Engen stopped the attack. He then held Jinte to the ground by his neck and said, "That wasn't bad." A voice shouted the smiling man's name as something streaked across the sky. Landing with force, full moon appeared between Jinte and Engen. Hanging upside down, High Noon stated she had jumped in to help after seeing the uniform, but added that she didn't recognize him at all. Full Moon affirmed that the priority was the safety of the supervisors and candidates, and that fighting there was a waste of time. She then added that she didn't know which of the two had sent the invaders, but they needed to leave immediately. A voice explained that the villains were already being contained elsewhere, and affirmed it was only a matter of time until they were completely repelled. High Noon, complaining, criticized Full Moon for revealing this, as she had wanted to prolong the situation. With disdain, Jinte asked if they truly believed it would be that simple. He then declared that their insignificant forces would not be enough to defeat them. Observing him more closely, High Noon inquired if he was the group's leader. In an alarmed tone, she warned that he had already gone too far, and questioned if he thought Bishop would stand by idly. Engen looked up and asked if Bishop was there. Removing a pair of glasses, Jinte remarked that even the smiling man feared the elder, and that he had some questions for him. Pointing two weapons, High Noon asked if he had seen her brother recently. A voice shouted for someone to wake up as a figure ran through the vegetation. Sharpshooter appeared, running with Iwa on his back, complaining that she was burning up. Running ahead, they urged her to hold on, as the vines blocking their path had vanished. Suddenly, Suki stopped, looking forward. Before them, an entire city had erupted in flames. Through the streets, a man ran, crying for help, then tripped and fell to the ground. An assailant approached, preparing to attack him as he screamed. Before the blow landed, the assailant was struck by a shot to the head. The body fell onto the civilian, and a voice said, "I couldn't help but intervene." Another voice declared, "I cannot allow them to desecrate my hometown." In a calm tone, a voice asked them not to worry. Then, Bishop emerged from amidst the flames and announced, "I have arrived." Bishop raised his staff to the sky, summoning a massive whirlpool in the clouds. Meanwhile, a man with a rocket launcher fired at a target. He extended a hand, wondering if the unusual phenomenon was rain, only to be struck by a surprise attack. Chains descended from above, piercing his body and impaling other enemies in the same brutal manner. A woman looked up at the sky with relief, announcing, "Bishop has arrived." One of the enemy leaders, clutching a defeated body, turned at the mention of Bishop's name. Another leader touched his shoulder, stating coldly, "We have achieved our objective. It is time to retreat." The celestial whirlpool continued its ominous rotation. On a building's rooftop, a chain snapped. Rachel Sinclair swung her weapon, uttering, "Oops," as a man scrambled away. She then suggested they too should make their exit. Vector opened a portal, urging them through. Removing her mask, she stated, "Now that we know the purpose of the meeting, we can go." Suddenly, her eyes widened as she perceived something. A figure stood atop a burning roof. Turning towards the inferno, Vector asked, "What's wrong?" Rachel replied, "It's nothing." From the pinnacle of a building, Bishop declared, "The rain falls for those who desire it." On a nearby roof, another man observed, commenting, "The rain ritual was a success, but not the outcome they wanted." Bishop, running closer, demanded, "Were the plants that encircled the test area you're doing?" The young man merely smiled, listening as Bishop pressed further. "Are you Raxfur Sinclair?" Suddenly, Iwa woke with a start. The abrupt movement caused a young woman, startled, to tumble from the bed. The girl sat up from the floor, rubbing her head. Iwa looked around, disoriented, and asked, "Where am I?" The young woman, immensely relieved, exclaimed that she was awake, then explained, "We are at Miss Laika's house." Back in the forest, Suki surveyed the widespread destruction. She realized it wasn't just the test area that had been attacked. The entire storm was likely Bishop's doing, a manifestation of his gift. Sharpshooter, deciding to leave, declared, "I'd rather go home. It's safer there." Soon after, they arrived at a large house. From inside, a young woman with pink hair watched them. Ihwa commented casually, "I thought she was a delinquent, but she must be rich." She then inquired about the clothes she was wearing. The young woman explained they belonged to Miss Laika, who had dressed her. She also mentioned that Fazan and Mr. Uboa had gone out to buy clothes and assess the situation. Observing the calmer weather, the two realized that while things had settled, there was still no official announcement from the hero clan. With her arms crossed, the blonde young woman struck up a conversation. She asked what exactly Ihwa had been chewing on all this time. Ihwa replied it was a starfish. When asked where she got it, she simply stated, "It's a secret." Ihwa's thoughts drifted. She didn't know when the second phase of the tests would begin, and the hero clan was in disarray. Was it already time to act? While contacting Engen was important, doing so now was too dangerous. It would be better to infiltrate District 16 and search for a data terminal. With all security likely redirected to the outer areas, the interior would be left unprotected. This objective now seemed more crucial than Engen's plan, and it was the true reason she had become the hero assassin. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness washed over her, and her body stumbled. She collapsed onto the bed, wondering what was wrong with her. The young woman beside her carefully explained that Ihwa had overexerted herself and now needed to rest. In a worried tone, the girl revealed that Ihwa had suffered from a constant fever, which had left her very anxious. Sitting on the bed, Ihwa still felt something was amiss, wondering if it was merely hunger. Then, a different sensation surged through her. On an impulse, Ihwa bolted from the room, leaving the young woman calling after her, asking where she was going. Without hesitation, Ihwa leaped over the stair railing, landing lightly on the floor below. The blonde girl immediately reprimanded her for sliding down the banister in her condition, but Ihwa paid no mind. Upon reaching the kitchen, she realized it wasn't what she was looking for. Inside, Laika and Suki were staring dejectedly at a batch of burnt cookies. Startled, Laika asked, "How long have you been awake?" With a sigh, Suki explained, "We tried to cook something, but it didn't work out. Maybe we should just order food." Ihwa reached out and picked up one of the charred cookies. After taking a bite, she commented, "It's not bad," surprising the others. Holding 2 cookies, the young woman declared, "This isn't enough." Impressed, Ihwa gazed at the fully stocked refrigerator. Without delay, she tied on an apron, preparing to cook. With her arms crossed, she announced, "Dinner tonight is on me." Fresh ingredients lay spread across the kitchen counter. With a single, fluid motion, Ihwa tossed everything into the air and expertly sliced all the vegetables with her knife. She then began cooking the ingredients in a pan over high heat. Next, she forcefully kneaded the noodle dough against the table, finishing the meat dish with a generous handful of seasoning. Turning to face them, Ihwa announced that it was ready. Marveling, the other girls gazed at the meal. Dishes of lobster and shrimp pasta adorned the table. Curious, one of the girls sampled the food. After tasting it, she dramatically collapsed to the floor, while her friend commented that she couldn't believe Ihwa had even surpassed her in cooking. "Why do I lose so much?" she wondered aloud. Just then, 2 men arrived at the door of the house. Stepping inside, they remarked that they hadn't taken long to return. Suddenly, they encountered the scene in the kitchen and questioned what they were seeing. The blonde girl took a bite of the food with her fork, her eyes widening in surprise moments later. Suki commented that she hadn't known Ihwa was so talented and asked what her secret was. Meanwhile, Ihwa drank the remaining broth directly from her bowl. She then placed the bowl on the table and replied that the secret was love. The red-haired girl chuckled, saying, "You must be joking." But Ihwa declared, "It's the love for food." Immediately, the other girl responded, "Of course it is." Changing the subject, the green-haired girl asked Fazan about the situation outside. Seriously, he reported that there had been many casualties among the inspectors, but fortunately, the other test sites hadn't been as severely affected. Because of this, they had managed to suppress the villains' forces without many problems. Fazan continued, explaining that it helped that most of them were common thugs, and that Bishop had appeared at the crucial moment. Hearing the name, Ihwa remembered Bishop as one of the elders, and commented that the old man had told her about them. With a hesitant voice, the blonde girl confessed that she was a little scared, as they had almost died there. She added that they had survived by pure luck, and that it was a miracle they had managed to defeat Condor. Frankly, Fazan explained that they hadn't captured important targets like Jintae Yang, and that the clan's attitude had been the most frightening. Thoughtfully, the blonde girl commented that they hadn't cared about the deaths of candidates or inspectors, as if the gears would keep turning even without them. Silently, the green-haired girl placed a hand on her shoulder. The blonde girl then apologized, saying she hadn't meant to spoil the mood, but her friend asserted that there was no need to apologize, as everyone was thinking the same thing. Agreeing, Fazan added that everyone there knew how dangerous the hero tests were. The blue-haired man complimented this, saying that it had been much more perilous than they expected, but everyone had their reasons for wanting to pass. From behind Rachel, a voice assured them that the tests would make them stronger than ever. Lightly, the red-haired girl said, "Those were good words." She suggested celebrating the fact that they were alive. Raising her mug, she proposed a toast, since there was plenty of food and drink. But all the plates on the table were already completely empty. Pushing her bowl forward, Ihwa asked for kasha, then dashed out of the room. In an office, someone suddenly emerged from behind a desk. Entering the room, Dawn asserted that continuing the tests in that situation was a foolish act. Seated in the chair, the woman asked if it was a mutiny, saying someone needed to put their subordinates in their place. With her back to them, Full Moon told Dawn to calm down, as she wasn't the one who made the decision. Questioning, Dawn asked who it was. Then a voice from the doorway revealed that it was she. At the entrance to the room, a blonde man named Raxfer Sinclair appeared and greeted them. Rising, the other woman exclaimed his name, saying she had warned him. Called a puppet of the hero clan leaders, Raxfer received the comment impassively. In a direct confrontation, the woman asked if what happened in the forest was his doing. Denying it, he claimed to have been held hostage, but confirmed that the order to continue the tests came from above. Explaining his view, Raxfer stated that they saw it as an opportunity to forge heroes of the highest quality. Questioning the present, he asked why gift users continued to live in the past while humanity advanced with society and technology. He then concluded by saying that they believed the answer was war. In response, Full Moon asked if that was why they refused to intervene, and if her subordinates had to die for that reason. Responding coldly, he said that was no longer the sole reason, as they now knew they were after the torch. Recalling something, Dawn remembered Jintae Yang mentioning the torch and asked what exactly it was. With solemnity, Raxfer said, "Praised be the spark that devours the light." In immediate reaction, Full Moon shouted his name. She suggested they seek countermeasures, as everyone there was close to her and would soon discover everything. Raxfer then spoke about the torch of great evil, the spark that devours the light where not even darkness existed. He explained that it was a fragment of tremendous power, capable even of granting wishes, but if used imprudently, it could consume its wielder, which had not stopped people from approaching it. It was also the object that allowed the villains to maintain the balance of power during the war. Theory asserted that the torch was destroyed in the final moments of the conflict. Turning to Full Moon, Raxfer questioned if this was true, saying it was still only a theory. Opening a window, he commented that there was no moonlight that night. He then departed, stating that the night was perfect for rats to hide. In one of the rooms, Rachel, Fazan, and the green-haired girl slept. In the dining room, the other two had also fallen asleep over the table. Coming out of a room, Iwa said she couldn't believe that was the only set of clothes she found and that the taste was questionable. Tightening her bootlace, she adjusted it firmly. Then, she declared, "It's time to go." Already outside, the young woman said she had been watching for a while and asked if it wasn't time for the person to come out. Turning, she asserted, "I'm talking to you right there." From the shadows, a figure gnashed its teeth. Revealing himself, Chain emerged and greeted her, causing Iwa to ask, "Is that really you?" Surprised, Iwa hadn't expected Chain to appear. "Are you lost?" she asked ironically, remarking that many people must be looking for him. Nervously, he asked, "Is Engen around here?" Iwa pointed behind him. "He's right there!" Startled, Chain flinched and recoiled, only for Iwa to immediately reveal it was a joke. He grumbled about her trick. "You're so conceited," the young man said disdainfully. "I shouldn't even be associating with someone of such low standing." Impatiently, Iwa cut him off. "Get to the point. I'm busy." Hesitantly, Chain asked, "Are you thinking of infiltrating District 16? Is that all?" she questioned indifferently. "I haven't said anything yet," he replied defensively, but Iwa simply stated, "I already understand." Coldly, the young woman explained that during the attack on District 17, he had stabbed the Nameless in the back by not providing enough explosives. That was why Engen was looking for him. He probably wouldn't be killed, she continued, but he would suffer vengeance, which explained his attempts to avoid Engen. Concluding her reasoning, Iwa deduced that instead of waiting for Engen to appear one day, he'd had the brilliant idea of allying himself with her. Justifying himself, Chain began to explain a plan to gradually help Engen to appease him. Iwa fixed him with an attentive gaze. "Am I correct?" Silently, he merely watched her for a moment. "You're partly right," he stammered, "but that's not the only reason." Trying to explain, Chain said that although he was called a villain, he was first and foremost a businessman, and then he mumbled to himself to shut up for trying to sound cool. As the manager of Chain Lodge, he had decided to invest in the hero killer. Just as she had ties with the Ghost of Dust City and the Smiling Man, Chain also wanted to get in on the game. He tossed her a device. Mid-air, Iwa caught it and activated it, bringing forth a holographic map. "Is this for District 16? It won't be as easy as it was with Heavy Smoker," Chain warned, his tone alert. "You'll be alone in the city, and Full Moon isn't so naive." Bidding her farewell, he stated the map was a bribe, asked her to stay safe, and assured her they would keep in touch. Firmly, Iwa declared, "I have no intention of stopping there." Stepping away, Chain tossed a coin into the air. The coin, engraved with a ship, spun slowly before it fell. Another young man approached. "Where have you been? Are you finished?" he asked. Observant, he commented that Iwa seemed even stronger now. He used to feel he could face her. "Don't even dream of it," Chain said disdainfully. "There's a reason the big shots are keeping an eye on her. Sharp needles like her always stand out. At this rate, she'll eventually surpass all of them." With a premonition, the young man predicted that one day the hero killer would become the sword that pierces the steel witch. Immediately after, he shook his head, dismissing the idea. Curious, the other young man asked what they would do now. "Let's eat tonkatsu," Chain suggested. The two walked away down the street, agreeing with the idea. Hidden in the bushes, a device emitted a signal. Elsewhere, a red-haired woman touched a small device on her choker. Perched on a tree branch, Sharpshooter held her weapon ready. Ahead, the target revealed itself as a large complex of buildings surrounded by a wall. Iwa grabbed the top of the concrete wall and propelled herself upwards, leaping over the barrier. In a low voice, she affirmed that she had taken care of the wall. Now, the next step was to infiltrate the main building. Attentively, she observed her surroundings. An empty cardboard box lay discarded on the sidewalk. Then, the box began to move across the ground on its own. Beneath it, Iwa crept, remembering she had already memorized the entire map. She considered herself lucky to have found Chain, otherwise she would have needed to devise a more complicated plan. Noticing the details, she observed that she wasn't used to seeing soldiers with such relaxed attitudes, but knew she couldn't underestimate them. She soon realized that although the building's exterior looked old, the interior was completely different and featured a robust security system. A security camera guarded the area, making approaching the main entrance extremely dangerous. The memory of how Chaos had handled the CCTV data in Dust City came to mind, but she understood that she couldn't count on that kind of help here. Therefore, it would be necessary to cover the cameras and avoid being seen. In the security room, one of the guards stared at the monitor. "What's that?" he muttered. On camera 5's screen, a plastic bag covered the lens, and the guard complained that it happened precisely on his shift. "That's the height of bad luck," Naram commented, offering to check it out. Outside, Iwa began to scale the building's wall. With a sigh, she lamented having lost her sword, but was grateful for the gift received from Claymore. As she landed, pieces of the sword's hilt fell to the ground. Without losing time, Iwa took a small device from her pocket. From there, a race against time began. The same tactic as before could not be used. Her clear objective was to reach the terminal and then leave as quickly as possible. After advancing, she finally spotted her destination door. Approaching, she knew exactly what awaited her behind that door. With a precise movement, she used a card to open the passage. On the other side, Raxfer Sinclair stood. Staring at him, Iwa questioned, mind. What's happening? Assessing the situation, Ihwa considered whether to attack him. The opportunity for a surprise strike seemed ideal. However, his strength was unknown, and the situation could quickly escalate if he wasn't subdued swiftly. Coming to a conclusion, she decided it was better not to fight at that moment. Adopting an assertive stance, Ihwa displayed her access card and ordered him to step aside. Raxfer silently observed the card in her hand. He apologized, stepping back, and explained that he was new there and unfamiliar with the heroes. He then added that he would have recognized her if she had been in her costume, before asking her identity. Interrupting him, Ihwa demanded his identity, stating she didn't recognize him. With a hint of irritation, Raxfer complained that she barely allowed him to speak. He finally introduced himself. "I am Raxfer Sinclair." He extended a hand for a handshake, only to be met with a question about his surname in return. Their hands met, and Ihwa's reaction left him confused. Suddenly, Ihwa stumbled backward, exclaiming, "It couldn't be happening again." The same unsettling sensation struck her once more. Sitting on the nearby bed, Ihwa wondered what was wrong with her. Attempting to help, Raxfer reached out to touch her, but the young woman batted his hand away. Insisting she was fine, she told him they should each go their own way. He agreed, accepting her decision, and bid her farewell. As Ihwa attempted to use her access card on the panel, she found her entry denied. She glanced down the corridor, noticing Raxfer walking away. On the screen, the "access denied" message persisted. His gloved hand clenched into a fist. Then, the panel suddenly flickered to "access granted," and the door slid open. Through a narrow crack, Raxfer watched as she stepped into the room. Inside, Ihwa removed her mask and breathed a sigh of relief. That was a close call. As she walked across the room, she recalled the strange fever and felt a surge of relief that she hadn't confronted him. To survive her stay here, she needed to discover what was wrong with her body. Ahead, a terminal lit up, prompting her for the cell's password. The information processing system displayed a welcome message, asking how it could assist her. Adjusting the cap on her head, Ihwa prepared herself. She initiated a search for the name Kasha. The terminal yielded no results, finding no match. A memory flashed through her mind, Chaos explaining that he had altered her card to grant access to almost everything. His warning echoed, reminding her that top-secret information would remain inaccessible and could potentially make her a target. On the screen, the search field began to flash. Ihwa watched the terminal intently. After a moment, the system finally displayed results for Kasha. On the screen, an image of her sister, Yeon, appeared. Ihwa's hand carefully touched the screen, having found what she was searching for. The image depicted a younger Ihwa, sitting on the grass with a butterfly perched on her hand. Approaching from behind, Yeon called the girl's name. She then asked to be called Kasha when wearing those particular clothes. Holding her sister's hand, young Ihwa asked if she had gotten hurt again. Calmly, Yeon replied that she knew her job, prompting the younger girl to question why she had to keep fighting like that. Her sister then explained that she did it to protect her, and also to create a world where fragile children like her could thrive. A painful memory surfaced. The girl found Yeon fallen on the ground, calling her name. Gravely wounded, she asked Ihwa to make her a promise. Back in the present, Ihwa recoiled from the terminal. On the screen, her sister's status was listed as deceased. Ihwa pushed back against the surge of emotion, reminding herself it was not the time for sentimental memories. Observing more closely, she noticed that most of the photos seemed to have been taken by someone tracking her. Based on the clothing, she surmised they had been watching her for a long time. The stark lack of information compared to other heroes was also evident. There was nothing about her organization or biographical data, as if someone had intentionally erased her from existence. Maintaining her fixed gaze, Ihwa continued to stare at the terminal screen. Then the words, "Operation Twilight," flashed across the screen, raising a question in her mind about its meaning. She extended her hand, touching the screen, and queried, "Operation Twilight." A warning appeared, informing her that access required top-secret authorization and asking if she still wished to proceed. Pointing at the screen, Ihwa scoffed, "Do they really think I'd leave now?" In a distant office, a wooden door began to tremble. On the desk, a communication device vibrated. Answering the call, Full Moon asked, "What is it?" A guard reported an emergency, warning that unauthorized access to the cell had been detected, and someone was attempting to access top-secret files. Quickly deducing, Full Moon concluded that the Black Castle child had made her way there and seethed at the audacity. However, a guard from the control center informed her that it was not Raxfer Sinclair. Revealing the truth, he stated it was the hero of Dust City, Jeremy Bernstein, leaving the woman in the hat in shock. The entire complex then plunged into a red alert. Emergency lights began to flash throughout the building. Stepping onto a balcony, Full Moon stated that there was a strong possibility this was connected to the attack in District 17. With a firm voice, she ordered, "Leave no stone unturned." Running through the corridors, Naram and other guards advanced toward the terminal room. Tightening her cap, Ihwa wondered if this was Operation Twilight. Running a hand across her face, she declared, "The Hero Clan are bastards. They deserve no mercy." Turning, Ihwa faced the door, which was about to open. On the other side, a guard prepared to breach, beginning a countdown. The door panel lit up as the count reached 1. At 2, Ihwa closed her fist, readying herself. The moment the door swung open, she lunged forward, dropping the first guard with a punch. Another soldier attacked, weapon in hand. Thrown back against the wall, the young woman asserted that she couldn't use any other gifts. Exhausted after her fight with Condor, she had been forced to abandon her disguise but couldn't reveal her identity. With a precise kick, Ihwa struck one of the guards in the head. Moving swiftly down the corridor, she knew she needed to keep them in the dark for a little longer. Soon after, the young woman brought another guard to the ground. One of the female soldiers observed the dust rising after the skirmish. Grabbing a guard as a hostage, Ihwa explained, "It's better to conserve energy too." When more guards arrived, pointing their weapons, she ordered them to back off. The advancing guards surrounded Ihwa and her hostage. On impulse, she pushed the soldier toward towards a window. Using the hostage's back as a springboard, Ihwa leaped outside. In a freefall, the young woman plummeted down the side of the building, but managed to grasp a ledge on the wall. She used this support to propel herself away from the structure. Upon hitting the ground, Ihwa began to run at high speed to escape. From a nearby rooftop, an archer watched her, commenting, "The situation is getting interesting," seeing as she had the courage to infiltrate the base alone. The prosecutor asked the archer, "Are you sure?" Impatient, Golden Arrow told the swordsman to shut up so he could concentrate. An arrow was fired, multiplying in mid-air. As she ran, Ihwa managed to dodge the projectile coming her way. Observing everything, the prosecutor found the scene fascinating. Leaping from the rooftop, Golden Arrow announced, "I'm going after her." Alert! Ihwa noticed her opponents approaching. Suddenly, a warrior landed in front of the archer, and she identified them as a warrior and an archer. Quickly analyzing the situation, she decided she should go after the long-range opponent. But the archer leapt towards her, surprising Ihwa by closing the distance. Shouting a warning, the prosecutor said, "His gift grows stronger the closer he gets." Without hesitation, he fired an arrow at point-blank range towards Ihwa. Even so, the young woman managed to evade the projectile. Relieved, she admitted, "He's very strong. That was close." In a swift move, Ihwa provoked him, challenging him, "Try shooting arrows now." Noticing her speed, the archer was astonished to see his quiver being taken. Turning, Ihwa faced the prosecutor and asked, "Is it your turn now?" Suddenly, a projectile was fired in her direction, but the prosecutor stepped forward to block the attack. Confused, Golden Arrow questioned, "Did that shot come from the sharpshooter? What's going on?" Commenting on the situation, Sharpshooter revealed that she had no choice due to a bomb collar. From the rooftop, she shouted, "Kill me already!" The archer then fired another shot saying, "If you don't, I'll die anyway." Observing the scene, Ihwa realized they had been watching her back, just as she'd suspected, although she hadn't anticipated Sharpshooter's appearance. Seeking cover, she hid behind a tree, feeling the situation was becoming complicated. Suddenly, something approached, making her wonder if it was Rachel, but it wasn't. Ihwa dodged an attack. Sinclair appeared, commenting, "We meet again." In a provocative tone, he called her Miss Aggressive. A flare shot into the sky, and Vector identified it as Sharpshooter's signal, commenting, "She's demanding and cunning." Thinking quickly, he deduced that she must have known they would come. Sinclair emerged, saying, "It doesn't matter. That's part of Ihwa's charm, and I would have come to rescue her even without Engin's request." Then, Rachel asked Vector, "What's taking so long?" Explaining the situation, he said he needed to define the coordinates before opening a portal, as it was a delicate process. She then suggested that an area of effect attack might help. Questioning the idea, Vector asked, "Do you really want to do this?" He warned that both of them would be exhausted for days. But Rachel affirmed, "Engin told us to give our best," and she began to prepare. Agreeing, he only asked, "Just don't abandon me afterward." Elsewhere, a guard in a building lamented being assigned to that night's shift. Attentive to her surroundings, Hainu noticed something strange in the air. Above her, several portals began to open in the sky. Shouting, she called out to Full Moon, warning, "I'm seeing the phenomenon!" Looking up, Full Moon wondered if it was a gift that manipulated space. Concentrating his energy, Vector gathered his ability in his hands. Soon, Rachel launched her vines skyward, and together, they unleashed their combined attack called Cosmic Horror. As vines erupted everywhere, the man in the trench coat questioned if that truly wasn't Sinclair. He quickly dismissed the thought, deciding it wasn't the main issue. Swiftly, the woman in the hat drew her weapon and warned Full Moon that something was approaching. Violent vines tore through the top of a building. Golden Arrow landed amidst the ruined pavement. Suddenly, vines seized him and the prosecutor, crushing them forcefully, but he broke free, declaring himself unharmed. Laughing loudly, he taunted as Sharpshooter watched from a distance. Assessing the situation, Sharpshooter decided it was time to leave, but she paused, turning at the sound of someone calling her name. Trapped among the vines, the prosecutor shouted, asking, "Are you coming back?" From the top of a building, Sharpshooter warned him, "Don't be late if you don't want to be left behind." She paused for a brief moment, observing the scene before making a decision. In response, the prosecutor prepared for battle, sword in hand. Turning back, Sharpshooter asked, "What makes you think we're friends?" Suddenly, explosions echoed among the trees, shrouded in darkness. Ihwa stood face to face with Sinclair. She looked up, observing the immense vines that continued to grow into the sky. With another explosion nearby, she began to run, attempting to escape the area. Her escape was cut short by a concrete wall blocking her path. Appearing before her, Raxfer asked, "Did you perhaps forget about me?" Glancing around, he commented, "It seems you've brought some friends." As he spoke, vines began to coil around his hand, and he asserted that as long as he remained there, no escape was possible. Raising his arm, he caused an immense barrier of blooming vines to erupt from the ground, sealing off any potential retreat. Faced with the wall of flowers, the woman admitted it was a dilemma. Amidst the destruction, Ihwa ran, knowing she couldn't retreat. Moving across the vines, she pressed forward, aware that fighting there would ruin Engin's plans. Suddenly, something unexpected caught the attention of both her and Sinclair. A massive explosion erupted between them. From the thick smoke, John Nash emerged, walking out of the dust. Recognizing him, Ihwa questioned, "What are you doing here?" Without hesitation, John Nash charged directly at Raxfer. With agility, Raxfer dodged all of his blows. He then pushed his opponent back and countered with a precise punch. With brutal force, Raxfer delivered a blow that sent John flying to the side. A small doll of John Nash fell onto the grass. Approaching, Ihwa questioned him about the reason for his appearance. But Sinclair extended his hand and stated that the real question was something else. Moving to attack, he questioned, "Where did you come from?" The doll in her lap pointed upward, prompting Raxfer to ask, "Did you come from the sky?" At that instant, the true nature of the situation became Sinclair. Carefully, Ihwa placed the doll on her back and turned. In direct provocation, Raxfer asked, "Are you finally going to start taking me seriously?" Running towards him, she affirmed. But she quickly corrected herself, saying, "Actually no," as she leaped over him. Mid-air, she spun and clung to the vines, stating, "Those are the gifts of Rachel and Vector." Looking up, Raxfer Sinclair questioned, "What is happening?" This confirmed that Ihwa could use the vines to propel herself away. From her back, the doll affirmed, "There's no need to escape anywhere." Perplexed, Raxfer Sinclair watched the scene unfold. Shouting, Ihwa urged John to act, adding, "You don't need to jump over any wall." Ceaselessly climbing through the vines, she pressed on, knowing her friends were nearby. Then, Rachel Sinclair emerged from a portal, brandishing her weapon. With a single strike, she cut the vine bridge in half. Extending his arm, Raxford tried to reach them. From above, Rachel stared him down. She then extended her hand to Ihwa, calling her to leave. Without hesitation, Ihwa grasped her companion's hand. The two, along with the doll, were pulled through the portal. Turning towards the rapidly closing portal, Vector confirmed to Sharpshooter that everyone was accounted for. Cocking her weapon, High Noon said, "Say goodbye to everyone." She then aimed the weapon at Vector's head, announcing, "It's time for the farewell party." Startled, Vector reacted when a hand touched his shoulder. A weapon was pressed against his back. Taking him hostage, High Noon warned everyone to stay still. Across the rooftop, Ihwa's group observed the situation. Sharpshooter frankly commented that, to be fair, those two were in no condition to fight. Coming to a conclusion, she stated that this left only Ihwa. Behind her mask, Ihwa knew she only needed to buy time until reinforcements arrived. Assessing their advantage, Sharpshooter decided it wouldn't hurt to reduce their numbers and cocked her weapon. Without hesitation, she fired, striking Vector's leg. Pointing the gun at Ihwa, she asked, "How do you know my name? And who are you?" In a direct response, Ihwa stated she was very close to Chaos, who had even invited her to be his partner. In tense silence, the two women stared at each other, while Vector remained on the ground. His voice weak, he murmured that the bullets had hit an artery, and he would die from blood loss. Trying to keep him focused, Rachel pleaded for him to pay attention to the conversation, but her request quickly turned into a desperate plea for help. Raising a card, Ihwa affirmed that he was alive, claiming she was merely borrowing it. Suspicious, Sharpshooter asked why she should believe her. Unfazed, Ihwa replied that it didn't matter. Coldly, Ihwa suggested they could simply abandon Vector. Consumed by rage, Rachel Sinclair screamed that they would have their revenge. Sharpshooter reacted to the threat with a wide smile. With weapons held firmly in her hands, she wondered what on earth had happened in Dust City that day. Suddenly, explosions shook the street. High Noon was thrown clear, disappearing from sight as someone called out, asking if he was all right. Violently, the ground trembled with the impact. Amidst the dust, the promoter questioned their location until he heard Sharpshooter call his name. Bluntly, she admitted she had lost them and took the blame. In the end, they managed to escape the district completely unharmed. Inside a hideout, Ihwa remarked that it was fortunate they had encountered High Noon. Approaching Vector, she asked if he could use his gift, but he replied in the negative. Impatiently, Ihwa told him to stop complaining. Irritated, Vector shot back, "Have you ever been shot by any chance?" With a casual shrug, she responded that she dodged all of them. Observing Vector's leg wound, Ihwa knew that hero weapons were custom-made. On the outside, they might resemble classic firearms, but inwardly, they almost always concealed much more. While designed to inflict damage on gift users, matters became complicated when EST was involved. There were also users who imbued their abilities directly into ammunition. Ihwa then asked how he was, and Vector replied that he thought he had broken a bone. Getting up, he said that something felt strange, piquing Ihwa's curiosity. Referring to the hero clan, he questioned if they, by chance, knew of its existence. Ihwa commented that she didn't think they would have anything to look for. Suddenly, Rachel shouted for Ihwa to wait a minute. Crouching near the window, Ihwa looked at the wound on her own leg and asked to borrow Rachel's knife. Without hesitation, the blonde girl handed over the blade. Using the knife's tip on her leg, Ihwa declared that she knew something felt off. From the cut, she extracted a seed and remarked that she thought that was the problem. A memory surfaced, the moment she had been struck by that man's vines. With a gesture, she confirmed the seed belonged to him. Turning to Rachel, Ihwa revealed that the man's name was Raxfer Sinclair. Noticing her companion's reaction, she called out, "Rachel." Covering her face, Rachel said that was why she had felt so uncomfortable. She explained that he was Reagan Sinclair's second son and suggested they get rid of the seed and leave immediately. Raxfer Sinclair gazed at the spot where she had been, commenting in a low voice. He muttered that things didn't seem to be going his way today. In an industrial area, the group approached a large warehouse. Ihwa entered first, carrying Vector, followed by Rachel and John Nash's doll, announcing that they were safe. Without ceremony, she dropped Vector onto the ground and called for Engen. Emerging from behind a pillar, Engen greeted her, calling her the hero killer. Informing her of the situation, he said she could rest as the perimeter was secure. Removing her mask and hair elastic, Ihwa commented that it was good to hear. Leaning against the wall, Vector remained with his leg bandaged. Sleeping, cradling the doll on some crates, Rachel asked if there was good news. In response, Ihwa said there was, and that although she didn't know who killed her sister, she now knew how she died. She then revealed it was during Operation Twilight. During this incident, the ability of self-purification was lost as a side effect of the clan's hypertrophy. This led to a risk of hero defection, prompting the executives to take action. The capture of those deemed insolent or difficult to control within the clan was ordered. Engen then concluded that, in other words, they had been betrayed. Ihwa recounted that her sister had been used as an attack dog before being killed by them. Clenching her fist, she squeezed her hand and asked Engen if he had any idea how much she had wanted to revert to her main task until that moment. If it were up to her, she would have killed every single one of them, but she didn't want to disrupt Engen's plans. hands. Therefore, she expected him to be willing to compensate her for her restraint. With a smile, Engen called her the hero killer, but he stated that they first needed to take care of something else, piquing her curiosity. Turning, he asked if she had been feeling strange lately by any chance. Ihwa then recalled a recent moment. Ihwa questioned him about how he knew, but Engen interrupted her, saying that the way he saw things, there was no real knowledge about gifts. He then questioned whether she would become the sword he needed, or if she would disintegrate like the others. Turning again, he affirmed that the time had come, and merely potential was no longer enough. Engen declared he would force her to grow, even if he had to temper her 1,000 times, and she ended up breaking in the process. They arrived at a small, isolated village shrouded in mist. Engen walked a few steps ahead of Ihwa, then turned to her, asking what she thought the gifts were. Ihwa replied that they were perhaps some kind of mysterious power. Engen looked back at her, remarking that this was what most people believed. He then explained that gifts had always existed alongside humanity, yet very little was known about them. Ihwa listened intently, a suspicion forming that this lack of knowledge stemmed from the numerous atypical cases, like her own. Continuing, Engen stated that there was great diversity among gifts, not only in their types, but also in how they manifested. He added that, furthermore, even seemingly similar gifts varied in their activation methods. In a revealing tone, Engen claimed to have discovered a common characteristic among all of them, piquing her curiosity. He then brought up emotions, such as intense rage or even fear. Guilt could also be a factor. Concluding his explanation, Engen said that a strong yearning for something and other psychological factors strengthened and enhanced gifts. In other words, he concluded, even mental stimulation could make her stronger. With a faint smile, he added that this truly could make her stronger. Taking a step back, Ihwa recoiled, realizing she stood before someone undeniably powerful. Understanding dawned as she noted the enormous difference between him and Condor, now much clearer. Faced with this, the young woman felt paralyzed by the colossal power gap separating them. Suddenly, hands materialized around her, seizing her from all sides. With a sudden impulse, she broke free. In a direct tone, she questioned, "Are you saying you want to fight me?" Moments later, her body hit the ground. A realization struck her. She hadn't exactly faked her way here, or so she had thought. In silence, she stared at her own bloodied palm. With a burst of speed, Ihwa charged toward Engen. Prepared, Engen took a stance to receive her attack. Leaping, she attacked from above, but hands emerged from the ground, grabbing her legs. Then, a shadowy hand struck her squarely, knocking her to the ground. Approaching her, Engen asked what she believed was the most important factor when using gifts. Still seated on the ground, Ihwa simply replied, "Would it be food?" Without hesitation, Engen revealed, "The factor is focus and imagination." With a confident smile, he stated that there was a sword in his hand. As he raised his arm, a blade materialized from thin air. Engen explained that this was the result of imagining and concentrating on the image of the sword, and that if focus was lost, the blade would weaken and dissipate, just like the gifts she had stolen. In conclusion, he asserted that besides a battle sense, she lacked both focus and imagination. Engen snapped his fingers and Ihwa advanced once more, but he merely raised his arm, summoning several skeletal creatures from the ground. With an agile leap, the girl carved a path through the monsters using kicks. Suddenly, she changed direction. Protected by his own barrier, Engen observed her movement from behind. A blow sent her hurtling back into the horde of creatures. Gripping hands emerged from all sides, immobilizing her completely. Calmly, Engen explained that covering the world in darkness would be impossible, as it would exceed his limits. He added that the same applied to her. Among all the gifts she possessed, she had not committed to making any of them truly her own. Subitamente, an explosion occurred near the shed. The entire building began to shake violently. Startled, Vector asked, "What was that?" Through the window, Rachel observed, "They are fighting intensely out there." Coldly, Engen stated that she should have awakened already, as shadowy spikes pierced the ground around them. Falling to her knees, Ihwa began to cough, prompting him to question if he had overestimated her. Wiping her mouth, she said, "I clearly understand what is happening now." Then she asserted, "You seem to be misinterpreting the situation." With renewed interest, Engen asked, "What makes you think you won't be killed right here?" In a didactic tone, he mentioned Jin-tae Yang, someone of the same generation and far stronger. He continued, saying that she was just one step away, with the potential and capacity to become stronger. But he emphasized that he had seen many blades shatter under pressure. While he pondered her fate, Ihwa, panting, declared, "This is my last chance." Aware of the gravity, she knew he wasn't bluffing. This time, he was serious. As a drop fell into water, her mind desperately searched for a way out. Images of past battles flashed through her thoughts. Opening her eyes, Ihwa found a new determination. Understanding dawned. This had always been a fight where he could kill her on a whim. Doubt surfaced about whether she had ever truly intended to defeat him, for otherwise, defeat would already be sealed. She then questioned when she had entered this fight, accepting the premise of losing as a dark sphere enveloped her. Beams of light tore through the darkness. The sphere transformed into wings, while the words imagination and focus echoed in her mind. A decision formed, creating the image of a stronger self, using the gift with which she felt most comfortable. Before, she had believed the path to mastery came solely from repeated training, but now, she needed to imagine herself surpassing her own limits. The visualization expanded as she saw herself overcoming all those she had failed to defeat in the past. Thus, she became the beam of light. Faced with this, Engen observed the luminous pillar descend towards him, a smile devouring the surrounding darkness. An army of skulls emerged from the darkness. Shadowy hands reached for Ihwa's face. With a sudden impulse, she leaped and delivered a massive blow against Engen's shadowy form. A dark creature writhed on the ground. The attack collided with its target in a powerful explosion, and the force of the collision threw her backward. Without hesitation, reaction, Ihwa advanced once more toward Engen. With a direct movement, she aimed a punch at his face, but her strength failed, and her body gave way, slumping to the ground. Before she could fall completely, Engen caught her in his arms. Calmly, he remarked that they would need to find a new place once more. In the distance, a swathe of destruction cut through the village. The town's main street lay completely devastated. Waking in an unfamiliar room, Ihwa murmured that she had never seen this ceiling before. Slowly, she stretched out on the bed. Rachel Sinclair entered the room, carrying a basket of fruit. "I saw you wake up," she said. She then offered the basket to Ihwa. Ihwa devoured the fruits without ceremony, much to Rachel's amusement. Once the basket was empty, Rachel remarked that it reminded her of when they first met. "It was similar to how you found us," she added. Ihwa reflected that she had collapsed like that several times in life or death situations, and had only survived thanks to their help. This time, however, there was a difference, she stated, piquing Rachel's curiosity. "We are both closer to our goals," she explained directly. With a gentle gesture, Ihwa patted Rachel's head. "You are also closer to your own goal," she said. Suddenly, Rachel changed the subject. "How strong was Rax for Sinclair?" she asked. Ihwa stared at her in silence. "He is probably too strong for you right now," she replied sincerely, and Rachel sighed, regretting that she had been right. Recovering her spirits, Rachel declared that although she had trained rigorously, she wasn't quite there yet. With a slight smile, Ihwa suggested they launch a surprise attack together to eliminate him, which visibly brightened Rachel's mood. Engen entered the room, interrupting their conversation. Addressing Ihwa, he asked if she had found any clues that would allow them to advance. "No," the young woman replied simply, but then she immediately added that despite this, she had already progressed. Changing the subject, Ihwa asked why she was still experiencing that strange, feverish sensation. Engen explained that it was because she had harbored gifts too powerful for her own body, but assured her she should be able to handle it now. Curious, she questioned him about what she was capable of doing. "Now you can give up," he replied. He explained directly that training Grayman's gift would be less efficient than Jade's, which was why it had only been used defensively. Engen continued, stating that the gift obtained during the test would only hinder her progress, and it would be best to abandon it. According to him, learning to let go would make her other gifts even more powerful. Interrupting him, Ihwa refused. "Do you have any idea what I went through to acquire these powers?" she questioned firmly. She declared that all those powers belonged to her. Engen advised her to stop being greedy. Without hesitation, Ihwa retorted, asking if greed wasn't also a powerful emotion. A device was placed on the table before them. On its screen, a message appeared, notifying them of the second test. In a large warehouse, several candidates had gathered. Observing the location, Ihwa commented that this was where the candidates had assembled before the first test. Meanwhile, over the phone, Ihwa was informed that Operation Twilight would be investigated and that she should focus on the current test. Turning to leave, Engen stated that priorities had shifted. "If what Jintai Yang said is true, we will take the torch by force," he declared, surprising the dark-haired woman. Laika then appeared at the location, and the woman called out to her. "Where have you been?" "I was robbing District 16, Laika replied casually. Laika chuckled. "I would have believed you if you didn't look so serious." She then questioned the change in the woman's hair color and the fact that they were the only ones who hadn't revealed their gifts. Yawning, the dark-haired woman asked, "Where is everyone else?" Laika explained that everyone else had been summoned to different locations, and she was the only one sent here. She added that the atmosphere felt very different from the first test, which was understandable after the recent events. Around them, various candidates surveyed the environment, described as either supremely confident or absurdly determined. The dark-haired woman stared at Laika in silence. Someone approached, remarking, "It seems everyone has arrived." The dark-haired woman recognized him, realizing who he was. The man introduced himself as the promoter and announced that he would be supervising the second test. Respectfully, he praised the candidates' courage for appearing, despite the incident during the first test. The promoter then instructed them to divide into two groups by playing rock, paper, scissors with the person beside them. The dark-haired woman reacted with confusion to the instruction. Stepping away, Laika declared that they were direct rivals and would see each other later. Sensing the risk, the dark-haired woman understood that her life would be significantly shortened if she remained near Laika during the test. From behind, a man approached and invited her to play. The two engaged in a round of rock, paper, scissors. With crushing force, the woman's hand slammed down, seemingly smashing her opponent's fingers. Victorious, she cheered as he recoiled on the ground. The promoter then instructed the winners to go to the right and the losers to the left, so he could explain the test's details. Then, he revealed a wanted poster and announced that the test would be a special bounty hunt. The proctor announced the rules, stating that they would face terrible, wanted criminals. Visible surprise rippled through the candidates, one of them asking if they would truly confront real villains. In protest, another candidate recalled the deaths from the first test, questioning the audacity of making them go through such an ordeal again. He continued, asking what kind of test allowed candidates to be murdered, asserting that they could not trust the control over these villains. Before he could finish, the candidate's speech was abruptly interrupted. The proctor suddenly appeared behind the man, leaving the podium where he had stood moments before, conspicuously empty. With a brusque movement, the supervisor grabbed the candidate by the collar of his clothing. Leaning in close, he sniffed the candidate's face. Coldly, he declared, "I smell the scent of fear, mixed with the fresh aroma of a rookie." Offering a curt apology for his manners, he then hurled the candidate to the ground. Advancing a few steps, the proctor announced that he would clarify the situation, as everything seemed to have been misunderstood. Pointing towards a gate, he explained that, just like in the first test, anyone who feared for their life could simply leave. Raising his arms, he questioned the true definition of a hero. In a firm tone, he declared that a hero is someone willing to sacrifice themselves. He continued continued, explaining that a hero is someone who fights against injustice and who might even give their own life for the good of others. Or at least, that is what he believed. Questioning the speech, one of the candidates asked what purpose had brought them all together here. Iwa calmly remarked that there was no problem in treating those words with disdain, as even among heroes, some did not possess such qualities. Elaborating, he stated that some become heroes seeking pleasure and fame from the very beginning, and others choose the path of corruption after losing their courage in the face of harsh reality. The proctor clenched his fist, his anger barely contained. Even so, he guaranteed that as long as he remained the supervisor, none of them would ever pass the test. A woman approached, praising his inspiring speech. He turned to face her. The woman introduced herself. "I am the defender." Straightening his posture, the proctor admitted that perhaps he had been arrogant in delivering that speech. The defender firmly stated that it was their mistake that led to the villain's attack, and that words alone would not be sufficient for the candidates. Addressing him, she said, "You are certainly worthy of giving sermons like that." Thanking her for the compliment, he responded, but she insisted, "I am merely speaking the truth." She then asked if the preparations for the test were complete, and she confirmed with a salute. She then revealed that she had dispatched criminals capable of causing havoc and threatening the candidates' lives. Thoughtfully, the proctor wondered when they would uncover the secrets of the test, eagerly anticipating it. Turning, he tossed an object into the air. The door to a garage began to slide open. From the darkness, a silhouette emerged. Observing the scene, Iwa declared, "The test has begun." The rule was simple. Capture a rampaging criminal, alive or dead. There were 6 criminals in total, with numbers on their masks indicating their power level. This made it clear that delaying was not wise, as there was no benefit in choosing the most difficult path. The first test had not required brute force, as only one location was attacked by villains. However, it was virtually impossible to pass this test without engaging in combat. The objective was straightforward, to evaluate everyone's battle prowess. This placed enormous pressure on the candidates, as the test immediately followed the villain's attack. Heroes often embarked on far more dangerous missions without any emergency protection. Leading the candidates to consider these factors was, indeed, part of the test. The dark-haired woman opened her bag, murmuring that this was better for her, for she had a personal objective to fulfill during the test. A candidate walked through the city streets. Soon after, he spotted a target and commented on his luck at having already found someone. Judging by the number on her mask, he concluded she was the 6th and weakest, believing he would be the first to pass. The red-haired criminal continued walking slowly. Propelling himself forward, the candidate leaped toward her to attack, but his sword strike was blocked by her tail. The candidate struggled to contain the impact, barely managing to hold his ground, surprised by her strength. The criminal approached, commenting that she couldn't remember the last time she'd encountered someone outside of the facility. Then she asked, "Do you like the color red too?" Her tail struck again, colliding against his blade. It sliced through the air at high speed. Sliding across the ground, she moved swiftly to evade his blows. Forced to retreat, the candidate questioned how he could be at a disadvantage after collecting so many gems in the first test. A memory of the proctor's words surfaced. The criminals could be captured alive or dead, and that same rule had been given to the criminals, making the candidate realize he had lost his focus. A tail strike hit him squarely. With the impact, his sword was driven into the ground. Attempting to react, the candidate reached for his weapon. Appearing before the fallen candidate, Ihwa snatched the sword. Without pause, he ran past him. Surprised, the candidate looked back. A powerful impact struck the red-haired criminal. The force of the blow sent the stunned candidate flying against a wall. With a light remark, Ihwa said, "I love to shop." The dark-haired woman carefully examined the newly acquired sword. She crouched, scrutinizing the weapon more closely. Soon after, she raised the blade into the air, finding it incredible. For a moment, the young woman became thoughtful. She mused that the criminal's tail seemed extremely strong, and that she was more powerful than the supervisors of the first test. Better understanding the situation, the woman grasped the candidate's feelings. Perhaps the prosecutor wasn't strong enough to contain the 6 criminals. Standing, she began to question the truth behind the test. She then wondered if there was never any intention to contain the criminals, a thought that wouldn't surprise her coming from the clan. With disdain, she scoffed at their rhetoric, stating that anyone with a mouth could speak that way. If they lived such righteous lives as they claimed, there was something she wanted to know. The dark-haired woman demanded where they were when her sister died. In another part of the city, Laika stood alone in a park. Raising a hand to her face, she showed her exhaustion. For a moment, she considered that it would have been better to stay with Kasha, but quickly corrected herself, admitting she had lied. A memory surfaced. Kasha was impossible to read, too unpredictable to be a reliable ally. Sensing nearby combat, Laika crouched low. In the distance, she observed a large explosion. A candidate named Hanbi advanced, ready to attack with her weapon. Recognizing her, Laika remembered she was the woman with the blunt weapon seen in the auditorium. In the confrontation, Hanbi faced criminal number 5. This indicated he was the second weakest among the 6. Deciding to act cautiously, Laika chose to wait for an opportunity to secure victory at the last moment and analyze what they were made of. Criminal number 5 wore a collar equipped with a detonation switch. Preparing to attack, Hanbi asked a question. In a direct tone, she questioned, "Are you a member of the undead?" The question completely surprised Laika. An explanation surfaced regarding the sub-organizations, the district guards, the legion, and the underworld heroes. The hero clan consisted of several different sub-organizations. Among them all, the most unique was, without a doubt, the undead. They were villains responsible for the most heinous crimes. By law, they should spend the rest of their lives in underground cells. Yet, a lucky few individuals received a second second chance. If they accepted reduced sentences at the cost of their free will, they were equipped with detonator collars. They faithfully obeyed the clan's orders like loyal dogs. Thus, the undead came to be. Criminal number 5 praised Hanbi's perception and her courage for still wanting to fight even after knowing the truth. He stated that they weren't sent to deal with minor incidents and offered her a chance to flee. Hanbi merely questioned, "Should I truly flee?" Then she declared that she had taken up a weapon to strike people like him to death. Advancing swiftly, the young woman moved toward him. She then blocked a series of the criminal's blows. Hanbi stared him down. Leaping over her opponent, she changed position and struck him with a powerful blow. Dragged backward by the force of the impact, criminal number 5 asked, "Am I being underestimated?" Hanbi stared at him and said, "If that is the case." Then she invoked massive power and claimed, "You might regret it." The attack collided with the ground, tearing open an enormous fissure. Walking through the dust, Hanbi continued with her weapon resting on her shoulder. Rising, the criminal apologized, explaining it had been a long time since he'd faced a fresh human. He continued, saying he had been wondering how he would slaughter her. In the next instant, he swiftly advanced toward her, but the kick was blocked by Hanbi's hand. Seizing the opening, she grabbed her opponent's leg. In response, he struck her in the side with a blade that extended from his arm. Hanbi's vision blurred from the blow. Confused, she asked, "What was that?" I felt something disturbing. Looking at her own hand, she tried to understand what had happened. The criminal explained that he had stolen the sensation of that attack from her. He stated that anyone wounded by his weapon lost one of their 5 fundamental senses. He explained that the order of loss was random, striking her once more. Preparing to react, Hanbi tried to retaliate. Realizing she had lost her sight, she heard the criminal call her unlucky. He continued, saying she would have been better off losing her sense of smell, taste, or hearing. In a cruel tone, he asked, "How does it feel to be left alone in the darkness?" He continued, questioning if she didn't feel as though she was slowly withering away. Reflecting aloud, he declared that humans were merely dying little by little, for death was the only destiny. With a strike, he cut her leg and commented on the fading light. He then struck her face, proclaiming that it was absolute. He cut her again, stating it was beautiful and tempting, just like her. Finally, Hanbi fell to her knees on the ground. Approaching, the criminal said he would tell her something, even if she probably couldn't hear him. He then revealed that most of the undead had no interest in reducing their sentences. He questioned why they accepted wearing the collar. Hanbi collapsed to the ground, utterly defeated. Covering her face, Laika sat huddled, cursing the situation. Approaching from behind, criminal number 5 greeted her. He then asked, "Did you enjoy the fight?" Tears streamed down Laika's face as the rain began to fall. As Kasha ascended the stairs, she thought she heard Laika's voice. She recalled that Laika was not a bad fighter, so she should be fine on her own. For an instant, the young woman paused, lost in thought. As she continued her ascent, Kasha mused that the more she reflected on the test, the less sense it all made. Capturing and bringing in criminals loose in the testing grounds didn't seem hard to grasp. What bothered her was that the criminals were far stronger than the candidates, like a fight between an adult and a child. Reaching a rooftop, she declared that she didn't know what kind of traps awaited her, but she believed her preparations were complete. Kasha then scaled a water silo, proclaiming that she was not the prey but the predator. From her high vantage point, she silently observed the city. Gripping her spear, she announced that the time had come and prepared to reel in her prize catch. Elsewhere, a drop of blood fell to the ground. With a wounded face, a young man wondered when and where everything had gone wrong. Someone approached the fallen young man. In his memory, heroes appeared, defeating villains and aiding the weak. They were admired by virtually everyone. The heroine he admired advanced against an enemy. Even though she wasn't the most powerful in the world, she still protected him from the falling debris, proving herself more heroic than anyone else. The woman then asked what kind of hero he wished to be. With a smile, the boy answered, "I want to be exactly like you." Silently, the heroine watched him for a moment. She stated, "I don't wish to be the best of all. As long as I can save at least one person, that's already worth it." Back in the present, the young man said he was sure he would succeed one day, but for now, he faced an enormous obstacle. The prosecutor commented that the young man seemed to have trained very well physically, almost to the point of not being able to improve further. However, he stated that the youth was not a gifted user, and questioned how he even passed the first test without one. Rising to his feet, the young man replied, "Of course, with pure determination." With a sudden leap, he charged forward and attacked with a kick. Fallen to the ground, the young man heard that everything he had worked for had crumbled with a single punch. Approaching him, the prosecutor said that he saw fools like him dreaming of the impossible. But with determination, the young man grabbed his leg and declared, "I will become a hero." The man said, "An inferior, giftless type like you will never be useful to this world." A voice shouted for him to stop immediately, and a shield blocked the attack. The defender informed him he lost consciousness, but he's still alive. The prosecutor questioned her, asking if she had permission to interfere in the test's affairs. The defender said, "I don't care about your ideology, and I'll have to contain you for now." She reminded him that her master had warned him not to overstep with the candidates. The masked man scoffed. "That's no way to speak to a veteran hero. You should be ashamed." She replied, "You fight for the wrong cause." He then lunged with a punch. The defender braced for the attack. From a distance, Kasha spotted her prize catch. She leaped from above, spinning her spear. The spear flew directly towards the man. The projectile struck his mask, shattering it. With his mask destroyed, he asked, "Should we continue a bit later?" Then, the man vanished at high speed, leaving the defender behind. The prosecutor appeared and warned her not to take her eyes off number 1 for a single moment. She was torn. She couldn't let the candidate die, but she also couldn't disobey her master's orders. At that moment, the unconscious young man was grabbed and lifted from the ground. The defender asked her master for for forgiveness and decided to carry the injured candidate. The man with the broken mask seized the chance to escape. Kasha watched him from a distance. A figure captured him, saying, "You were easy prey and a great opportunity to test a newly acquired power." In the distance, a great disturbance occurred in the city, and the prosecutor seated noticed it. The defender turned and saw the explosion. A woman with a monstrous tail also noticed the explosion. Elsewhere, a long-haired young man lay fallen on the grass. The man with the broken mask confronted Kasha, asking, "What happened to your hair and your power?" She stared at him in silence for a moment. Kasha admitted, "I'm not sure either, and I can't control this power." Kasha squeezed her eyes shut. The man asked, "Can you see now?" She declared, "This unrivaled power is completely at my disposal." Face to face, Ihwa stares at the man with the broken mask. Her irritation grows with the situation. In a fleeting memory, Ihwa questions why she can no longer control the power she once mastered. Back then, she could only manipulate it because she had no est left. Back in the present, Kasha's arm trembles as she struggles to contain the force. The man watches her in silence for a moment, then charges rapidly to attack. Kasha realizes the danger as he closes in. With a smirk, he lands a heavy blow directly to her stomach. The masked man strikes again with full force. The impact causes the roof to crack and crumble beneath them. The shockwave felt throughout the building. In the distance, the prosecutor observes the explosion. He comments evaluatively that this must be the infamous experienced rookie. He notes he shouldn't worry, as the defender would have notified him of any trouble. Just then, the defender approaches and calls him Master. He casually pinches her cheek, and she complains that it hurts. Curious, he asks why she is there. She recounts the events leading up to this moment. The defender admits to disobeying orders, but he assures her she acted correctly, stating he sent her because he had faith in her judgment. Suddenly, the defender notices the light from the building has vanished. She suggests checking on the candidate, but the prosecutor insists he gave a warning and that everything will be fine. On the destroyed roof, debris is scattered everywhere. Emerging from the wreckage, the man with the broken mask mocks her claim of having unrivaled power. He walks firmly toward her, stating he has seen many gift users unable to control their abilities, all consumed by their own power until they met their end. He presses his foot down on her leg, but offers to surrender if she helps him in return. He reveals his dream of annihilating the useless and creating a world where gift users can prosper. Kasha raises a finger and says, "That definitely woke me up." She adds, "You should have given your all in the first attack, because that was the only chance you had." Too late, he realizes his perception was an illusion. He wonders when he drifted so far from her. Kasha steps forward, stating that the distance between them reveals his inner fear. Then, he begins to laugh. He activates a skill called Beast Handcuffs. A shackle materializes on Kasha's wrist. He advises to not underestimate any opponents, explaining that the cuffs will only open if one of them dies. Advancing, Kasha declares that while chained, her powers are drastically enhanced. The man unleashes a barrage of attacks in all directions. He charges with a direct hit. In midair, Kasha dodges, thanking him for the instructions as the impact throws her against a wall. She says this will serve her well in the future. With brutal force, she yanks the chain. The man stands firm but loses his balance for an instant due to the pull. Using the momentum, Kasha flies toward him and delivers a kick. She blocks his strike and asks if he can't try harder. They continue to exchange rapid blows. With precision, the young woman lands a kick on his leg and prepares for the next move. Anticipating the attack, he guards his face, predicting she will aim for his head, but Kasha strikes his knee again. With force, Kasha pulls the chain. Recovered, he pulls back, revealing he can also adjust the chain's length. Using him as a pivot, she closes the distance, plants her foot, and throws him over her shoulder using the chain. He slams violently into the debris. Without hesitation, she steps firmly on his leg. Kasha asks, "Are you done crying?" She states, "That is for stepping on my leg." He shouts that he must be taken back alive to pass the test, but the young woman punches the ground right next to him. Realizing he wasn't hit, the man begins to laugh, saying she finally noticed the secrets of the test, but the girl commands, "Shut up." Recalling the rule that the death of one is the only way to break the chain, she asks who he thinks should die. Without hesitation, she answers, "It will be you, of course, because I intend to live." The man reacted, uttering a final word, before Kasha forcefully stepped on his head. Turning, she walked toward the opening in the wall, remarking as she went that she still had a long way to go. Elsewhere, Bishop informed his father that the second test had concluded without issues, and Full Moon had made no moves. His father commented that Bishop seemed quite confident, asserting that the torch was present. Raxford Sinclair replied that he had witnessed it with his own eyes. It was an impressive sight to behold, Raxford began, but was interrupted before he could question how they knew of such an item. The explanation arrived with the news that she had become the clan's military advisor, a fact quickly confirmed. Suddenly, vines sprouted and entwined around her body. He wondered if this was why he had begun to harbor so many questions. With a forceful grip, he took her arm, apologizing, and reminded her never to forget that her roots lay in that place. He continued, urging her to plant the seedlings that would grow and eventually cover the entire world in the name of Grey Castle. Consumed by rage, Raxford crushed the communicator in his hand, cursing the person he spoke with as an idiot. Soon after, he recalled his imprisoned sister, her voice echoing in his mind as she called him brother. To be fair, he thought to himself that he was also a brother as he walked away along the docks. Back in the room, the question arose whether she knew. He explained that some plants needed to be uprooted and hung upside down for their flowers to truly bloom. Even in their struggle for mere survival, these plants plants captivated people, who lauded the beauty of their blossoms. After all, flowers that managed to bloom in the heart of a desert were all the more wondrous. The same held true for humans. Many gift users had been pushed to their absolute limits to survive. It was often at the precipice of death that they truly flourished. Addressing his children, he urged them to fight through the pain and allow their flowers to bloom in abundance. Meanwhile, on a city rooftop, Iwa walked, carrying the bandaged body of the man she had defeated. Upon reaching a pub, she concluded it must be the place they had spoken of. She entered the establishment, still carrying the bandaged body on her back, as the sound of conversations echoed from the end of the corridor. For a moment, she grew thoughtful. As the young woman settled her things in a room, someone called out to her. Approaching, Laika asked, "Why did you take so long? I thought I would be the first to pass." Kasha congratulated Laika on passing as well. Laika then asked Kasha who she had stolen that from, but Kasha's response was a confession that she had almost died. She recounted how the man had attacked her so fiercely, she truly believed he was trying to kill her. Laika added that she shuddered to imagine what would have happened if she hadn't realized the test's secrets, a comment that piqued Kasha's curiosity. Laika pulled her down the corridor, urging her to the cafeteria where everyone else had gathered. Upon arrival, Kasha noted how few candidates had passed, given the test's difficulty, and wondered why everyone seemed so animated. A hooded young man noticed her. With an outstretched finger, he pointed at her, accusing her of being the thief. The young woman looked from side to side. "Stop pretending!" the hooded young man aggressively demanded. "Where is my sword?" A woman joined the accusation, yelling, "Kasha, give back my spear launcher!" Another man pointed at her, questioning, "Where did you put my brass knuckles?" Surrounding her, the three shouted with raised fists. Kasha, clutching a bottle, told them to silence themselves. "Do you have any proof?" she challenged. In the middle of the hall, a general brawl immediately erupted. The promoter entered the hall, applauding everyone's energy even after such a difficult test. He declared that seeing the future of the clan in their hands almost moved him to tears of joy, but he was interrupted before he could announce the successful candidates. A man wearing a bird mask cut him off, suggesting they should introduce themselves first. The promoter agreed, mentioning that Bare Knuckles had not yet arrived, then asked everyone to welcome the hidden proctors of the test. Musica and Harvester were revealed, prompting candidates to comment that they had only seen them in suits before. Grumbling, Dual Saber lamented that no one cared about him because he was old, while Black Kite wondered if he was the one she had fought against. Filled with curiosity, one candidate brazenly asked Crimson Dragon if he could touch her tail, a request that left her utterly flustered. The promoter then offered a direct explanation. The numbers on the masks had no relation to power. They served merely to test the candidate's courage. He subsequently revealed that, as everyone had probably already realized, the wanted criminals in the test were actually active heroes of the clan. Surprised by the revelation, Kasha stopped eating. Clarifying the situation further, Harvester explained that true members of the undead operated in pairs, with the criminal always accompanied by a caregiver who possessed the means to detonate the collar. One of the proctors commented aloud that they must have performed well, as no one seemed to suspect a thing. Black Kite added that perhaps it was better for the candidates not to have known this until the end, as it perfectly aligned with the test's true intention. Dual Saber agreed, affirming that it was precisely a test to assess their courage. He continued, stating that few would willingly choose to fight an enemy they could not possibly defeat, rather than simply fleeing. Yet, he stressed, the courage to stand firm was the fundamental quality of any hero, who did not have the luxury of choosing their battles. Laika agreed, recalling that, upon reflection, many factors had indicated this deception. She pointed out that the promoter had merely stated to apprehend and bring the criminal, without specifying that this would guarantee approval. Furthermore, she commented that someone she had believed dead had, in reality, been alive the entire time. Lastly, she stressed that the mission was impossible from the outset, thus what truly mattered were the criteria by which they would be evaluated. The promoter then announced that anyone who had encountered and fought against a wanted criminal at least once passed this test. With great enthusiasm, the candidates cheered the news. Laika smiled, finding the result incredible, and cast a worried glance at her friend. "Kasha, are you all right?" she asked, concerned that Kasha didn't look well. Suddenly, a body thumped onto the floor before everyone. Iwa merely observed the scene. "It really wasn't me," she stated plainly. One of the supervisors commented in a low voice that they were practically divided on what to do. He explained that Crimson Dragon and Musica believed they should let it slide, while Black Kite and Harvester felt some form of punishment was necessary. Confused, Dual Saber questioned why they would suggest otherwise, given that a clan member had been murdered. In response, Black Kite stated that since the girl's name didn't appear in the database, she wasn't from Cloud Garden, nor was she an officially designated villain. Nevertheless, he argued that a candidate killing a hero was a major issue, and failing her would be the correct decision. Raising his hand, Musica said he disagreed, as he had stated before. He recalled that among all the candidates he had faced, there was one who was as strong as he was, and who would have defeated him due to a small mistake. Even if he had been defeated, he would still have approved that candidate. Holding his mask, Black Kite said the girl would be an excellent replacement for Bare Knuckles, perhaps even better, and that they should approve her to utilize her abilities. Interrupting, Crimson Dragon stated that everyone was talking nonsense and analyzing the situation from a political perspective. She questioned what mistake Kasha had made, as she had only been given the mission to apprehend the prisoner, dead or alive, and had completed the task. Furthermore, she asserted that Bare Knuckles was an incorrigible gift user supremacist, and that the clan administration had erred by not foreseeing such events. With a hard gaze, Dual Saber stared at her and told told her to watch her words. Taking the floor, Harvester asked for Dual Saber's opinion on the matter. In a firm tone, Harvester stated that appropriate punishment was necessary, but did not explain why. He added that, in any case, they held no power over the final decision. The entire choice rested with the prosecutor, who sat with his arms crossed in thought. Kasha opened a paper bag she had been holding and observed its contents. Sitting on the bed, she began watching a commercial on television. Meanwhile, she ate something from the bag without taking her eyes off the screen. Suddenly, the door began to open slowly. In the doorway, the prosecutor appeared, calling for the hero candidate Kasha. He then informed her that she had been approved in the second test. Curiously, the girl asked about her weapons, and the response came that they had been returned to their rightful owners. Dropping her bag to the floor, she said, "I have a question." Leaning slightly, he asked if they hadn't met somewhere before. Uncertain, the young woman replied, "Perhaps, or perhaps not." Laughing, he clapped her firmly on the back and apologized for the wait. Wishing her good luck on the final test, the prosecutor said goodbye as Kasha walked away, concealing a knife. Approaching shortly after, Harvester told the prosecutor that he was still unsure about the decision and found the entire situation strange. He recalled that Barak Knuckles' gift made him a formidable fighter, but the battle likely hadn't lasted long. This suggested she was stronger and had a significant advantage, which left him with a question. Could she have defeated him without actually killing him? Dismissing the idea, the prosecutor stated that it was merely speculation and they couldn't act based on it. With a sigh, Harvester admitted he might be a bit sensitive lately. He continued, reminding him that Barak Knuckles was no role model, and perhaps the candidate didn't tolerate injustice, much like the defender. But the timing couldn't be worse, with the entire city on the brink of war. Emphasizing the gravity of the situation, Phil, a reporter, affirmed that Cloud Garden had never been in such turmoil throughout its entire history. Pointing to the second test, Harvester highlighted the field divided into 2 sections, with 3 heroes in each. He further noted that there were about 10 test fields in total. At least 60 to 70 heroes had been summoned to District 16 for just this round, something he didn't believe was a coincidence. At this point, Harvester said that nothing would surprise him anymore, no matter what sinister event occurred. In a parallel conversation, Raxford told Full Moon that the leaders would likely manipulate the details of the third test to their advantage. Catching his attention, Harvester reminded the prosecutor not to forget that every time the clan had done something like this, countless lives had been lost, and an immeasurable amount of blood had been shed. He then questioned if the prosecutor had truly decided to retire as a hero, and what had happened to his oath to protect civilians. In response, Harvester stated that the clan had gone too far for a few individuals to make a difference, and that he no longer knew how to distinguish right from wrong. Meanwhile, Jintai Yang unsheathed his sword. Directly, Jintai asked Sapphire about the clan. As expected, she replied that they had summoned a considerable amount of forces. This led them to believe that the attack on Cloud Garden had been a success, and to say they were overreacting would be an understatement. Adding a final point, Sapphire said that no one would protect something worthless with such vigilance. In the following revelation, she explained that they planned to use most of their forces to escort the torch during its transport, and that this would be the highlight of the third test. However, Scar questioned the logic, even knowing the clan cared about public reputation. Concluding, Jintai asked them to trust him, stating he was absolutely certain they would use the candidates as soldiers. They planned to transport the torch to a more protected district, even after failing to use a decoy. In doubt, Scar questioned how they could face so many heroes, given their significant numerical disadvantage. He recalled that all the villains from the surprise attack had either died or fled, and there hadn't been that many heroes. With contempt, a demonic figure told the coward to leave if he was afraid. In response, Tokata sighed and challenged him to repeat that. Intervening, Jintai reprimanded Demon, demanding respect for their comrades in arms, as everyone present had already proven their worth. Adding to the point, Sapphire said that battle prowess wasn't the only necessary skill, as off-field expertise had facilitated the mission. In agreement, Jintai stated that what Tokata requested was reasonable. With their reduced numbers, it became impossible to block all routes the clan might decide to use. But on the positive side, they no longer needed those useless fools. With a smile, Jintai revealed that he had invited a notorious individual to join their cause. Skeptical, Tokata doubted that anyone useful would accept, given Jintai's terrible reputation, and presumed the person had likely hidden in fear. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed, making him stop speaking to listen. From behind him, a figure approached and asked, "Were you scared?" Engen merely questioned, "Why would I be scared?" Engen pointed, declaring that Tokata was the one trembling. He then added that Tokata looked like a scared cat. Scar attempted to intervene, trying to stop Engen, but upon closer observation, he realized the man's face matched the descriptions he had read. Thus he concluded it was the Smiling Man. Engen turned to Jintai. "Do you plan to remain silent until everyone is killed?" Jintai firmly thrust his dagger into the ground. "No one here would dare to face me at this moment, especially with an important job to accomplish." Impatiently, Engen demanded, "Get straight to the point." With a smile, Jintai agreed. "I wish to borrow the Smiling Man's reputation." He explained that they were planning attacks on groups of heroes leaving Cloud Garden. How would they react if the Smiling Man were among the attackers? They would eliminate the true heroes, not merely the weak ones present during the first test. Lately, the single-digit districts had been in turmoil, but that was fair, for he had returned, the last king of Nera and and icon of the underworld. Jinte continued, stating that Engen possessed connections with several villains who had vanished throughout history, asserting that such a depth of knowledge was something an insignificant brat like Engen could never truly fathom. Engen approached. "Are you trying to make a deal?" Jinte offered only an enigmatic smile in response. The smiling man stared at Jinte for a silent instant, then covered his face with his hand, finally understanding the situation. Elsewhere, Iwa walked down a busy street, convinced it was their designated meeting spot. Doubt crept in. Had they forgotten her? Meanwhile, Kasha typed into the group chat, "Where are you?" Suddenly, a voice called out to Kasha, "Hey, pretty lady over there." Instinctively, she turned toward the sound. A hooded figure offered to read the stars for her. Kasha initially refused, saying she was busy, but then paused. She recognized the distinctive sword the person carried within their bag. Kasha remembered a girl who carried a similar blade. Changing her mind, she asked the fortune teller to tell her more, and the figure readily agreed to a discount. Curiously, Kasha inquired if it was truly possible to read stars in broad daylight. The fortune teller fell silent for a moment before quickly correcting herself. "I meant crystal ball reading, of course," she exclaimed, picking up a glistening orb. With a mysterious air, the woman claimed to see Kasha's mother. Kasha immediately retorted that she had no mother, leaving the fortune teller flustered. Trying to recover, the woman ventured to speak of a sister, and Kasha confirmed she did have one. The fortune teller continued, saying the sister had cared for her like a mother and was now in a distant place. But Kasha interrupted, stating simply that her sister had died. Dropping all pretense, the disguised woman threw her elaborate costume to the ground. She then complained, "Kasha, you're such a spoil sport. That's how these games work." Ignoring the outburst, Kasha demanded, "Why do you have my sword?" The woman looked confused, asking what Kasha was talking about, but then her memory returned. Finally, she let the sword drop to the ground. Quickly, she inflated her dress skirt and attempted to sit on top of the blade. Kasha grabbed her. "You can't leave," she insisted, but the girl shrieked, "I took the sword! Now it's mine!" From inside the girl's clothes, a necklace with a blue pendant fell out. At that exact moment, the girl tumbled to the ground while the necklace flew into the air. "Oh no!" she cried. Around them, people stood frozen, observing the scene. Alone on the street, Kasha looked around. Suddenly, she found herself in a completely different place. Before her, a figure appeared, enveloped in light. The figure began to speak of the reddening sun that sets as it meets its end. It continued, saying that night hovered over the forest but would soon diminish. Then it spoke of one who would come, offering prayers with borrowed lips. A hand touched Kasha's chin, as the voice asserted that 10 hands would move as one. The figure declared that Kasha would either be incinerated and obliterated, or she would become a lightning bolt thrown by an intoxicated god. Elsewhere, Engen guided Jinte and Sapphire, signaling for them to follow a particular path. A master's teaching echoed in Jinte's mind. Those born with superior powers are too confident. It is best to strike when their pride is at its peak. Calmly, Jinte sheathed his sword, a memory flashing through his mind of a time he'd defeated an opponent with a single decisive blow. He wondered if he could now reach Engen as he drew closer, contemplating striking at supersonic speed with his fastest technique, but Sapphire stopped him, calling his name. "I feel something here," she whispered, gesturing towards several eyes glinting in the darkness. From atop a nearby rooftop, a group of villains watched them. Engen revealed, without preamble, that the very villains Jinte had mentioned were all waiting for them. Jinte calmly responded, "You were the last of my recruits." He admired Engen's shrewdness, but asserted that Engen was not fit for true leadership. Engen covered his face. "There is only one throne," he concluded, telling them to hold on to their hopes, for hell itself was about to be invaded by the bodies of heroes. The mysterious figure declared that Ihwa would either be incinerated and obliterated, or become a bolt of lightning hurled by an intoxicated god. Ihwa awoke on a bustling street, looking around at the moving crowd with confusion on her face. Suddenly, a girl called her name and rushed towards her. Rachel Sinclair apologized, saying she had made her wait. Ihwa calmly replied that it was fine, as she had only just arrived herself, and Rachel rushed forward to embrace her. In a brief flashback, an image of the mysterious figure flashed in Ihwa's mind, making her wonder what that experience had been. Back in the present, Ihwa reciprocated Rachel's hug. Rachel then showed her a small egg and asked what it was. Unsure, Ihwa admitted she had no idea. Rachel held the egg in her hand, then enthusiastically invited Ihwa to a nice place where they could talk and relax a bit after the tests. She suggested Chain's Cafe as they didn't have much time. Animated, Rachel proposed a small meal of 80 pancakes, and Ihwa agreed. Soon after, a towering stack of pancakes was served. As she ate, Ihwa asked what Engen had said. Rachel casually replied that they had gathered enough manpower and were just waiting for the right moment. Ihwa, skeptical, doubted that the villains would truly follow Engen's orders. Rachel confirmed that this was exactly what Vector had been complaining about. According to him, most had appeared out of curiosity about the Smiling Man or to make a name for themselves. Few would be truly loyal. To be fair, that was the nature of villains, and many hadn't even met Engen before the recent meeting. The outcome of the battle for the torch would likely determine public opinion about the Smiling Man. Coming to a conclusion, Ihwa stated that, in that case, Engen was the one being tested, and she felt pity for those who hadn't answered the call. Knowing Engen, she affirmed that he would take it personally, but she didn't care, as she had her own work to do. Animated, Rachel reminded her that their mission was to steal the torch before it reached its destination. On the table, a communicator began to ring. Fazan, alert, looked at his phone. In a hospital, a young man lying in a bed also received the notification. A new live broadcast message arrived for the hero candidates. Introducing himself, Bishop spoke on behalf of Madame Fullmoon, who was on an important mission. Congratulating everyone who passed the second test, Bishop announced that he would explain the details of the final test. Seriously, he asked everyone to pay attention, as the information was crucial. On the screen, the words "the last test" appeared. He directly revealed that the final test would be a cargo transport. There would be several teams of 6, each consisting of 2 heroes and 4 candidates. Each team would be tasked with escorting an unknown item transported from Cloud Garden to an undisclosed location. The test would end when all transport trucks reached their destination or failed the mission. In each destination district, a hero certification ceremony would take place, granting each participant a hero name, which would become their new identity. This was a great honor and official proof that they had become members of the clan. He then urged everyone to survive until the end, concluding that this would be the beginning of a new era, and the order of this world depended on them. The broadcast ended, and Hecate informed Bishop that the work was done. Turning his gaze to the side, Bishop commented that he thought he had a visitor. Prim, the Wanderer, landed on his large backpack. "It's been a while," she said. Curious, Bishop asked if she had managed to find the line, but she replied that there was no trace of it. Hopping off the backpack, she commented that there seemed to be something different about him. Bishop's name was Padrius Encelian. Tucking something into her pocket, Prim remarked that much time had passed and mentioned an elder's replacement. In a sudden memory, she recalled the fight between Yushin and Victoria and wondered if he was still alive. With a restrained smile, Bishop replied that he wasn't sure, as Victoria was powerful. Yushin hadn't been fully recovered when they clashed, so it wouldn't be surprising if he had died. Disappointed, Prim showed sadness, as there was something she had wanted to ask him. Suddenly, she remembered having met someone quite interesting along the way, someone who was the absolute eye of the hurricane. According to her prediction, waves of great events surrounded her, and she would continuously remain at the center of everything. Prim revealed that she had even given her a small gift to make things more fun. Bidding farewell, Bishop said goodbye to Prim and asked her to take care. As she moved away, Prim warned that this someone might become another chess piece capable of wreaking havoc on the board. Interrupting, Bishop asked her to stop. An army of trucks gathered at the location, preparing to depart. Golden Arrow asked if the prosecutor had also noticed, commenting in an attentive tone that it seemed like something was about to happen. Observing her own office, Fullmoon remarked that the test was completely different from what they had heard, and that management was keeping her busy. Curious, Golden Arrow then asked the prosecutor if that was why he had alarmed the young heroes. The prosecutor affirmed that alarmed was the correct term, emphasizing that they needed to be more vigilant, as all they could do was try to save as many people as possible. "That is my life's mission," he